In a world where children are destined for a life of combat, the fragile Ellie breaks into loud tears, but Rachel, a wounded operative, smiles warmly to calm her. These are no ordinary children. They are real angels, rare beings that ordinary people can never hope to parent. Suddenly, a man with a cigar approaches the group, claiming that he will be their father today. He selects one child and leads him toward a car, leaving the others to wave a sad goodbye to their departing friend. Few truly understand the weight of the special. As the children watch their friend go, Rachel's smile fades into a serious expression, signaling the end of their momentary peace. She announces it is time to stop, her gaze hardening as she prepares to reveal the reality of their training. The mood shifts instantly as they begin training, with Ellie clutching a fishing line while the others ready their various weapons. Ellie's focus is broken by a harsh lesson. Rachel warns her that crying for effect is fine, but she must never let snot run, for parents have no patience for weakness. Ellie nods, focused on perfecting every detail of her performance. Watching from a window, a man observes the scene. He notes that this grueling education is a gift, for these children are raised as living weapons from their very first steps. They are shaped by elite educators, and because of the precision required, the cost of training each child grows enormous. As questions arise about their purpose, the man smiles, revealing their true nature. They are like computers. It is up to their buyers, their parents, to decide how to deploy them. Meanwhile, in a moving car, a man shows a young boy a photograph, ordering him to memorize the face of his target. But because these children are so dangerous, caretakers must take extreme precautions, instilling specific protocols into them from childhood. The children sit in silence, bound by rules they cannot break under any circumstances. These are the three absolute principles, designed to give every buyer total control over their living weapon. But in a moving car, a boy's focus shifts away from his target's face. When he notices a car following them through the mirror, his father reacts with bewilderment, then places a hand on the boy's head. The man reacts with bewilderment, but then reaches out to press his hand against the boy's head, commanding him. The boy complies immediately, for the first principle is that a parent's order is absolute. Suddenly, the pursuing car slams into them, sending their vehicle spinning wildly off the road. The crash is devastating. The man is killed instantly, leaving the boy to crawl through the wreckage toward his dying father. Bloodied and broken, the boy reaches for him. While the second principle forbids a child from using strength without permission, two armed men step out of a nearby car. They were prepared to attack, but they suddenly freeze as the wreckage door swings open and a boy falls out, sobbing for help because his father is not. He continues to plead for help, catching the attackers off guard. One man swears annoyed that they weren't warned about a child and suggests they should just eliminate him instead of simply drop him off somewhere, and the man's companion approaches the child to help. Amidst this, an instructor prepares to explain the final principle, but the boy suddenly reaches for a piece of glass. The boy plunges the glass into the man's throat, and blood spurts. The boy hits his palm, snatching the gun as he senses a threat. In a desperate moment of self-preservation, he uses the dying man as a human shield, watching as the second intruder flinches. Hiding behind the corpse, the boy holds out the gun, preparing to trigger the final lethal loophole. Acting outside the absolute principles, he fires, destroying the second attacker in a hail of bullets. Elsewhere, a man finishes a story and asks if these children are truly as good as they seem. He grins, flipping through a book filled with photographs of children, and asks his companion what they think of them. He wonders if a purchase is on the table, but after hearing the response, he sighs. With regret, some children are too much to handle, and this one was their only shame. He pulls a folder from a drawer and reveals a file that changes everything. The records show the student's data in terms of ability surpassing every other child as a true elite. The man had liked him, but they lost him, and so the man corrected himself. The child had simply disappeared. They searched, but without his parents to trigger his powers, he wouldn't attract attention. The man's fist clenches in disappointment, wondering if by now he was living a normal life or if he was already dead. Suddenly, someone clenches a fist and strikes Huang Han-ho, an eavesdropper on the roof, and he collapses in pain. Joseph, a trained fighter, looks down at the kneeling Huang and admires the strike, asking if it was true. Joseph leans in closer, demanding to know what the boy was trying to say before it was dismissed as mere name-calling. Huang freezes, widening his eyes as he desperately tries to correct the evaluation, insisting that the kick was only worth 15 points. Joseph laughs, mocking how generous he's being, while his comrades join in the laughter. After Huang curses and stands up, Park Cheyenne, a powerful fighter who refuses to be property, suddenly pushes Joseph aside to join the fray. Shouting his intent to join, Cheyenne approaches the eavesdropper. He demands to know his own point value, clenching his fist while Joseph responds with nothing but a silent, knowing smile. but Huang is about to react. Huang snaps at Cheyenne, dismissing him while feigning ignorance about a massive 52-point rating. As others question if Huang's damage scale is malfunctioning, Huang silently fumes, realizing he's being backed into a corner. He considers beating them up, but Joseph steps even closer. Cheyenne tries to intervene, but Joseph's overwhelming presence is enough to stop him in his tracks. Huang looks at Cheyenne, asking if he truly understands the weight of the situation. Cheyenne clenches his fist, caught between anger and confusion before his expression suddenly shifts into pure awe, as he exclaims that Joseph's punch was worth a staggering 150,000 points. He marvels at how a man who studied abroad possesses such a completely different level of strength, even questioning if Joseph's bench press could even reach 500 kilograms while discussing weight in pounds versus kilograms. Joseph smirks, dismisses them with a few insults, and walks away, leaving Cheyenne with a request to buy him cigarettes. After the fighter departs, Cheyenne turns to Huang, only for Xian to suddenly appear and demand why they aren't moving. Xian's playful threats about Huang's death warrant only add to the tension. Sometime later, Huang finds himself staring at Xian, satisfied with his snack, brags that he'll buy out the entire shop, though he's already broke after shopping for Joseph. Huang can't help but judge him, leading to a playful argument where Xian asks if Joseph is somehow better than him. Xian responds that it's both, noticing something interesting about the shop's name. The name is Heian Ho, a match for Huang's own last name, and Huang quickly confesses it belongs to his mother. Huang's mother smiles warmly as she sets down a fresh plate for them, asking if Xian is her son's friend. As he tastes the food, Huang can't help but ask if she is truly the owner. Xian realizes the connection, immediately smirking as he discovers the secret Huang worked so hard to hide. Realizing he can't act like a stranger anymore, Xian's sudden change in demeanor makes Huang extremely wary. Huang grips his pen, ready to strike if Xian threatens his mother, but Xian suddenly turns to the woman inside. With a polite bow, the young man introduces himself as Huang's friend, attempting to mask his true intentions. Huang freezes as Xian casually admits he isn't surprised by the familiar name, leaving the air thick with suspicion. Was true, and Huang's mother asked, smiling if it really was, realized how dangerous this situation had become. While Cheyenne teased Huang for being rude to his hardworking mother, Huang panicked, knowing Xian couldn't stay any longer without exposing their secrets. He insisted they leave immediately, thinking his friends were waiting. Seeing no rush, the woman asks if that is really the case. Deciding to be generous, she packs them some tteokbokki to share with the others. Huang protests that it isn't necessary, but Xian is amazed by the free gift. Xian, accepting the food with admiration, asks if she is sure about the offer. She insists that it is, since she has already sold enough for the day, watching in horror as his carefully guarded secrecy unravels. Huang's mother maintains that his friends are like family to her, and he desperately repeats his silent plea for discretion, while Xian smiles and thanks her for the food, despite Huang's internal panic about his secret identity. Xian stares at the bag of food in awe, certain the others will love it. Seeing an opening, Huang grabs his friend's arm. He begs Xian not to tell Joseph or anyone else about this shop. Xian promises to keep it a secret before Huang says goodbye to the shop. His mother waves him off, insisting he bring his friends back, a promise he reluctantly agrees to. As Cheyenne departs, Huang's composure snaps. He turns to his mother, demanding to know why she would do this. Calling himself an idiot, Huang loses his temper and yells, reminding her he specifically asked her to pretend she didn't know him. He doesn't even understand his own rage as she bows her head, admitting she was simply happy to see him with a friend for the first time. She begins to apologize to him, but he demands to know what there is to apologize for, as she explains her only wish was for him to get along with his friends. His mother's constant apologies push him to his limit, causing his hands to tremble in a silent struggle to stay calm. He doesn't know what he'll do if this continues, but the tension is broken when someone curses and tosses a filthy rag into a plate. Huang watches silently as Joseph, a fellow student, approaches with a look of disgust. Joseph claims he bought food from Huang's mother, only to find this dirty rag inside his meal. Then Joseph begins to rub the grimy cloth all over Huang's face, demanding a refund and threatening to tell his mother that they are actually friends. Confused and desperate, Huang looks toward Cheyenne for help. He asks Joseph if they are truly friends, but the answer comes with a cruel twist. Dump the rest of the food directly onto Huang's head. Huang stands in silence, head bowed as food drips from his hair and clothes. He tightly clutches his pen, and Joseph suddenly freezes. Huang swings his hand sharply, aiming the pen at Joseph's neck, but suddenly remembers his mother's words. Her plea for him to get along with his friends rings in his ears, and at the last second, Huang stops, leaving Joseph to stare at his own trembling palm in confusion. Huang lowers his head and pulls his hand away, while Joseph demands to know what he's playing at. The tension is broken when Cheyenne enters the classroom, but the atmosphere shifts instantly. Cheyenne freezes in confusion, his brow furrowing as he surveys the room. The students sit motionless with their heads down, as if paralyzed by fear. The sight is chilling. Police officers and a man with his head down. Beyond them, a broken window is stained with blood, and splatters litter the floor beside broken glass. Cheyenne is frozen by the carnage. The silence of the crime scene is shattered by a brutal reality. For 15 minutes, others mercilessly beat Hwang Hyun-ho. As Joseph's strikes send blood flying, the other students turn away. Pretending not to notice the violence, no one dares to intervene in the carnage. Finally, a broken Hwang manages to drag himself away, his spirit as battered as his body. A chilling new plan emerges from the chaos through Joseph, who, with a calm smile, suggests they lie and say Hwang was pushed during a game. He exploits a legal loophole in juvenile justice, knowing he's safely covered by repeating a year, and tells his group that, after consulting his father, it turns out they have a way to manipulate the situation. He urges his comrades to bail him out by following his lead. He tells them to claim responsibility to cover the true crime, dismissing any fear of lawsuits or damages with a terrifying sense of certainty. Joseph explains how they can bypass the consequences and smirks, noting that without a lawsuit, there is no problem. He confidently asks,
"Does anyone doubt his logic?"
He insists that even if they're caught, the Juvenile Act protects them. Ignoring their protests, Joseph flashes a suitcase full of cash, offering 10 million won to anyone who helps him find the location of
Hwang Hyun-ho's mother.
At that moment, a woman is weeping in her apartment, broken and still. Much later, Joseph is seen approaching her home. Joseph lowers his mask and confirms the target lives on the 5th floor. He finds the elevator uselessly stalled at that level, but he refuses to wait for repairs, forcing his men to take the stairs. He hurries them up, pushing his men upward, promising them they are almost there. On the 5th floor, Joseph notices a fire extinguisher stuck in the door, preventing the elevator from moving further. Suddenly, a voice from the stairs above cuts through the silence, takes a closer look at the man, who bluntly tells him that he has kept him waiting. Recognizing Cheyenne, Joseph asks in bewilderment what he is doing there. The man claims he is just in time and offers to join them, leaving Joseph to prepare a few sharp questions for the man who somehow knew his business. The conversation regarding the diner was interrupted. As Joseph lowered his mask to drop the pleasantries, he questions why Cheyenne is spending time with neighborhood kids instead of bringing him cigarettes, asking plainly what his endgame is. While Joseph's intentions hover like a threat, Xian watches, realizing the chaos with Hwang and his mother was triggered by this very tension. He prepares a dangerous question for Joseph, warned that the response must be careful. To make his intent undeniable, Joseph brandishes a piece of rebar and asks if his purpose here isn't obvious. While the others prepare their weapons, Joseph's men are already on the move. Joseph admits he's been annoyed by Cheyenne's interference all along. He mocks the idea that Cheyenne hadn't noticed him faking his help toward Hwang. To be blunt, Joseph calls him an idiot. As Joseph lunges forward with his rebar, Cheyenne grabs a fire extinguisher. Finally having had enough, the iron bar swings through the air as Joseph charges, demanding Cheyenne face him. Cheyenne pulls the pin, thanking Joseph for finally making his intentions clear. He had expected this confrontation, he just wanted to be certain before he struck. The extinguisher is aimed directly at Joseph and his group, while the thugs scramble back in confusion. In the chaos, the group orders Cheyenne's capture, but he swings the extinguisher with everything he's got. The heavy extinguisher slams into a thug, sending him flying backwards and knocking Joseph down the stairs. Meanwhile, Cheyenne is already occupied, trading blows with another attacker. As Joseph lunges forward to strike, Cheyenne uses the extinguisher as a shield and swings it with lethal precision, hitting Joseph's leg with all his might. Joseph grimaces in pain. He collapses down the steps, screaming in agony as he claims he heard his own bones crunching under the force. Cheyenne stares down at the wreckage, explaining that he has shattered Joseph's metatarsal bones, ensuring the fighter will never walk again. Joseph looks at his bloody limb in pure horror, unable to comprehend the sudden violence. The protagonist reveals that this is all due to the 3 absolute principles taught to children. The first being that a parent's orders are absolute with that. Cheyenne begins his next move. Cheyenne executes the second principle with a strike so powerful that Joseph flies back toward the asphalt. He declares that a child cannot use their power without a parent's permission, leaving the terrified onlookers in total bewilderment. Cheyenne grabs Joseph by the collar. Cheyenne reveals the third and most vital principle. As Joseph begs for mercy, Cheyenne sharply tugs on his finger to demonstrate the cost of disobedience when a parent is in danger. A child is permitted to ignore the first 2 rules and act. Dropping the broken man to the floor, Cheyenne delivers his final judgment. Cheyenne makes his verdict clear. Because Joseph's group threatened Huang's mother, treating her like family, it was a direct threat to his own family, meaning they had decided to threaten his mother too. Cheyenne looms over Joseph, who lies helpless on the ground, declaring that nothing can stop him now. He asks Joseph if he has learned his lesson. Meanwhile, time passes, and Rachel, an operative, is called into a meeting, her phone in hand. Rachel turns to the director and announces that a call is coming in from Korea. The director, a leader for the White Tiger organization, reaches out his palm to take the phone. The voice on the other end reveals a shocking truth. They have found the very person who was thought lost, the legendary masterpiece of the Mansion of the Dead, codenamed Cheyenne. While the director processes this, Cheyenne stands silently over his defeated foes in Korea. He is a perfect living weapon of exceptional quality. Designed to kill key figures with absolute precision, he was intended for the Japanese Yakuza, but plans to deliver him to the Japanese Yakuza, the organization's most elite clients. But the delivery route was disrupted, and instead of reaching Japan, Park Cheyenne was redirected to Korea, drawing attention to his presence. The director, overwhelmed by emotion, realizes 5 years have passed since the disappearance. He had almost resigned to the idea that the protagonist had died, but now hope burns bright. With tears of joy, the director commands Rachel to bring Cheyenne back at any cost. He needs the masterpiece, and he needs him now. Rachel removes her scarf, agreeing to the mission. Discarding her nun's robe, she reveals herself as the Mansion of the Dead's disciplinary officer, prepared to use force if necessary. She readies the lethal weapons attached to her limbs, proving her readiness for the hunt. The director stares at her, demanding absolute certainty. He wants Cheyenne returned safe, even if it means breaking every rule. Rachel lowers her machine guns, her expression softening with sadness as she listens to the repentant father. Kwon Byung-woo, Joseph's father, bows deeply, admitting he failed to raise his son properly and offering full compensation. The woman continues to prepare food, ignoring the heavy atmosphere while absorbing the promise of payment for Huang's treatment. Despite the businessman Byung-woo's presence, she remains unmoved. An apology will never be enough to settle this debt. Byung-woo straightens up, stunned by her coldness. Byung-woo turns his back on the woman, leaving the negotiations in tatters. He declares that efficiency is his priority, and since she refuses to negotiate, he won't waste any more time. The woman watches him leave, unaware of the threat he carries toward her world as he approaches his car. Then, as the car pulls away from the stench of the district, Byung-woo drops a bombshell. He plans to raze the entire area to the ground to build a massive commercial complex. He wonders aloud about the whereabouts of the child, only to be told that his secretary is already handling the matter. Watching the world fade through the car window, time passes, leading us to the Hannam University Medical Center, where Joseph lies broken, his wounds still fresh. Bandaged and broken, Joseph lies in the hospital bed, muttering insults under his breath as he struggles with his thoughts. He mentions the 3 absolute principles the laws use to control the angel children, and Byung-woo looks at the nurse with shock. The young fighter, confused and defensive, explains that he doesn't understand how a mere concept could cause a man to suddenly attack them. Therefore, Joseph tries to stand, hoping to demand answers, but the nurse shudders at the intensity of the command, and the room falls quiet as she reluctantly exits. The nurse complies, leaving them alone. The blow jolts Joseph's head back violently. His eyes widen as Byung-woo stares him down, his voice dropping to a deadly serious tone. Byung-woo demands to know if Joseph even understands what has truly enraged him. Regardless of the motive, Byung-woo makes it clear. Targeting a family to settle a debt is a move that must be handled with extreme care. He smiles, warning Joseph that in this adult world, a mistake should never be made twice. Meanwhile, in a dark alley, the tension breaks when someone violently kicks Cheyenne aside. Cheyenne does not resist the assault, looking up in confusion as several men surround him. He barely has time to ask who they are before a man's hand cracks across his face. With his bag crumpled on the ground, Cheyenne is forced down to the dirt. One assailant demands to know what he wants, while another pulls off his glove to reveal. The message is clear. Being an elite child doesn't matter when you're facing the weight of the adult world. As the men mock him for the injury he caused, one assailant grabs Cheyenne's hand and forces it into a vulnerable position. Then, the man crushes Cheyenne's fingers under his boot, forcing a scream of pure agony from the young man. The assailant leaves him with a cold warning that this is the adult world, and later, standing alone, Cheyenne echoes those words with a bitter, venomous glare. He flexes his aching hand, noting that a broken limb is nothing compared to the permanent loss of a life. Frustrated that the 3 absolute principles prevent him from using his powers in retaliation, he looks at his trembling palm and realizes he must hide. To stay alive, Cheyenne decides to lay low and vanish into the shadows. While wandering through his thoughts, Cheyenne is suddenly interrupted by Huang's mother, who asks if Xian is alright. He greets her, thinking it is just another problem, until he finds himself sitting at her table, silently stirring his food. He lowers his head in thought. The woman places more plates before him, urging him to eat more and promising that everything is fine. Cheyenne suddenly freezes. Recognizing her kindness as a form of parental care, he starts to eat the food she offered. He begins to eat the food she offers, watching as the woman cries out in worry. Telling him to drink water to avoid indigestion. Cheyenne complies, finishing the bottle and clearing the plate. Having finished the meal, he leans back in his chair to thank her, while she confesses how truly glad she is to see him. Straightening his posture, Cheyenne bows his head and asks after Huang's well-being. The woman pauses, wondering if he is indeed asking about her son, Huang. She confirms the operation was a success, and now they only wait to see how he recovers. With pride in her voice, she wonders aloud if it's true that her Huang was a brave boy. They would get through it, but suddenly her hand begins to shake as she realizes the gravity of their situation. Squeezing her eyes shut, she bursts into tears, unable to contain her grief. She screams that such horror happened to her son and expresses her desperate wish to destroy the man responsible. She vows to destroy everyone involved and tear apart. The woman slams her hands on the table in a rage, sending everything scattering. Cheyenne listens in silence, watching her agony before she eventually apologizes for burdening him with her pain. As she turns to leave, she realizes Cheyenne is already gone. She freezes in confusion, looking around at the sudden emptiness. She tries to call his name, but only silence answers her. Meanwhile, in a high-rise building, the atmosphere is vastly different as Byung-woo raises a glass to celebrate his construction company's latest report. Byung-woo is celebrating the hard work of his employees at Byung-wood Construction even after the parent company's bankruptcy. But the celebration is short-lived. More wine. The man is thinking about drinking, but suddenly the waiter hits him hard in the face with a bottle, sending the man flying. It was Cheyenne, who taunts the victim before grabbing 2 mugs from a tray and hurling them at the man who tried to land a hit and freezes in terror as Cheyenne's leg cracks the mugs and sends him crashing to the floor. Cheyenne quickly grabs cutlery and a small knife from the table, hurling them with deadly precision. Before the surrounding men can react, the silverware pierces through them, turning the feast into a massacre. The carnage leaves the employees in a panicked frenzy, searching for the intruder they can't see. Watching the chaos from above, Byung-woo contemplates the blonde threat while the search continues. Meanwhile, Cheyenne, having hidden under a table, crawls out with a small table knife gripped in his hands. He repeats the first principle of his training to keep himself steady. A parent's orders are absolute. With lethal focus, he sprints between several men, slicing through their legs. As he fights, he remembers the woman's vengeful words about making his enemies eat themselves. From the inside out, leaving nothing but tears, the men behind him scream in agony as their legs fail them. But Cheyenne is suddenly. The attackers realize they've been played and rush Cheyenne, but he quickly throws a tablecloth to create a momentary distraction. He seizes the opportunity, using the heavy table to pin his enemies to the floor in a crushing blow. A knife whistles through the air, but Cheyenne dodges it just in time, only for the blade to pierce the skull of another assailant. A man in gloves mocks his skill, claiming Cheyenne's hand must be broken after that impact. Cheyenne is too fast for the gloating fighter, lunging forward to intercept him. He delivers a brutal blow, then grabs the man's hand, coldly demonstrating how easily a limb can be snapped. The man collapses to his knees, leaving the man screaming on the ground as a sudden bullet grazes Cheyenne's cheek. Cheyenne turns to see Byung-woo standing on a balcony, gun in hand. The businessman admits he expected to be a better shot. As Byung-woo descends, he questions if Cheyenne is a professional or just a child from an organization called Crew. Cheyenne remains unfazed, claiming he knows nothing of such groups. Byung-woo realizes the truth when Cheyenne mentions the Hey and Ho snack bar. The realization settles in, and Byung-woo presses the gun barrel directly against Cheyenne's forehead, demanding to know exactly what that woman said. Byung-woo thought the directive was simple murder, but Cheyenne's goal is far more cruel. But to tear the businessman and everything he holds dear apart. Before the man can process this, Cheyenne's arms swing sharply, knocking the gun away and striking him before Byung-woo can react. Cheyenne strikes again, ignoring insults and reiterating the first principle of his training. Blood and a tooth fly from Byung-woo's mouth as Cheyenne declares that appearance orders are absolute. As the teenager turns to walk away, the battered businessman sneers at his perceived lack of efficiency. Despite the beating, Byung-woo vows to kill everyone even as he scrambles to reclaim his weapon. Cheyenne counters with the third principle, firing a shot that severs the support of a massive chandelier. The heavy light fixture falls, crushing Byung-woo instantly. Walking away, Cheyenne leaves behind a final chilling observation that some fathers and sons are exactly the same. Meanwhile, at a local hospital, Joseph lies in a bed, struggling to find comfort. Covering his face in pain, Joseph can barely see through the haze of his injuries. A nurse tends to him, injecting a strange-colored medicine into his arm. She warns him that while it's painful, the small dose won't kill him. She sits by his side, her expression seemingly kind. As she works, the nurse comments on how brutal school violence has become lately. Joseph looks at her thoughtfully, noting her reaction to his severe wounds. He admits the pain is immense. The nurse then brings up the recent chaos, asking what he had discussed with Ba-Young-woo regarding the 3 absolute principles. She repeats the question, pressing him about those laws as he lies vulnerable. In the hospital, a nurse leans over Joseph, repeating the 3 absolute principles to unnerve him. When he denies knowing the truth, she pulls off her wig, revealing herself as Rachel, the Mansion of the Dead's expert in infiltration, interrogation, and torture. She drops a name Park Cheyenne to see if the fighter has any reaction. Later, after leaving the hospital, Rachel makes a report to her superior. She informs the director that a significant problem has arisen. Looking over the carnage left behind, she reports that the child codenamed Cheyenne has used unauthorized force. The director reacts with sudden, intense excitement, clearly unsettled by the news. Rachel continues her report, explaining that they tracked Cheyenne to the scene, but the boy was already gone. Walking through the carnage, she steps over the wounded without a second thought, noting that the violence inflicted was extreme. This brutality directly violates the 3 absolute principles, and the director frowns, realizing that such a breach is unprecedented. The director moves toward a bookcase, noting that if Cheyenne is ignoring orders, the very nature of the Mansion of the Dead is in jeopardy. Opening the shelves, he reveals a collection of files, his expression grim as he stares at the records of the children they sell. He fears the living weapons they once controlled are now capable of ignoring their masters and targeting them instead. The director shifts the focus of the investigation, opening a file on a young Cheyenne and issuing a direct command. He orders Rachel to observe the boy and determine if he truly acted without permission. Rachel accepts the mission, ignoring the screams of a man beneath her feet, and the director offers the support of the White Tiger staff in Korea. 2 confused men enter the room, reeling at the idea that a mere middle school student could cause such chaos. Ignoring their shock, Rachel announces she is departing for surveillance to uncover the truth behind Cheyenne's sudden rebellion. Indignant men mutter as Rachel ignores them, moving with purpose. They wonder if she's truly Russian, but she has already moved on. The confusion of the onlookers fades into the background of her mission. Later, Rachel arrives at a high school. Having completed her initial investigation, she searches for her target. Realizing Cheyenne is hiding behind a fake identity and fictitious parents, she scans the crowded corridors, looking for the one boy who was once her greatest student. She wonders what he is truly up to here. Remembering him as a perfect weapon, Rachel peers into a classroom. There she spots the boy she once trained, sitting among ordinary students. But the Cheyenne she sees is playing a part, weeping and begging for forgiveness on Joseph's behalf. Rachel freezes, her eyes widening in shock at the performance. Is this truly the lethal weapon she knew, now masquerading as a pathetic, sobbing student? The charade continues as Cheyenne acts up, drawing the ire of a student sitting behind him who demands silence while glaring at the boy with pure displeasure. As the student rises, Rachel watches, wondering if this is a struggle to establish hierarchy. She remembers how the children in the Mansion of the Dead used to fight, though Cheyenne always emerged as the winner. But the sight before her defies logic. The strongest student is now lying on the floor. Suddenly, Cheyenne squints and offers a pathetic apology to his opponent. He holds up his hands to take a blow, crying out in feigned pain because a strike hit his bone. Rachel can only watch in horror as the lethal weapon plays the victim. Once the lesson begins, the school setting feels surreal. Rachel muses that to maintain a disguise, one cannot recklessly show their strength, and she suspects the 3 absolute principles might still be guiding Cheyenne's restraint. She watches him closely, wondering if she needs to investigate further. Her suspicion grows as she sees Cheyenne frowning in deep concentration while writing in a notebook, his eyes fixed intensely on the page. Rachel knows Cheyenne is special, assuming even while hiding his powers, his natural genius would shine through. But as she moves closer to his desk to offer advice, she freezes in total shock. Instead of taking notes, the brilliant warrior is busy doodling a comic strip in his notebook. Shocked, Rachel hits him on the head. She indignantly reminds him that he is in class, a moment that marks a bizarre turn for the operative. Later, retreating to the staff restroom, Rachel collapses in confusion. She removes her disguise, wondering aloud if her Cheyenne has truly become such a foolish child. He looks far too much like one of her regular students for this to be a mere coincidence. She searches for any trace of his former elegance, but finds nothing but immaturity. If this is him, the entire mission to monitor him under the 3 absolute principles is falling apart. As she exits the booth, she realizes she must confirm his identity once and for all. Sometime later, while waiting for a traffic light to change, Cheyenne winces and clutches his head. He realizes the teacher didn't actually hit him that hard, and Rachel, still hiding under her disguise, watches him closely, certain that if he isn't truly Cheyenne, he won't leave this place alive. The tension is broken when a voice calls out, and Cheyenne turns to see Wang's mother waiting for him. She greets him with a smile and asks for help with her bags, a request that causes him to freeze momentarily. However, he quickly agrees to help, accepting her kindness with an unexpected level of eagerness. As the interaction unfolds, Rachel watches from the shadows, her suspicion deepening with every gesture. Later, outside the snack bar, Cheyenne begins to eat the food she offered him. When the woman advises him to take it slow, he obeys her immediately, a level of compliance that does not go unnoticed. The woman watches the interaction in confusion, unable to grasp the connection between him and her son. Meanwhile, Cheyenne continues to eat with a mindless, pig-like intensity. As Rachel watches the sauce-stained mess he's making, she starts to doubt he is actually Cheyenne. She can't reconcile this gluttonous behavior with the man she's been tracking. Trying a bite of the food herself, Rachel is instantly overwhelmed by the heat and screams. Struggling with the spice, she desperately takes water from the woman to cool her burning mouth. Even while crying from the heat, Rachel's mind is racing with new questions. The spice is pure torture, and Rachel can't help but think the locals must be crazy to eat such poison. Cheyenne simply smiles, suggesting she eat more slowly, though his calm demeanor feels entirely alien to her. As Rachel curses him, a memory flashes. Park Cheyenne also couldn't handle the heat. Suddenly she freezes. Her eyes lock on Cheyenne, and a chill runs down her spine. He is standing there, his fist clenched so tightly, it's shaking with repressed sensation. The woman asks if the food is delicious, and Cheyenne exclaims that it is delicious, even insisting he could lick his fingers to prove it. Rachel calls him stupid, baffled by why he would force himself to eat something that clearly hurts him. Then the pieces click into place, and her eyes widen in sudden terrifying realization. She remembers how easily he obeyed the woman's request to carry her bags at the traffic light. He even agreed to help her with a heavy box without a moment's hesitation. He isn't just being polite. Cheyenne is following orders, just like Rachel had already reported the suspicious behavior to the director, certain that Cheyenne's actions only happened under a direct order. She suspected an outside client was manipulating him to ruin the construction company. The only suspect now was this woman, as Rachel watches her warily. While she prepares a meal, it's the first principle of the Mansion of the Dead that a parent's orders are absolute. Where a parent's orders are absolute, the truth became clear. Cheyenne perceived this stranger as an authority figure to be obeyed. With the puzzle solved, Rachel prepared to test her theory. She handed over the money to pay, and as the woman turned to find the change, Rachel grabbed a sharpened stick. She needed an easy way to confirm her dark suspicion, and threw the stick towards the woman. But Cheyenne moved with lethal speed, blocking the projectile with a mere fork, before leaping over the counter to intercept her. Rachel smiles enthusiastically, believing she has successfully managed to reach out to, but Cheyenne's sudden movement causes the chair to tip, and the woman screams at the sudden sharp noise. When the woman turns back, the two have vanished, leaving her change forgotten on the counter. Moments later, the pair find themselves in a different location, where Rachel brandishes her weapon once more. Since a parent may be in danger, a child is permitted to act according to the situation. So she strikes, targeting the protagonist. The stick scratches Cheyenne's cheek, but he remains unfazed and delivers a retaliatory blow that Rachel barely blocks. Determined to end this, Cheyenne intercepts her hand and demands to know if she intends to follow him all day. He shouts her name with indignant fury, and as he leans in, Rachel smiles, realizing this is indeed Cheyenne. After watching him for a while, Rachel grows suspicious of Cheyenne's sudden obedience and asks why. He is following a random diner woman, as if she were his parent. Knowing a simple shop owner couldn't be a client of the Mansion of the Dead, Cheyenne, feigning ignorance, denies knowing what Rachel is talking about. He wonders how they tracked him so easily before Rachel suddenly jerks forward, preparing to attack. Critiquing his messy attempt at a disguise, she grabs his arm and flings him over her back, slamming him hard against the ground. As Cheyenne arches in pain, Rachel pins him down, insisting it is time to return home to the many customers waiting for him. She runs a hand over his forehead, a rare moment of softness, while Cheyenne wonders if he even has a home left, his mind drifting back to his past. Cheyenne's mind lingers on a memory of a woman calling him by his name, calling him Park Cheyenne, as if he were nothing more than a tool for her use. Snap back to reality, and Cheyenne's eyes widen in confusion at Rachel's questions. But she only asks. Frowning deeply, he prepares to strike. He abruptly rises and headbutts Rachel right in the face, sending her reeling with a scream. Taking the chance to escape, Cheyenne bolts while Rachel struggles to stem the flow of blood from her nose. The sudden violence catches her off guard, and as she wipes away the blood, she realizes Cheyenne has completely vanished. She stares at the empty space, menacingly ready to pursue him, but he is gone. Cheyenne curses his luck, unable to believe the organization sent Rachel after him. In the mansion of the dead, the director is livid that Rachel has missed a prime target. Rachel, hiding in a restroom stall, quickly sheds her disguise. She reports that she has found the woman using the 3 absolute principles to control Cheyenne. Ignoring the woman's confused cries from outside the booth, Rachel remains focused. She reveals to the director that Cheyenne views this stranger as his parent. The director ponders this discovery while Rachel prepares for her next move. The director questions if this woman is intentionally exploiting the boy. Rachel can't say for certain, but she suspects she's onto something. After being told to shadow the woman, Rachel ends the call. She steps out of the booth, leaving a bewildered woman wondering where the girl went. Meanwhile, back in his office, the director considers the 2 ways to reclaim a child from their parent. As the woman wonders what happened, Rachel makes her move. The director ponders the first method of reclamation, but the mission has already shifted. Rachel delivers a chilling warning to the woman: stay away from Cheyenne. The warning has been issued, and the tension is palpable. The woman stirs her food, her voice heavy with guilt as she explains how her constant business trips have kept her away from Cheyenne. She even wonders aloud if her absence is why he isn't allowed to eat spicy food. Meanwhile, Rachel considers the first method of reclaiming children, forcing parents to surrender them voluntarily. Noticing the woman's shame, Rachel demands accountability, asserting that a parent must take responsibility for the child's welfare. As the woman bows her head in disgrace, Rachel places a hand on her shoulder. Rachel warns her to be firm and order Cheyenne back to the mansion of the dead, declaring the conversation over, but the woman suddenly refuses to comply, her gaze sharpening. She questions if Rachel's claims of her frequent absences are merely excuses. Rachel responds with visible displeasure at the scrutiny. The woman's skepticism deepens as she demands to know, has ever truly looked at the boy's condition or his school life. With confusion etched on her face, the woman continues her interrogation. Cheyenne's face and clothes are always dirty, but he always claims he just fell, and she believes him because he is just a boy. The woman clutches her apron, remembering how her own Huang always made excuses for his injuries, and how she couldn't let that happen to Xian. Tears stream down her face as she confesses her true motive. She needs to be a parent to Cheyenne, so he never ends up like Wang.
Determined, the woman declares she will protect Cheyenne herself if Rachel is too busy, defying the operative's authority.
But the standoff goes nowhere, leading Rachel to contact the director to report that the first method of reclaiming the child has failed. The director acknowledges the stalemate and, wanting a peaceful resolution, orders Rachel to transition to the second method. Rachel accepts the order and begins to shed her camouflage, preparing for the next phase of the mission. The director's second method is cold and calculated. To reclaim an angel, the parents must simply die, forcing the child back to the mansion of the dead. Therefore, Rachel makes the woman her target, and she promises to eliminate her. Later, inside a bustling grocery store, the woman browses the aisles, unaware that Rachel is watching her from behind a counter. Rachel's finger tightens on a small button in her hand, watching the target. She seethes with rage. Outraged that this woman dared to take Park Cheyenne and defy the mansion. Suddenly, the explosives hidden throughout the store are activated, and a massive explosion tears through the building. Panic and screams erupt as the fire suppression system triggers, sending water cascading from the ceiling. The woman stares in horror at the growing chaos as Rachel prepares to take advantage of the confusion. Rachel pulls the trigger, but Cheyenne is suddenly there, intercepting the shot with nothing but a frying pan. The bullet ricochets off the metal, leaving Cheyenne staring at the dented tool in disbelief. Rachel screams his name, her eyes wide with intensity, while Cheyenne looks down at his makeshift shield. He admits he only tried it because he saw it in a game, and he can't believe it actually worked. Discarding the useless pan, Cheyenne strides toward Rachel, realizing she was actually serious about the violence. He questions if bringing bombs and guns to a grocery store is a bit overkill, but Rachel orders him not to interfere, promising that she will free him from this woman's control. While the smoke chokes the air, Rachel aims her weapon once more at the woman, and Cheyenne makes a silent promise. As Rachel screams and retreats from the crashing counter, Cheyenne remembers the third principle of the law governing strength and permission, and kicks the weapon from her hands. Rachel draws a knife to strike, but Cheyenne dodges the blade, eyeing the blood dripping onto the floor as she claims she only wants him returned unharmed. But he can't not say the same, and instead grabs a can of sauce, using the metal to block her knife's path. With a sharp jerk of the can, he twists the knife from Rachel's grip and lunges. but she dodges the attempt, tripping Cheyenne to the floor and asking if he has forgotten who his mentor was. Struggling to find his footing, Cheyenne watches as Rachel regains her balance, declaring that fighting is merely a means to an end. Cheyenne clenches his jaw, his eyes closed in. Pain as Rachel looms over him, warning that this fight is just another lesson while she demands to know its purpose. Nearby, the woman tries to shield herself from the ceiling's leaks, unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. The tension is shattered by a sudden piercing cry from the side, drawing everyone's attention. Little Eugene, a distraught child, stumbles toward the woman, sobbing for his lost mother. The woman reacts with concern as the boy continues to wail, desperately searching for a mother who is nowhere to be found. Tears stream down his face, making his confusion look heartbreakingly innocent. But as he begs for help, he secretly reveals a knife, preparing to strike in a desperate hidden move. Rachel seizes the moment and swings her knife, but Cheyenne jumps aside, barely avoiding injury. He quickly finds his footing and intercepts Rachel's hand as she lunges, demanding to know if this fight is part of an official operation. She confirms it is, stating that this very combat is an operation to free him. He tries to hold her hands to keep her at bay, but she presses her small dagger closer, with a grimace. Struggling to maintain his distance, Cheyenne wonders if they have a deeper plan, but he's forced to turn away. Breaking free from his grip, Rachel warns him not to get distracted, not to let his mind wander during the fight before swinging her dagger again. Cheyenne fails to dodge, and the blade grazes his cheek, causing him to stumble as he tries to regain his footing. Realizing hand-to-hand combat is a losing game, Cheyenne grabs some canned food from the shelf and hurls them at Rachel. As she dodges, Rachel mocks him, insisting that once the woman is dealt with, he'll be sent back to the mansion of the dead as mere property. Undeterred, Rachel rushes him again with her dagger, but Cheyenne intercepts her strike by throwing a bag directly into her path. The bag bursts, sending a cloud of flour into the air. Blinded and choking, Rachel is forced to shield her face, giving Cheyenne the perfect opening to lunge with a pair of scissors. Rachel barely dodges, but the sharp metal still scrapes her skin and shears off locks of her hair. Rachel smiles at his ferocity, yet her triumph vanishes when he catches her dagger mid-air with his blades. Paralyzed by his cold precision, she watches as he questions if she truly believes he is nothing more than property. Exploiting her momentary stun, Cheyenne seizes Rachel and violently shoves her into a nearby grocery cart. She loses her grip on her dagger as the sudden impact leaves her breathless and indignant. Looking down at her, Cheyenne coldly asks if she truly believes she has a family to return to. He doesn't wait for an answer. Instead, he pushes her cart into another one, declaring that if she considers herself part of a family, then things must change. Moving closer, he secures the two carts together with a heavy-duty lock. The sound of the metal clicking echoes through the aisle. He asks if it's true that she is now little more than a thing, then walks away, ignoring her desperate cries. Nearby, a woman leans over to comfort the weeping Eugene. The woman checks on Eugene, asking where his parents are, while he prepares to strike her with a hidden dagger. But the sudden appearance of Cheyenne interrupts the tension as he rushes to the woman's side to check on her. Startled, she asks if he shouldn't be in class. She grows worried by his disheveled appearance, prompting Eugene to hide his weapon as he stares at Cheyenne, convinced the legend of the Mansion of the Dead has arrived. As Cheyenne approaches the woman with excitement, Eugene assumes Rachel has finally been defeated. When Cheyenne asks what the child is, the woman claims he is merely a lost boy she needs to take away. Cheyenne kneels next to Eugene, asking for the boy's parents' number, but Eugene can only respond with more tears. Realizing the situation is too dangerous, Eugene stops crying and decides to focus on survival instead. The woman to beg for help, hoping to use his innocence to reach his target. Suddenly, Cheyenne catches him. He puts a hand on the boy's shoulder and offers a kind smile. But as he leans in, that kindness vanishes into a cruel taunt. Wasn't anyone teach you that no one likes snotty children? Eugene looks up, terrified. He watches as Cheyenne presses a finger against his neck, wondering if the boy's savior is actually holding a gun. Cheyenne orders him to sit quietly while he prepares to deal with the woman. Cheyenne asks Eugene if he knows how to reach the director, but the boy's nervous denial is a lie. Noticing the hidden blade in the boy's palm, Cheyenne swiftly knocks it away and pins it under his foot, masking the violence with a calm facade. The woman nearby glances over, startled by the metallic clatter, but is easily fooled. Cheyenne plays the part of a protector, lying to the woman that they heard nothing, as Eugene leans his head on Cheyenne's shoulder, appearing completely exhausted. As rescuers arrive to evacuate the store, the woman frantically searches for the boy's mother, while Cheyenne pretends to help by using a phone to make a call. That call rings out within the Mansion of the Dead, startling the director from his sleep. The director is jolted from his sleep, cursing the early hour as he throws a robe over his shoulders, closing his eyes in pure displeasure while thinking that no one should dare contact him directly. But when he answers the receiver, he finds himself staring at a caller he knows all too well. The man's expression shifts from irritation to a wide smile when he recognizes the voice on the other end. It's Cheyenne. Cheyenne's voice is flat and frowning as he holds the phone. The director demands to know why Cheyenne is calling from a stolen phone, but Cheyenne is far from apologetic. He mocks the director for the nice gift of a failed operation, glancing down at the sleeping Eugene. Cheyenne laughs at the idea that Rachel and a child could ever catch him, causing the director's smile to vanish into a cold, serious stare. Noticing the shift, Cheyenne teases that the director's pride is wounded, but warns that no matter how many more people are sent, the result will never change. The director's composure returns as he offers a sharp, knowing smile, admitting that the director assumed Cheyenne would simply run away, but Cheyenne finds fleeing to be far too boring. Instead, he invokes the third principle, declaring that because the mansion of the dead is a threat to his parent, he will destroy them. At this declaration, the director falls to his knees, grinning widely. Addressing the Lord, he proclaims Cheyenne's actions as the purest blessing and wonders how anyone could have predicted such strict adherence to his principles. Calming himself slightly, the director lowers his head to negotiate, promising to spare the woman if Cheyenne returns Eugene. Cheyenne stands, coldly instructing the director to have Rachel arrive for the boy in an hour. The director closes his eyes and presses the receiver to his forehead, preparing to deliver his final word. Cheyenne tries to play the part of a guardian, calling Eugene his treasure before poking the boy's head to wake him up. Eugene jumps up with a frown, but Cheyenne quickly warns him not to look for the knife he confiscated long ago. He places a plate of food in front of the boy, telling him to sit quietly and eat properly. Later, the two are walking down the street covered in sauce. Cheyenne smiles, teasing Eugene for how quickly he finished that meal. While leaning in close, Cheyenne reminds the boy that he ate everything, but he suddenly freezes as he spots Rachel standing at the top of the stairs, watching them with a serious gaze. She calls Eugene's name, and he obeys, climbing the stairs to walk away from Cheyenne. But Cheyenne catches his attention by offering a bag of food with a kind smile, hoping the boy will take it. Rachel looks at him with disdain, noting his eerie calm, and warns that she isn't finished with him yet. Refusing the food, she grabs Eugene's hand to leave, promising to return. Cheyenne barely hears the threat, his mind already racing toward the implications of the boy's age. As Cheyenne turns to leave, Rachel coldly tells Eugene that everything would be easier if he just dealt with that woman, leaving the boy to stutter in a desperate attempt to justify himself. But Rachel's voice turns lethal, warning that they will soon be rid of him. The threat hangs heavy in the air as Rachel declares it is high time to discard useless children. Eugene freezes, his eyes widening in horror. Trembling and on the verge of tears, the boy tearfully apologizes, only for Cheyenne to suddenly rush back up the stairs. Smiling, he offers Eugene a bag of food, softly asking if the boy truly disliked the meal. He looks at him, and then the boy bursts into fresh tears, exclaiming how delicious it was. Surprised by the outburst, Cheyenne asks if he truly means it, prompting the boy to declare that everything at the Hey and Ho diner is wonderful. Desperate to stay in the safety of the shop, the boy suggests they all return to the diner immediately. In the mansion of the dead, ownership of an angel child belongs to the buyer, meaning if the parent dies, the child returns to the mansion. This cycle has defined Eugene's existence, a repetitive loop of new mothers and new families. Every time a mother is lost, the boy is reclaimed, stripped of his new life and sent away again. The pattern is relentless, because every woman he calls mother eventually meets her end, leaving him orphaned once more. Now, standing before the director, Eugene asks how many times this cycle has repeated. The weight of his past is heavy. It is his fourth time being rehomed, but the director offers no comfort, merely noting that they can always find him new families, even if he has already failed to protect every parent he ever had. The director places a heavy hand on Eugene's shoulder, warning that his failures have brought disgrace to the mansion of the dead. If he cannot prove his worth, he will be discarded like the others. Eugene freezes in horror as the director points to a row of small tombstones, the silent graves of children who were deemed useless. Staring at the markers, Eugene remains silent while the director demands he become useful to survive. Fear gnaws at the boy's heart. He wonders if he truly is nothing more than junk to be thrown away, so he realizes he must prove his value at any cost. Desperate for a second chance, he quietly asks Rachel for one last opportunity. She stares him down, demanding an answer to her serious inquiry. Eugene lowers his head in a shameful apology, but the moment is broken as Cheyenne suddenly approaches. Cheyenne steps into the light, asking a question that changes everything. Rachel smirks, asking if Eugene actually enjoyed the food. She offers the boy one final chance to prove his worth by following a deadly order. That order is to assassinate Cheyenne's mother, the very woman protecting him. Seeing a way out, Eugene claims the food is delicious, desperately clinging to his last hope of usefulness. He secretly vows to kill Cheyenne's mother, even as Cheyenne steps in, demanding the child's return. Rachel realizes Cheyenne still views them as a threat, signaling that the third principle of their training is already taking hold. She places a hand on Eugene's shoulder, reminding him of their pact. If Eugene is returned, they will leave the woman alone. Cheyenne agrees to the terms, but with a sharp reminder that because Eugene enjoyed the meal, he is now their permanent guest. There is no changing the outcome. Rachel's mission has failed. Leaning in close to Eugene, she warns him that this was his last chance, declaring their contract dissolved and promising to return for the woman. As Eugene moves toward Cheyenne, Rachel questions if the boy understands the weight of this choice. Taking Eugene by the hand, Cheyenne tells Rachel to do her worst, resolutely promising that he will fight her as hard as necessary. Eugene looks at him with wide eyes, silent as he observes
Cheyenne's face.
Sometime later, Cheyenne stands just as resolutely before turns his irritation toward Eugene for sitting at the table and asks why he is here. As the woman brings a fresh plate of food, she asks what his question meant, reminding him that Cheyenne promised to protect the child. Inside the woman's home, she insists that Cheyenne can cook for himself, setting the table with a warmth that feels alien to him. As she speaks of how their mothers were once friends, Cheyenne's mind drifts to the many faces of Rachel, wondering which one is real. The woman offers him a place to stay, sensing he has no home to return to. While Cheyenne protests, Eugene bows to thank her for her hospitality, sensing he can't afford to turn down such a chance. Suddenly, a sharp scream breaks the quiet. Realizing she never even asked his name, as Eugene introduces himself, Cheyenne finds himself dealing with the child's sudden intensity. Observing the room for the first time, Cheyenne notices sneakers drying on the balcony, a mundane sight in this unfamiliar house. He continues his survey of the living space, before focusing on the door and asking if this belongs to Hwang Hien-ho. The woman confirms the room belongs to Hwang Hien-ho and asks, "What was happening?" Cheyenne asks to enter, noticing Eugene seems to be in a trance. Approaching the door, Cheyenne steps into the boy's room, finding a space that looks completely ordinary, almost like a scene from a movie. He surveys the room with careful eyes. He scans the furnishings and notebooks, the details of a life lived in peace. His gaze lands on a photograph in the room. Showed Hwang and his mother as a happy, normal family, holding the photo in his hands. Cheyenne. He imagines Hwang in this very room, sitting in a chair while his mother brings him food with a smile. To Eugene, this is the happiness he was always meant to have. He simply stares at the photo, lost in the image of a normalcy he was never allowed to know. Eugene sits at the table, still feeling the heavy weight of everything that has transpired. Wiping his mouth, he pretends to enjoy the meal, hoping Cheyenne is in the other room so he can finally make his move. He feigns interest in the omelet before asking to pose a few questions. He presses her about her family, all while his hand slips beneath his jacket to reach for a concealed gun. He asks if she has a husband, watching her closely. She hesitates, searching for the words, before explaining that someone is already waiting for Hwang's father in heaven. As she speaks of letting him go, Eugene realizes he has found a glimpse of a real family right here. Eugene reasons that if things are that way, Hwang never had a family, looking at the woman in bewilderment. As he grows more serious, he continues, stating that a useless weakling could never truly belong to a family. The woman is visibly shocked by his coldness, and she asks what he could possibly mean when he says that in a family one must constantly prove their worth and value to avoid becoming a mere burden. But the woman suddenly stands, slamming her palm on the table in a fury. She shouts that is not what family is about. Confused, Eugene stares at her, wondering what the true point of a family could be. The woman opens her mouth to explain, but Cheyenne suddenly bursts into the room and snatches Eugene up. Cheyenne asks if the woman has eaten and if they can take a nap in the living room. He ignores her suggestion to use Hwang's room, choosing instead to walk over to the sofa with Eugene. He teases the boy by declaring he'll be sleeping on the floor, much to the woman's amusement. When night falls, Eugene frowns in displeasure as he lies on the floor, wondering if Cheyenne was actually serious. As Cheyenne sleeps soundly on the couch, Eugene gets up and notices light spilling from a nearby door. He approaches the room to find the woman lying down on the chair in Hwang's room. Eugene watches the woman touch a photo, struggling to grasp her incomprehensible nature. She smiles at strangers and calls the unwanted offspring family, a concept that directly contradicts the director's harsh warning that only the useful deserve a place in one. If family isn't about utility, Eugene wonders, what is the point? Driven by a desperate need to prove his worth, he reaches into his waistband to draw a gun. He levels the weapon at her, desperate to find an answer to his existence. Yet his hands betray him, trembling uncontrollably as he tries to shout that he deserves a family too. Suddenly, the light from the room cuts out, leaving him in the dark. And then the silence is broken. Cheyenne closes the door, watching Eugene with a heavy, knowing silence as Eugene's desperate decision. The boy stares up at him with pure horror, who meets his gaze with nothing but pure displeasure. Eugene's hands tremble, making it impossible to hold the weapon steady. Desperate to prove his loyalty, he points the gun at Cheyenne and commands him not to interfere, but when he pulls the trigger, the weapon clicks. Nothing happens. In the stunned silence, Eugene stares at the useless gun, unable to comprehend why the bullets won't fire. Cheyenne reveals the truth by clutching the stolen rounds he took from the magazine while Eugene slept. Mocking the boy's lack of awareness, he details every ounce of the ammunition, certain that even a real professional would have noticed the empty chamber, concluding that Eugene is nothing more than a careless amateur. Frowning furiously, Eugene lunges with a knife, aiming to strike Cheyenne, but Cheyenne easily dodges the blow and slams Eugene into the door. Driven by pure rage, Eugene pushes against the handle until the door swings wide. The door bursts open. Both boys tumble into the room, struggling to keep their balance before Eugene quickly drops into a fighting stance. As Eugene glares at Cheyenne, the sleeping woman remains motionless on the table nearby. Noticing her presence, Cheyenne puts a finger to his lips, hissing a silent command for the boy to calm down. Desperate for a chance, Eugene ignores him and bolts toward the woman. Cheyenne calls him a little rascal and gives chase, snatching a tie from a nearby hanger. He whips the loop of the tie around Eugene's leg and yanks hard, sending the boy crashing to the floor. Eugene cuts the tie, but the tension between them only grows as he rises, his eyes flashing with a newfound menace. The boy's gaze is intense, and looks ready to tear through anything in his way. Using the mattress to launch himself into the air, Eugene swings his arm with murderous intent. But Cheyenne is ready. He twists the remaining fabric of the tie, disarming the boy's momentum and forcing him back to his feet. Desperate to win, Eugene launches a second knife at the woman, but Cheyenne dodges with ease and snatches the weapon from the boy's very hand. As Eugene begins to lose his balance and tumble toward the ground, Cheyenne catches him by the collar, hauling him up and warning him that the real fight hasn't even begun. Eugene presses his lips together, staring up in fear as he wonders if this is truly the legendary Cheyenne of the Mansion of the Dead. Cheyenne keeps the pressure on, telling Eugene his attacks are far too obvious to land. Suddenly, the tension is broken when Huang's mother strikes Eugene on the head with a rolled-up notebook, demanding to know what they're doing. Quickly letting Eugene go, Cheyenne tries to smooth things over with the indignant woman. Eugene sees a chance to strike with his knife, but Cheyenne's sharp gaze freezes him in place. Eugene tries to save face by twirling the blade, claiming it is merely a toy, and Eugene realizes he's no match for the man's composure. Cheyenne laughs it off, explaining they are just playing to ease the woman's suspicion. Meanwhile, Eugene continues to strategize, realizing a direct confrontation won't work. The woman then warns him not to tease his brother so much, declaring that he is part of the family. The word strikes Eugene like a physical blow, his eyes widening in pure shock. She confirms it, saying that eating and sleeping under the same roof makes them family, and she wonders if he believes her. But as the weight of that word settles, Eugene begins to. Cheyenne watches him with a heavy, calculating gaze. Suddenly, a sharp ring at the doorbell shatters the silence, prompting a surprised inquiry from the woman. Confused, she heads toward the door and opens it to find Marie, the Mansion of the Dead's masterpiece strategist, bowing and apologizing for the early visit. As Marie introduces herself, she claims to be Eugene's sister, apologizing for any trouble he might have caused the night before, while the woman looks on in confusion. At that moment, Cheyenne approaches the door to see who has arrived. When Marie claims she is here to collect her brother, Cheyenne smiles and asks if she is truly Eugene's older sister. As he steps into the hallway, he faces the stranger. Cheyenne realizes Eugene has an older sister and asks her purpose. Marie claims she has come to ensure the boy's safety, reminding him of their previous agreement. Leaning in closer to her ear, Cheyenne whispers a question to the strategist. He asks who tried to kill the child, but Marie quickly muffs her voice. She clarifies her arrival is a unilateral order from Rachel and asks if Eugene really did take him. Cheyenne suggests she put her knife away first. Marie smiles playfully, noting how quick he is to understand her games. She promises that if he cooperates voluntarily, nothing bad will happen, but Cheyenne only feigns fear. He asks what happens if he doesn't, but his interrogation is cut short when Eugene suddenly runs into the scene. Eugene calls out to Marie with a joyful cry, momentarily embracing the warmth of the family he's tried so hard to find. Marie softly hugs him back, but her smile masks a terrifying truth. She whispers that Eugene failed his mission, and the director is disappointed, warning him that they could both be thrown out at any moment. While the woman is distracted by their names, Cheyenne turns to Eugene with a deathly serious gaze. Eugene doesn't react to the warning until he realizes Marie has compromised everything. Breaking away from her embrace, he snaps that she's an amateur who ruined his grand design. He insists he isn't making excuses, claiming his true plan was to conquer this family from the inside. It isn't that simple, because looking at Cheyenne, Marie reveals the truth. He is the legendary Park Cheyenne from the Dead Mansion. To mask the tension, Eugene insults the man's appearance, calling him an idiot who looks like a monkey. Even Marie agrees the description is accurate. Before the group retreats to talk, she admits her failure, and despite Eugene's displeasure, she smiles, extending a hand to him. A new plan is already in motion, so Eugene takes her hand and prepares to depart. As Marie loudly announces their departure, a lingering question remains. If they are leaving, who is watching them? Marie waves goodbye to Cheyenne, leaving Eugene behind as she prepares to depart with a heavy heart. As he walks away, the woman runs out from the apartment, smiling warmly to call him back. She promises to cook him an omelet just the way he likes it, leaving Eugene, looking on in total shock, smiles faintly in agreement. Meanwhile, Cheyenne stands in the hallway, watching as the woman asks him to play with Eugene next time, promising that more delicious food awaits them. Cheyenne promises that he will definitely bring him back. Later, at school, an apology is offered to the principal, who nervously explains that the school's anti-violence committee must now decide on a punishment for the culprit. It took some time for the school to process the chaos, as the parents of the culprits promised compensation and all the offending children were suspended. Wang's mother listened as the principal opened a folder, prepared to explain the disciplinary actions to. Suddenly, her eyes widen with disbelief as she reaches for a document. Gasped, snatching a photo from the principal and demanding to know why that person was here, showing him the photograph, horrified to see Cheyenne's face among the records. Meanwhile, the atmosphere shifts to the mansion of the dead. The principal demanded an explanation for the incident. He turns his gaze toward Rachel, who responds by apologizing to him, admitting that her plan to use Eugene to kill the woman had failed, but the director wasn't interested in her mistakes. He reminded her that her true mission was to return Eugene. She hadn't just failed to keep him away from that woman, she had ordered Eugene to kill her. Eugene to kill her! Rachel tried to justify herself, but the director cut her off. His voice is heavy with authority as he reminds Rachel that his only priority is the return of Cheyenne. While she speaks, Marie approaches the table, tea in hand, as the director shifts the subject to the weight of promises. He smirks, declaring that faith and trust are everything, and anything else is nothing but heresy. The director admits that because these children lack faith, the 3 absolute principles were created to keep them under control. The chaos of events spiraling out of. Rachel bows in submission, whispering. While Marie starts an aggressive campaign of misinformation, the director reassures Rachel that there are many ways to bring Cheyenne back without causing harm. Marie's first weapon is a leaked photo of Cheyenne capturing Joseph, sent to anyone who will look. With the operation already underway, Marie smiles as the trap begins to tighten. Later at the academy, Cheyenne strolls into the classroom yawning, completely unaware of the storm brewing. Every student glances at him with pure apprehension. Confused by the heavy silence, Cheyenne takes his seat and asks his neighbor what is going on, assuming there is a test today, but his classmate just ignores him, leaving Cheyenne to frown in confusion until the boy behind him finally speaks up. Is this true? He asks. The boy shows him a photo, revealing the malicious rumors that have already begun to target him. Cheyenne stares at the image, wondering if it's just some cheap Photoshop. He exchanges glances with his comrades, who suddenly bow in apology, admitting they were wrong about him, in shock. And one of the boys reveals the latest lie. Everyone is claiming Joseph is terrified of Cheyenne. The classmate holds up the photo again to confirm the absurdity. The rumors are spreading like wildfire, with students claiming Joseph trembles in his presence. The boy then reveals an even more scandalous image of Cheyenne smiling behind 2 men, suggesting he's friends with bandits. As the rumors grow wilder and more absurd, Cheyenne can only ask again, completely lost in the chaos. One student tries to defend himself, but his classmates simply turn away from him and Cheyenne. Desperate to clear his name, the boy pushes his neighbor, while the other student seeks refuge near Cheyenne, claiming the boy is cool. But the tension is rising, and the student looks at him with displeasure, asking what the student was thinking before menacingly questioning. End up like him. Suddenly Cheyenne stands, stopping the boy's hand with a heavy palm and smiling dangerously. He tells the boy that he tries not to show his true strength, but then asks if he even understands the concept of hidden power. He offers to take the boy outside to explain, leaving the classmates staring in apprehension. As Cheyenne turns to leave, casting one final look at the crowd. After that, as the students whisper in the classroom, they struggle to reconcile Cheyenne's true nature with the lies being spread about him. They can only wonder if birds of the same feather truly flock together, meanwhile, the rumors continue to spread like a virus. He asks a bystander if these images are real, only to confirm the digital attack is genuine and widespread. The malice is palpable. He reads the chat, realizing that once the photos were dropped, everyone fled the conversation. He just wanted a quiet graduation, but now he's left wondering if any school will ever take him again. Cheyenne really wants to graduate quietly without getting caught up in childish pranks, but stepping aside, he announces his focus is already on the adult world, leaving the boys bewildered. He proposes a secret alliance, asking if they will act as his team. The boys are stunned by the offer, but eagerly agree to follow his lead, promising to only wait for his orders. Just then, Huang's mother passes by and freezes in shock at the sight. She remembers arguing with the principal that Cheyenne isn't like this, insisting that he is simply a friend of Huang's, hoping the rumors were a misunderstanding. However, the principal has presented photographic proof of Cheyenne's growing notoriety among the students and his ties to Joseph, leading the man to suspect that Cheyenne might actually be the leader. The woman can only stare in disbelief. The principal continued, insisting that children with difficult backgrounds often went astray, warning the woman not to trust Cheyenne too much. Cheyenne stepped aside, hoping his explanation would finally quiet the rumors circulating through the school. He wondered if the others were truly as trusting as they seemed, or if they actually believed his words. Spotted someone lurking. As he spotted Marie peeking from around a corner, she yelped, realizing her attempt at hiding had failed completely. Marie offered a smile, but Cheyenne looked at her with displeasure, noting the scent of coffee gave her away. In front of Huang Hianho's house, Marie seems almost uneasy as she confronts Cheyenne. He demands to know her true intentions, but she only mocks him by parroting his own words. She smirks, claiming she has turned him into the school's biggest bully through her twisted games. Cheyenne smiles, but it is a hollow response to her provocation. He insists he never wanted this notoriety, especially when he was already popular, but she disagrees. Marie's tone shifts as she claims she meant a different kind of reputation, one of isolation. She speaks of the cold, contemptuous eyes of the other boys, filled with betrayal. Cheyenne stares at her in total shock. Her question, asking if he enjoys this hatred, hangs heavy in the air. Regaining his composure, Cheyenne realizes the photos were her doing, yet she remains certain that her plan is working. Cheyenne asks if her little scheme actually worked, and Marie admits that while it might deceive fools, time and resources are limited. He calls out her weak excuses, only for Marie to smash the tension with a lethal strike. He smirks, but the danger is real. But the tension snaps when Marie thrusts her hand into her bag and fires a lethal shot through the fabric. Hiding around the corner, he demands to know if she and Rachel carry guns everywhere. But Marie's assault is just beginning. She keeps firing, and Cheyenne realizes she's truly willing to kill him. She claims it's a joke, having foreseen his every move, and coldly orders him to die. She admits it would be much easier if he were simply disposed of. Walking towards in the alley, Marie turns to shoot, but Cheyenne is already moving. He continues his pursuit, navigating the tight corners to stay on her trail. Marie tosses her gun aside to prepare for something more personal. Cheyenne lunges from the shadows, desperate to snatch the weapon before she can use it. He manages to strip her of the gun and throw it away before slamming her toward the ground. He's about to end this. Marie clings to the weapon, launching a desperate kick that Cheyenne intercepts, slamming her violently against the wall. Refusing to back down, she pulls a knife and swings, but Cheyenne catches her hand mid-air. Forced to redirect her strike, she hits the wall instead of him. Cheyenne stares her down, asking, "Is that all?" He towers over her, clenching his fist as he looms over his prey. Clenches his fist and asks if she ever expected this. The laughter is cut short when a sudden voice commands Cheyenne's attention, causing Cheyenne to flinch with wide. She demands to know why he would act this way toward Huang's friend, while Marie watches with a cold, knowing smile. Stunned and bewildered, Cheyenne tries to find the words to justify himself, but the trap is already closing. He tries desperately to justify himself, but she begs for help, feigning sheer fright to manipulate the situation, while Cheyenne desperately reaches out to call her mother and plead for a hearing. But the woman refuses to listen, her voice rising in a furious command that makes Cheyenne recoil in dread. Bound by the absolute principles, he lowers his head, submitting to what he believes is a parental order. Then the lies begin. Marie clings to the woman, claiming she once found Eugene covered in bruises. She weaves a web of deceit, insisting that Eugene whispered that Cheyenne was the one responsible. The woman's fear grows with every word, ignoring Cheyenne's frantic explanation that they were only training with toys, as dark rumors regarding Joseph and Cheyenne begin to surface. Cheyenne steps forward, desperate to prove Marie's lies are nothing more than. As Huang's mother turns her back to the scheming Marie, a predatory smile creeps onto the strategist's face. She knows she's untouchable under the protection of their promise. But Cheyenne can't fight a lie with logic when the truth doesn't matter. He begs her to listen to his side of the story. Before he can finish, a sudden blow rings out. The force of the slap sends his head jerking violently to the side. Stunned and broken, Cheyenne stares blankly as Marie fakes a tear, casting a cruel shadow over the scene. The woman's rejection is cold and final as she orders him never to call her mother again. Horror washes over him as the woman begins to speak, leaving Cheyenne praying that his worst fears are wrong, should never come back. With Cheyenne's world crumbling, Marie quietly whispers that everything is going exactly according to plan. Meanwhile, a disguised Rachel approaches him, her eyes narrowed in feigned indignation. She moves closer, demanding to know what kind of noise he made and what he has done now. She calls him an unruly child with a chilling smile, warning that they will settle things when he returns home, leaving him paralyzed by fear. Sometime later, the director, smiling widely, credits the entire successful scheme to Marie, praising the woman like the master strategist she is. Marie continues her performance though. The mention of the Mansion of the Dead, the organization where legends are born, seems to have caught the director's attention. He quickly commands her to return immediately. Following the order, Marie ends the call, leaving the tension of the scheme behind. Meanwhile at the table, Rachel sits across from Cheyenne, watching him closely. He is covered in sweat and frowning as he struggles through the meal. Despite his anger at being forced to eat this terrible food, Cheyenne continues to eat while Rachel calmly pours sauce over the dish as if nothing is wrong. He hangs his head in frustration, his spirit crushed by the recent events. Rachel orders him to finish his meal, a command Cheyenne obeys with a heavy sense of disappointment. He must finish eating. Suddenly, the heavy atmosphere is broken by a newcomer who is thrilled to have finally caught Cheyenne. It is Byung-woo, the businessman who notes the luxury of this penthouse with a cold smile. Rachel remains unfazed by his presence. Raising a shaking hand, Cheyenne clutches a spoon, his eyes widening as he recognizes that voice. Byung-woo ignores the boy's terror, vowing to pay any price necessary to catch this damned brat. Suddenly,
Cheyenne erupts in anger, shouting at Byung-woo's arrival and demanding to know if this is some kind of joke.
Stop the chaos, eyes locked on the businessman as she demands his location. She levels her gun at Byung-woo, making a grim trade. She will spare Joseph if he gives up his target. Byung-woo, unfazed, wipes blood from his nose and confirms the deal, noting this is strictly business. He reveals that Cheyenne isn't the only one on his list. Sitting down at the edge of the table, Rachel issues a chilling warning to Byung-woo that his business must not extend to the woman in question.
The Mansion of the Dead.
Cheyenne is left confused by the cryptic remark, wondering who exactly Rachel is referring to. He assumes she means Hwang Hyun-ho's mother, unaware of the tragedy brewing elsewhere. Meanwhile, at the diner, the woman is distracted, focused only on preparing the dishes she has set out. A customer approaches, ordering tteokbokki and french fries, briefly drawing her attention away from her thoughts. As she prepares more food, she can't help but think of Cheyenne, while the customer, looking hungry, asks for kimbap too. She agrees to help, but suddenly, Hwang's mother lowers her head, her mind haunted by the photo the director showed her. In her grief and anger at how Cheyenne treated her son, she lashes out blindly. She loses control of the knife while her eyes are closed, slicing deep into her own hand. Hwang Hyun-ho rushes into the kitchen to find her bleeding, but she desperately insists she is fine. Despite her claims, she breaks down in tears. Watching her pain, Hwang Hyun-ho grips a knife tightly, remembering Byung-woo's previous instructions to handle the cleanup. The weight of the situation grows heavier. The knife is raised, a desperate blade poised for a strike in her grief. But suddenly, she hears the phone ring and answers it, her eyes widening in pure shock. Telling a patron the meal is on her, she bolts out of the diner, driven by a sudden terrifying truth. She leaves the confused man behind, desperate to reach her son. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Hwang Hyun-ho finally stirs. As Hwang opens his eyes slightly, a doctor leans over him to check his consciousness. His mother, hearing the news, hopes against hope that he has woken up. Hwang tries to speak, but he can only manage an indistinct sound. As the doctor urges him to rest, he asks if the boy can remember the tragedy that left him broken. Having regained his memories, Hwang realizes the weight of his actions and knows he must seek forgiveness.
Sobbing,
T turns his head to search for his mother, desperately calling out for her name. He cries even harder, desperate for her presence, when at that moment, Hwang catches a glimpse of the blood staining his mother's hand as she reaches for him. He apologizes through his tears, and his mother breaks down in a flood of emotion, confessing that he was truly at fault. She leans over him, eyes closed in grief, while, unbeknownst to them, the man who tried to kill her earlier has approached the hospital room entrance. Watching the reunion through the door, the killer asks his contact on the phone if he should finish them both, but he is ordered to wait. The tension snaps as Ba Young-woo announces a change in the plan, his voice dripping with a chilling smile.
Rachel erupts in fury, throwing her chair aside as she screams in outrage at their audacity.
How dare they kidnap Cheyenne? Her voice trembles with a mix of rage and desperation. Meanwhile, in a darkened room, Ba Young-woo watches the captured Cheyenne through the shadows. Muzzled and helpless, Cheyenne can only watch as Ba Young-woo smirks, promising to deal with the rebels right before his eyes, a threat that leaves him frozen in terror. Elsewhere, Rachel and Eugene sit in tense silence, waiting for the inevitable. A girl approaches them with a kind smile, offering a tray of drinks to break the suffocating atmosphere. She cheekily reminds them that their recent chaos at the construction headquarters has caused quite a mess, making work much harder for everyone. She gently sets down hot chocolate for the little Eugene, advising him to drink it slowly. Eugene takes the mug with a quiet thanks, while Rachel remains on edge. The girl takes a sip of her drink, mocking the unprofessional way the group is handling this standoff. As the girl laughs, Eugene can't help but think he should have just stayed home. She casually mentions that she handles business according to the bill, so they should check the costs. Rachel tries to redirect the conversation, questioning why this stranger is serving drinks in paper cups. The girl ignores the question, instead asking how Ba Young-woo's construction company managed to silence people, and Rachel suggests they are merely useful to one another. Even if there were problems from Bayangwood Construction, the girl suggests there is no cause for worry, but as Rachel listens, a sudden realization dawns on her, casting a shadow over the conversation. Setting her cup aside, she warns that real business is handled by professionals, not bandits. She sharply questions if Bayangwood Construction can truly be trusted. The doubt gnaws at her until her eyes widen with the terrifying truth. In a sudden outburst of rage, she grabs a chair, hurls it aside, and demands to know how they dared to take her Cheyenne. Meanwhile, a truck travels down a dark road with Ba Young-woo inside. Tilting his head, the businessman scoffs, declaring that Cheyenne is nothing more than a powerless tool without his orders. He reaches out, grabbing the man's hair. The connection to the mansion of the dead is clear, and Ba Young-woo begins to question if the absolute obedience of these children is just a form of brainwashing. He thoughtfully strokes his chin while Park Cheyenne glares at him in a furious, helpless rage. Ba Young-woo laughs at the angry look from Park Cheyenne, claiming he has just had a brilliant idea. It's a twisted one. He imagines ordering Cheyenne to murder the woman and child at the diner, a thought that leaves Cheyenne frozen in horror. The businessman's laughter echoes, mocking the horror on Cheyenne's face. He tells him not to look so devastated yet, as the true nightmare hasn't even begun. Ba Young-woo declares his next move. He will tear that woman and her son apart right before Cheyenne's eyes, and the boy will be helpless to stop him because he cannot use his strength without permission. Ba Young-woo demands to know if Cheyenne truly intended to kill them all next time. While Cheyenne is forced to wait in silence, life continues elsewhere. In a hospital, Hwang Hyun-ho sits by his mother who is recovering from her ordeal. Hwang Hyun-ho watches his mother peeling an apple. She smiles and dismisses the injury, claiming it's nothing serious. Hwang knows she always minimizes her pain, so he insists on helping. Despite medical orders to stay still, he tries to get up, prompting her to tell him to stay put. She promises to fetch a bandage and asks him to remain seated. After he settles, she walks out into the hallway. She softly remarks that he is as stubborn as his father, but as she steps into the corridor, she suddenly realizes the lights have vanished, walking into the void. At the hospital counter, a woman asks if anyone is there, unaware that a man is approaching from behind, and before she can realize the silence of the corridor, he strikes her, knocking her unconscious in one blow. As his assistants carry her away, the attacker mocks the sight of Cheyenne, who remains held down and furious. Meanwhile, in Hwang's hospital room, the door swings open to reveal a stranger instead of his mother. Ba Young-woo steps into the room, confirming the delay has been long. The businessman prepares to face the boy, eager to see the child's face. Hwang stutters in terror, unable to comprehend the presence of this cold man, until the stranger reveals his identity. Ba Young-woo declares himself to be Joseph's father. Ba Young-woo walks further into the room, trailed by many guards, to stand beside Hwang's bed. After examining the boy's injuries, the businessman admits that Joseph had treated him terribly, offering a hollow apology. Tapping the cast on Hwang's limb, he explains that inefficiency is a waste. Leaving a job half done simply requires doing it twice. He asks the frightened boy if this is true, but Hwang remains silent. Meanwhile, far from the hospital, Rachel lands on the roof of a nearby building. She realizes she shouldn't have been working with bandits and immediately prepares her next move. Using a specialized weapon, she fires a blade attached to a rope toward a neighboring building. The sudden movement catches the guards inside by surprise. Rachel uses the taut rope to swing through the air, smashing through a window with her foot. She flies into the room, her eyes burning with fury as she confronts the guards.
Byung-woo smiles, curious about the woman Rachel is thinking of.
But she doesn't answer. Instead, Rachel swings her knife to wound a guard and immediately evades another attack. With a decisive strike, she lands her own blow, showcasing her lethal precision. Her momentum is briefly halted when a guard suddenly wraps his arms around her from behind, claiming she is caught, but Rachel merely tilts her head. She jerks her head up, slamming it into his face with the back of her head, smirking as he lets go with a cry. Grabbing the man by his collar, she hurls him into another guard toward the edge of the broken window. Rachel kicks a man in the chest, sending him plummeting out of the building and into the street. Meanwhile, Hwang is witnessing the chaos unfold. As Byung-woo orders his assistants to prioritize the child, he quickly retreats into the corridor with his team. Rachel rushes out of the room, searching for the missing boy. She demands to know where Cheyenne is, but the men offer no answers. A lone guard stays behind to block her path, relieved that it is finally the legendary Rachel standing before him. With a snap of his fingers, he summons waves of reinforcements. Rachel is instantly surrounded by men pouring out from every corner. Surprise flashes across her face as she sees the lethal weapons gripped in their hands. They are as numerous as cockroaches, leaving her no room to maneuver. Suddenly, the roar of an engine fills the hall. One man revs a chainsaw, and Rachel stares at the primitive, brutal threat. She asks if they are even prepared for the slaughter, throwing aside any hesitation, discarding her knife. Rachel unbuckles her coat to reveal a hidden arsenal of weapons, preparing to greet these men properly. She begins to blister the crowd as several men collapse. Instead of retreating, Rachel meets their wariness with a chilling smile. But one man simply laughs, mocking her weapon choice. As the man mocks her, Cheyenne, still held captive by two guards, suddenly flinches with wide eyes. Before anyone can react, the man fires, hitting Rachel in the leg. Rachel frowns at the injury, her expression merely one of annoyance rather than pain, and spots a lethal secret hidden inside the man's cast. He promises her that next time he'll aim for the head. But as he makes his threat, Cheyenne suddenly tears himself free from the guard's grip, ripping the gag from his mouth to challenge the killer before striking the man with a sharp, sudden blow. The man reacts to the sudden movement from the guard's side. And as a man challenges his actions, Cheyenne asks if the man has forgotten his true allegiance to the mansion of the dead. By attacking an employee, this man has violated the most dangerous rule of all. Rachel watches in confusion as the atmosphere turns deadly, because the man moves toward the others, realizing that this standoff needs a violent resolution. With a furious frown, he prepares to strike. Cheyenne is no mere captive. He is a product of the Good Child Project, a multifunctional weapon codenamed Park Cheyenne, who belongs to the mansion of the dead. He invokes the third principle: anyone who threatens the mansion is an enemy that must be destroyed. One man tries to resist. A guard attempts to attack him from behind, mocking the young man as a pathetic rat. But Rachel watches with an uncertain heart, wondering if they even care for one another. Cheyenne reacts with lightning speed, turning to grab the man's hand before he can even finish his insult. The impact is devastating. A tooth flies from the guard's mouth as Cheyenne promises to squeeze even harder. But Cheyenne isn't finished. He warns the man he won't stop at just his teeth before. He brings a brutal blow down onto the man's head from above, ending the immediate confrontation. The sheer force sends the attacker crashing to the floor, leaving no room for resistance. Seeing the chaos, Rachel re-enters the fray, opening fire on the guards charging toward them. Watching him fight with such raw, primal power, Rachel wonders if his motivation is anything more than survival or perhaps something deeper, something connected to her. While she drifts into thought, Cheyenne continues his relentless assault, punching through the line. A guard swings a weapon from the side, but Cheyenne catches the movement out of the corner of his eye. He reacts with incredible speed, time dodging onto the table to evade the blow and kick his attacker. He spots several syringes near the table and rolls across the surface to grab them. Realizing he's escaping, the guards order the others to catch him. One guard leaps onto the table, mocking him with promises of a gentle capture. But the guard's bravado turns to agony as a syringe is driven into his head. Screams of blinding pain echo through the room, making the others hesitate. Cheyenne smirks as he rips the protective caps off the needles, scattering them across the table. He leaps into the fray, announcing it's time for their vaccination. The sharp needles of the men scream as the needles sink in, and one threatens that catching Cheyenne will turn him into a corpse. Cheyenne is suddenly upon him, slamming him into the ground before standing up to face the rest of the room. A guard brandishing a chainsaw forces the others aside, clearing a path for a slaughter.
Cheyenne turns.
Noticing the blade, the guard screams threats of mutilation, but as Cheyenne retreats, he merely asks the man to stop. politely declaring that the chainsaw is a bit excessive. Turning a corner, Cheyenne spots a gurney just as the guard commands him to halt. Using the heavy equipment, Cheyenne slams into the man and leaps back just in time. To avoid the spinning blade, the guard falls back, screaming in terror as he hits the surface of the couch. Before the man can react, Cheyenne has him tied tight and ready for his reckoning, a smirk playing on his lips as he asks why they even need a chainsaw. The guard stares in confusion, while Cheyenne begins rolling the couch. Cheyenne only smiles wider as the guard protests, clearly enjoying the chaos he's created. The carnage is immediate. The heavy cart moves forward, sending the man into a terrified scream. But the focus shifts to a much more desperate question. Where did they take Huang's mother? Cheyenne demands, pressing a syringe to the man's face to force an answer. The interrogation is cut short when Rachel approaches, signaling the end of this particular struggle. Cheyenne admits he got carried away, but his fury remains hot. He is coming for Huang's mother. He tells Rachel to get ready, leaving her stunned by his sudden intensity. Rachel dismisses Cheyenne's obsession with the woman, tossing an empty magazine aside to remind him that their real purpose was to fight those who kidnapped him from the mansion of the dead. She explains she only came to bring him home. She wonders if Cheyenne, a child of the mansion, was actually fighting to protect her. Mansion was actually fighting to protect her. As the fight ends and the enemies are cleared, Rachel suggests they return to the mansion, but Cheyenne's mind is clearly elsewhere. Suddenly, Cheyenne turns back to her, asking if she thinks he's mistaken. He kneels before her, declaring that everything he just did was for her sake. When Rachel asks for clarification, Cheyenne closes his eyes and repeats that he used force solely to protect her, not anyone else. She wonders if he's being sincere, but he only responds by, while tending to her wounds, he reveals the true source of his rage. These people dared to touch his mentor, and Cheyenne insists that such an insult to his mentor cannot be ignored. Tearing away his bandages, he smirks with a deadly resolve, warning that they must destroy everyone responsible. He tells Rachel they must show these intruders what happens when they encroach on their mansion. Covering her mouth with her hand, Rachel whispers Cheyenne's name. He stands up, urgent, exclaiming that they must hurry. Rachel is in awe of him while he wonders if his plan worked. He assumes it did, noticing that Rachel already has her weapon ready. It's time to finish this. He suggests that if she's ready, they should simply smash the place to pieces. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a woman wakes up in a panic, only to find Baiyong-woo leaning over her. Baiyong-woo apologizes for the scare, but as the woman looks around, she realizes she's no longer in the hospital. She left behind. Baiyong-woo admits he brought her here, his eyes closed as he dismisses any need for self-pity. Confusion turns to horror as she scans the room, realizing the truth of her new surroundings. Baiyong-woo confirms her suspicion. They are standing in a study room, once belonging to the children. He gestures toward a nearby desk, marking this as the space that used to belong to Huang Hian-ho. The woman stares in horror at the derogatory writing scrawled across the desk, a sign of deep resentment. Even Baiyong-woo admits he is surprised by the sheer level of anger the children are currently feeling. With a look of displeasure, the woman demands to know who he is and why he is showing her this. Baiyong-woo begins to unwind the bandages from his face, asking if she doesn't recognize him. He admits that maintaining this appearance is difficult, and as he throws off the bandages, he finally reveals his true self. Joseph's father, Kwon Byung-woo, meets with the woman, who reacts in horror as he begins to vent his rage. Clenching a handkerchief to hide his face, Bong-woo declares that everything is Cheyenne's fault. He insists that he and Joseph were nothing more than victims of the man, leaving the woman in a state of utter confusion. Byung-woo claims that Cheyenne shifted the blame onto Joseph and that the school is already rife with these rumors. Bitterly, Byung-woo laments that the adults were far too indifferent to the children. As the realization sinks in, he finally understands the full extent of the truth. Byung-woo falls from his wheelchair, fueled by a desperate, sudden need for vengeance. He declares that if he cannot protect his son, he will at least find atonement. When the woman suggests turning the matter over to the school's court, Byung-woo dismisses the idea as naive. He is stunned by her misplaced faith, reminding her that the school has done absolutely nothing. Pressing a hand against the glass for support, he recalls how the school failed to help even when Huang fell from the window. The woman stares at the glass as Byung-woo prepares to speak his final piece. Elsewhere, Cheyenne prepares for the coming storm. He readies himself alongside Marie, Eugene, and Rachel while Byung-woo drives a dagger into the windowsill. Byung-woo stabs a dagger into the windowsill, demanding action, and then he thrusts the blade into the woman's hand. It is time for revenge. He smirks, leaving the woman staring at her reflection in the steel with horror. She can only stare in terror at the reflection of her own fear within the blade. In the dark night, the mansion of the dead stands silent, while the director observes the proceedings from the shadows, watching a hooded servant with sudden confusion. Meanwhile, in a different location, Bungwoo's fury boils over as he lashes out at the encroaching organizations. But then, a voice crackles in Rachel's ear. It is an absolute order. They must strike back against those encroaching on their territory. The Mansion of the Dead demands blood for their interference. The voice from the earpiece announces their first mission, demanding they show their skills. Rachel smiles crazily at the command to destroy their enemies, and that they must make them pay for everything. Marie and Eugene listen intently as the orders pour in. Park Cheyenne finally pulls his finger from his ear and turns to Rachel. Rachel stops, watching him as he realizes he's still broadcasting.
What?
She asks in shock as Marie stares down in frustration. Cheyenne, realizing the gravity of his mistake, asks if anyone was listening. He touches his ear, wondering if their secrets have already been leaked. Marie and Eugene mock him for being an amateur, while Rachel scolds him for acting like a child despite his legendary reputation. Cheyenne turns away in shame, but he quickly admits his mistake before moving toward the window. He glances out at the school, wondering if they should even be here. After confirming the surveillance is watching, he decides they must find the woman and Hwang Hyun-ho. Rachel looks at his back with tired eyes. Cheyenne stares at his own reflection in the glass, his gaze hardening as he looks forward. But Rachel is about to interrupt his resolve. Cheyenne clenches his fist, his mind still locked on the mission they once shared. He remembers everything, and their only directive is to come and destroy. Unbeknownst to them, their every move is being captured by a ceiling camera. Dmitry Medvedev, the monitor observer, watches the feed closely. Leaning against a table, Dmitry muses that most from the Mansion of the Dead are far more dangerous than words suggest. He wonders if Rachel is the same, questioning if this will require more than just a simple agreement. Yuri, an observer, watches alongside him and asks if these targets are truly just children, or if they are nothing more than killers. After a moment of heavy silence, Yuri begins to contemplate the truth. Kwon Byung-woo slams his fist into his wheelchair, his voice thick with rage. He declares he will pay whatever is necessary, and as he covers his disfigured face with a rag, Yuri and Dmitry watch him in shock. He demands to know if they can truly deal with such threats. The question hangs in the air as Byung-woo asks if there will be 3 of them. Dmitry stands to follow Byung-woo, casually assuring him that Hyun will be late, but their strength alone is enough for everyone. Even as Byung-woo questions if 2 men can handle such unusual targets, Dmitry Medvedev remains steadfast. With a frown, Dmitry reiterates that they will handle it. Yuri laughs as he gathers the equipment, noting that Dmitry Medvedev's intensity is starting to scare him. Dmitry Medvedev just laughs in response, promising the observer that as a professional, he won't touch his client. The professional prepares himself, ready to face what comes next. Stepping up the school stairs, Cheyenne and the others move in a heavy, unsettling silence. Cheyenne looks back, his eyes searching the shadows. "Isn't it too quiet?" he asks, sensing a trap, while Marie notices the security cameras have been suspiciously disabled. Eugene turns to the group. To cover more ground against the school's weak defenders, Rachel suggests they split up. Cheyenne leans against the wall, listening closely, as Marie prepares to head toward the security room. She intends to reactivate the video surveillance, hoping to bring light to the dark corridors. Rachel instructs everyone to stay in contact via earpiece, but Cheyenne can only respond with a silent, sorrowful look. Frustrated by the silence, Rachel sighs and lowers her head. Nearby, Marie reassures the group while Eugene prepares to scout the annex, leaving Rachel and Cheyenne alone in the tension. As the team disperses, Rachel turns on Cheyenne with sudden, sharp anger. The sudden outburst causes Cheyenne to flinch, his expression shifting into one of wary confusion. Before any words can bridge the gap, Cheyenne suddenly jumps away from her, breaking the heavy silence. In a sudden flash of movement, he jumps away from her. Rachel calls out to Cheyenne, demanding to know if he is still fixated on the woman and her son. Cheyenne freezes, staring at his hands in a daze as Rachel's words sink in. But if he continues? Rachel warns him that his obsession with ordinary people will only lead them into the sights of the Mansion of the Dead and even result in their kidnapping. If he hadn't intervened, they would have remained ordinary people. Cheyenne begins to remember Hwang Hyun-ho's mother and Hyun, while Rachel insists that his very presence has stripped them of their peace forever, saying it is all his doing. Overwhelmed by guilt, Cheyenne whispers the names of the family and then his own. Rachel tells him to forget it all because the only place left for him is the Mansion of the Dead. She reaches out, placing a hand with a gun on his shoulder, but Cheyenne suddenly senses a presence to the side and shoves her away, shouting for her to get back. At that moment, everything changes. A sudden gunshot rings out, shattering the tension as a bullet whizzes past them. Confused and on edge, Cheyenne asks Rachel if she knows their attacker. The culprit is Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy commander of the Russian mercenary group Barefoot, carrying an unconscious man on his shoulder. A sly smile crosses his face as he reminds them of their last encounter in Vladivostok. Anger flares in their eyes, but before they can react, the situation takes a darker turn. Rachel cries out in fear as Dmitri tosses Marie aside like trash. He mocks the girl, claiming he's only here because a mission is a mission. He makes his intentions clear. The mansion of the dead is his target.
Dmitri remains unsettlingly calm, pressuring Rachel to act like a professional despite his obsession with her. Rachel refuses to listen, her jaw set in disgust.
Driven to her limit, Rachel pulls the trigger. The recoil of the gun jerks Rachel's hand upward as she screams, gritting her teeth in fury. She frantically swaps her magazines, realizing the chaos this barefooted mercenary is causing. While aiming repeatedly at Dmitry Medvedev, he narrowly avoids her shots, diving for cover like a predator on the hunt. Dmitry crawls along the floor, using the shadows to protect himself from the relentless barrage. He quickly fires back, forcing Rachel to dive around the corner of the landing to escape the incoming lead. While ducked in safety, she prepares for the next volley. She climbs back into the fray to return fire, shouting at Cheyenne to watch out for the mess he's dragged them into. She begins to scan for him, her voice trailing off in a realization. As the landing falls silent, Rachel freezes in an attack stance, looking around in confusion because Cheyenne has vanished. While Rachel's question hangs in the air, Dmitry Medvedev calmly prepares a fresh magazine. Hiding in a classroom with shattered windows, he surveys the destruction and the fire raging through the halls. It would be a shame to kill her, he thinks, glancing out toward the battlefield. He wonders aloud if a few bullets would finally bring her down. But Cheyenne, lurking on the other side of a wall, answers that he doesn't think she'll fall easily. With a smirk, Dmitry asks if he's so sure, then leaps from the window to launch a sudden attack. Cheyenne rushes him instantly, grabbing Dmitry's hand to wrestle control of the gun. Dmitry fires blindly, but the bullets only tear into the ceiling. Using the window frame for leverage, Cheyenne swings a heavy fist, knocking Dmitry backward. He screams that he won't back down, as his fists fly toward his opponent's face. The assault ends with Cheyenne slamming Dmitry's head into the floor with a deafening bang.
Dmitry can only lie there thinking.
Licking blood from his lips, Dmitry Medvedev wonders if Cheyenne is different from the girl he once fought. Noting that the young man is indeed a bit stronger, the sensation triggers a memory of the barefoot mercenary group. He remembers the brutal initiation of his unit, fighting through a frozen snowstorm with nothing but bare feet and chests. The trainees stood before a massive, stern brown bear, forced to hunt the beast in the Siberian tundra to prove their worth. As the creature roared with a mouthful of blood, it was this savage tradition that but those bloody victories are just shadows of the past, leaving him alone on the battlefield. The present suddenly pulls him back to the battlefield.
Dmitry Medvedev grins, delivering a devastating punch to Cheyenne's face.
Stunned by the sheer impact, Cheyenne can barely process the hit, wondering if he even felt it. The force of the blow sends him crashing through a doorway, leaving a hole in the wall. Dmitry wipes the blood from his hand, mocking Cheyenne by comparing him to a mere bear. As he inspects Cheyenne's damaged weapon, Dmitry Medvedev notices a piece of the gun is missing. He begins to suspect Cheyenne is using some sort of trickery and reaches for the truth. As Dmitry reaches for a magazine, he notices the equipment belongs to the mansion of the dead. He finds the discovery exhilarating, while Cheyenne, hiding behind the rubble, can only grit his teeth in annoyance. Wiping blood from his lip, Cheyenne realizes the massive physical gap between him and his opponent. Dmitry Medvedev merely points his gun, mocking how small the fighter looks. Dmitry's smirking gaze suddenly shifts. Something catches his peripheral vision. Rachel appears, opening fire through the broken window frame. Dmitry ducks just in time to avoid the incoming bullets, retreating behind the wall with a smirk. The shooting stops as Rachel issues a firm warning. A brief silence falls, but Dmitry knows the danger is still far from over as Rachel prepares her next move. She gives him a grim ultimatum. If he sticks his head out, she'll take 3 shots. Dmitry, wary and dodging the looming threat, can only demand to know why. Dmitry was clearly enjoying the chaos, but he wasn't her only rival. A bullet whistles past Rachel's hair as a group of armed men emerges, reloading their pistols with sinister grins. Desperate to evade them, Rachel ducks under a pole and bursts into a classroom, only to find more trouble waiting inside. Tears well in Marie's eyes as she looks down from a railing. Rachel calls out to her, and as Marie sinks to the floor, she admits she is not okay. Rachel leans over, demanding she speak clearly, only for Marie to stammer that there is another one. But the threat isn't just inside. Another figure has emerged. Yuri waves a hand with eerie friendliness as his steps echo through the corridor, approaching Eugene to ask if he is also from the mansion of the dead. The dead, right then? Let them play. Eugene says, hiding a hand behind his back as he joins the chaos. Yuri watches with a dangerously friendly smile, reaching into his bag as the tension reaches a breaking point. The silence is shattered by Dmitry Medvedev's arrogant interrogation. Rachel curses while helping Marie up, while Cheyenne pulls himself up to warn her about Eugene's involvement. He knows if there's another threat, the situation is turning deadly. Confident in his own ability to take down this strongman, Cheyenne begins to warm up his fist with a look of pure hatred. Rachel screams a warning, fearing he's taking on a force he cannot possibly overcome. Suddenly, a bullet whistles past her shoulder, narrowly missing her skin. A sniper looks out from a broken window, annoyed by the near miss as the rest of his partners prepare to move. The office becomes a slaughterhouse as Rachel opens fire, cursing her enemies while bullets tear through their limbs and chests. Men collapse to the floor in shock, clutching their wounds as screams of agony fill the air and blood begins to pool. Cheyenne orders them to take Marie to ensure her safety before the chaos escalates. Meanwhile, Dmitry Medvedev rubs his head in surprise as Cheyenne reminds him of his status as a legend of the Mansion of the Dead. After hearing the command, Rachel agrees to the plan, immediately throwing her body over Marie to shield her while she continues her relentless barrage against the pursuing men. As blood spurts from a fallen soldier's side, Dmitry Medvedev can only stare at the carnage, completely dumbfounded. Cheyenne lunges forward with cold-blooded aggression, his fist swinging with lethal intent as Dmitry Medvedev shouts for him to wait. He connects with a heavy blow that sends Dmitry Medvedev reeling to the side, though the mercenary manages to steady himself. Dmitry snaps back, swinging a powerful strike intended to crush Cheyenne, but the fighter is already dodging the assault. Cheyenne grits his teeth in frustration, his composure slipping as the fight turns more brutal. He reaches for his aching shoulder, questioning if this is the extent of his strength as Dmitry Medvedev lunges again. The force of Dmitry's massive blow catches him mid-motion, sending him crashing away, and Cheyenne barely manages to raise a block against the impact. Dmitry stands over him, holding a dripping gun and mocking Cheyenne's ability to fight. Cheyenne merely clenches his hand to stem the bleeding, calling the mercenary a capricious child. Cheyenne dismisses the man's tactics as pointless, but his eyes shift to the table nearby. He grabs a handful of pens, hiding them in his pocket with a defiant grin. A nervous laugh escapes Dmitry Medvedev as Cheyenne settles into a new fighting stance, hands still clamped over his wound. The mercenary's laughter dies as Cheyenne warns him not to regret provoking him. Dmitry bares his teeth in fury, sensing the lethal shift in the air. Cheyenne begins to run forward at full speed. Throwing away his gun and declaring that he is finished, he screams a challenge to the world. But Dmitry doesn't blink. With a heavy blow, the mercenary strikes Cheyenne into the block. The impact is deafening as Cheyenne is thrown back, leaving Dmitry staring in shock at the two pens stuck deep in his hand. Blood begins to ooze from the wounds, staining the mercenary's suit red. He gasps, realizing just how playful and dangerous Cheyenne's tactics truly are. Meanwhile, Cheyenne sits on the floor, his shirt disarrayed and his mind racing. Realizing he's grown much faster, Cheyenne rips off his shirt and flings it at the approaching man. Dmitry simply pushes the cloth aside and asks if the rules no longer apply. Swearing he won't finish this quickly, the mercenary ignores the pens Cheyenne was using to strike. Dmitry Medvedev freezes in the middle of the office, momentarily stunned by the sudden destruction. He senses someone nearby but only finds a creaking door and a taunting invitation to keep fighting. Meanwhile, Cheyenne sits hidden behind a desk in another office, his body trembling from exhaustion. He curses the reality that Rachel was right. Dmitry is far more dangerous than he anticipated. Looking at his reflection, Cheyenne mutters in anger, questioning his presence in this nightmare. Rachel's words echo in his mind, haunting him with the truth. Everything is falling apart because of him. He realizes he is the root of all these problems, the reason their normal lives have been shattered. As Rachel's face flashes in his memory, his whole body droops under the weight of his guilt. Cheyenne clenches his fist in a surge of mounting fury. But their standoff is shattered when Dmitry Medvedev kicks the door open, declaring that their break is over. Cheyenne realizes Rachel was right. If it weren't for him, Dmitry Medvedev wouldn't be here. Dmitry Medvedev stands stunned by the intensity in the young man's eyes as Cheyenne begins to tear his shirt, vowing that the Hyanho family will never be in danger because of his mistakes. He uses the fabric as a makeshift bandage, muttering through clenched teeth that it is all his fault. Tearing his shirt open to stand bare-chested, Cheyenne declares he must finish this himself instead of whining. Dmitry Medvedev watches, sensing a dangerous change in the boy, and reaches into his pocket to end the fight once and for all, lunging forward with a dagger. Dmitry lunges to stab Cheyenne's chest, but the boy dodges with impossible speed. In a flash, Cheyenne seizes the mercenary's arm and strikes with such force that Dmitry Medvedev's limb goes limp. Before he can react, Cheyenne leaps into the air, driving his knee directly into the man's face. Cheyenne lands and asks if he's surprised, leaving Dmitri bleeding from his mouth. The older man can barely process that a child just landed such a blow. Sliding across the floor, a stunned Dmitri asks if Cheyenne's name was Park Cheyenne. He seems almost forgiving of the assault despite the chaos. Dmitri licks the blood from his lips, staring at the boy who stands before him, fists clenched, and eyes burning with resolve. Meanwhile, in the dark streets of Vladivostok, Dmitry Medvedev is haunted by the name Park Cheyenne. Leaning against a car under a high-rise, he exhales a tired breath, lighting a cigarette to stave off the chill of the night. He questions the purpose of this mission until a figure emerges from under a bridge leading a group of small children. Dmitry Medvedev is skeptical of the task. Rachel stops before him, making it clear these are no ordinary children, but specialized weapons from the Mansion of the Dead. Rachel observes the children, the elite products of the Mansion of the Dead, before glancing at Dmitri from the barefoot mercenary group, noting he looks much younger than expected. Disdainful of her comment, Dmitri watches as Rachel hurries the children into the car, warning them that an explosion is imminent.
Dmitry Medvedev remains oblivious, distracted as he
Lights a cigarette and stares thoughtfully at the ground. But before he can even wonder what she meant, a multi-story building erupts in a massive explosion right behind him, raining debris everywhere. The man curses the sheer scale of the destruction, wondering if the explosion was her handiwork, while Rachel simply buckles in, composed and ready to move. Once safely inside, Rachel settles into her role as an instructor, asking the group if they enjoyed the excursion. She reprimands David, a student weapon, for his excessive use of grenades, reminding him that a professional must always maintain their tools. She then offers quiet guidance to Amy and others, maintaining strict discipline even in the midst of flight. Finally, she turns her attention to Eddie, her instructions becoming more specific, telling him to discard the candy he took, lest the sweet traces lead enemies straight to them. Dmitry Medvedev mocks the idea that these children could be a threat, but Rachel remains unshakable. She clarifies the truth she has long maintained. These are no ordinary children. They are the elite products of the Mansion of the Dead. As Rachel reaches into Dmitry Medvedev's mouth to take his cigarette, he watches her approach with sudden, frantic apprehension. Rachel takes the cigarette, noting it's harmful to children, before mentioning rumors that Dmitry is related to the infamous Bare Fist. He reacts with indignant confusion to her sudden claim. "I'm kidding," Rachel says, as she tosses aside the fabric covering her head, freeing her hair, while an elastic band hangs from her teeth. Staring with a mouth slightly open, a moment passes in the heavy silence. Rachel notices his intense gaze and asks what it is, but Dmitry awkwardly brushes it off, leaving her to wonder if he was simply staring at a scar on his forehead. Dmitry Medvedev asks if the children also worked for the Mansion of the Dead, questioning if he has truly seen the truth. Rachel touches the scar on her forehead, preparing to reveal the story of a true genius she once raised. She remembers little Park Cheyenne, the boy the mansion gave a legendary new name before they lost him to the world. Now, she mourns the boy, hoping that if anyone ever sees him, they will let him know he is remembered.
Dmitry stammers, confused by her words, until Rachel explains
that she is looking for a child with a unique tattoo on his back. Gazing at Cheyenne's back, Dmitry realizes the legend has finally been found, even as he clutches his own broken arm.
Dmitry Medvedev looks at the boy with a strange grin, admitting that Cheyenne is more than just a small child.
But before Cheyenne can react, Dmitry charges him, swinging a dagger with lethal intent while tearing away his own clothes to prepare for the fight. Determined to resolve this like men, the second in command of the Barefoot group shows his true ferocity. They call him Dmitry Medvedev, and Cheyenne can only watch as the blade of the heavy dagger descends toward him. With a desperate, quick movement, Cheyenne ducks, barely avoiding the steel that shears through his hair. Before he can recover, Dmitry seizes him by the neck, dragging him close, and slams his knee into Cheyenne's torso with bone-crushing force. Cheyenne, though gasping, grabs the man's hand and delivers a brutal headbutt to his chin, sending the giant reeling backward.
Dmitry Medvedev has just stabbed him in the chest, leaving a bleeding wound that
he sighs in pain, wondering if the blow actually cracked his ribs as he curses his luck. The veteran combatant is ready to go again. Dmitry demands more combat, and Cheyenne can only turn to face him, stunned by the man's relentlessness. Then the giant lunges, waving his arms as he prepares to strike with a lethal dagger. Cheyenne leaps back with incredible speed, struggling to track Dmitry's movements as the man lands blow after blow. He's wondering what kind of monster he's actually fighting as Dmitry aims for his head with the blade, but Cheyenne manages to duck just in time. The dagger misses and slams into a cabinet with a deafening bang, leaving Dmitry to scramble to pull the weapon free before he can launch his next assault. Dmitry Medvedev strikes again, his weapon whistling through the air as he demands to know how much longer Cheyenne can dodge him. Cheyenne, stunned, raises his hand in a desperate attempt to defend himself from the oncoming blow. But Cheyenne finds an opening, catching the blade with a heavy gold medal. He taunts the fighter, asking if he ever received any awards as a child, leaving Dmitri frozen in shock. The impact is so violent that the dagger is embedded deep into the gold. Seizing the momentum, Cheyenne launches a brutal kick directly into Dmitri's stomach. Using the medal as a lever, Cheyenne twists it sharply, wrenching Dmitri's arm painfully to the side. A heavy object slams into his throat with blinding speed, knocking the wind from the aggressor. Dmitri coughs up blood, stunned by the iron certificate being pressed into his throat. Cheyenne mocks him, calling the medal a souvenir from Korea before he follows up with a devastating blow. A heavy punch to the chest follows, sending blood flying as Dmitri collapses in agony. Cheyenne shakes his hand, looking as though he could add this brawl to his resume. With the fight won, Cheyenne turns to leave and find Rachel, but his eyes suddenly lock onto a folder of photos. And then, the sight of them leaves him in a daze. Even as Dmitri reaches for a hockey stick to fight back, Cheyenne can only stare at the contents. Dmitri lunges forward, swinging the stick with desperate fury. Cheyenne suddenly jumps aside to evade the strike. The hockey stick crashes into the director's desk, shattering it and sending files flying everywhere. Dmitri Medvedev curses, looking forward with hatred before Cheyenne lunges again, pinning him down. Cheyenne grabs him from behind, his palm pressing firmly against Dmitri Medvedev's neck. He notes that even with broken cartilage, the man refuses to stay down. He thoughtfully adds that Rachel, resisting, Dmitri Medvedev shrinks away, desperate to break free from the hold. Cheyenne tightens his grip, squeezes his hands tighter, beginning to strangle him until the hockey stick falls and his body weakens. Dmitri Medvedev collapses to his knees. After a moment of strangulation, Cheyenne lets the man fall lifelessly to the floor. Standing alone, he stares at the folder containing his photo, where there are— Inside the folder, Cheyenne finds a collection of photos that include not only himself, but the director too. He stares at the images in disbelief, questioning everything he thought he knew. Meanwhile, at the school building, Eugene walks along the edge of a swimming pool. He stares down at the water, seemingly lost in thought. The silence is broken when Yuri approaches, startling the young man. Yuri asks what he's looking for, causing Eugene to jump away in shock at the sudden presence. He hadn't heard anyone approaching, but Eugene's fear turns to excitement as he realizes Yuri is no ordinary person. Smiling, Yuri holds a bag and offers a series of apologies. He wonders if he has scared Eugene too much. Meanwhile, Yuri touches the sensor in his ear, trying to reach Rachel, but he realizes the connection is dead. He explains that his jamming device has cut off all signals in the area. While Yuri opens his bag, Eugene reaches for a knife, desperately trying to maintain his professional composure. To avoid a direct confrontation, Eugene decides to play a much more dangerous game. Taking a deep breath, Eugene's facade breaks as he begins to scream. He wails with such desperate intensity that Yuri can only watch in confusion, wondering if the boy is actually crying. Eugene continues his performance, feigning fear and claiming he just wants to go home to deceive Yuri. But as he watches Yuri's eyes, Eugene realizes the deception has failed. The man is onto him. Before he can react, Yuri swings a bat, catching Eugene mid-tear. The force sends Eugene flying backward through the air. He hits the ground hard, sliding across the floor until his head snaps back. Stunned and frowning, Eugene can only process the cold efficiency of the strike. Yuri rests the bat on his shoulders, laughing at the boy's amateur theatrics. As a newcomer to the barefoot, he's already earned the nickname Bandit. Eugene stares at him, blushing with frustration as Yuri asks if he'll cry like that every time he gets hit. Underneath the hooligan persona, Eugene's mind drifts back to a much darker time. He was once a good child of the Mansion of the Dead, undergoing brutal training to master the art of manipulation. This specialized education prepared him to execute any order, regardless of the cost. He remembers drawing the attention of arrogant guards by crying loudly, using his vulnerability as a tactical shroud. He looks up in his memories, facing the very guards who once wondered how a child like him ended up there. Eugene's tears are nothing but a mask. While he plays the part, chaos has already broken out elsewhere. A bloody radio transmission alerts the gatekeepers that a child has slipped through the perimeter. Panic spreads as the security detail realizes something is horribly wrong. The main gate is a slaughterhouse with guards lying dead in their stations. As another guard rushes toward Eugene to investigate the disturbance, Eugene begins to wipe away his tears, hiding the lethal instinct that lies just beneath his innocent facade. "I came with my dad," Eugene says quietly, a lie designed to exploit the guard's compassion. He watches as the man dismisses his presence, thinking only of a child in need of care. But the deception ends abruptly when Eugene pulls a knife and strikes. He knows all too well that a child's tears are merely a tool to trigger a target's instinct. The second guard's suspicion comes too late. He watches in horror as his partner falls lifelessly to the floor. He can only gasp as the reality of the massacre sets in. Stunned, the guard stares at his partner's lifeless body, realizing the danger he is in. A scarlet puddle spreads around the guard's head as he realizes he is bleeding out, his fingers frantically searching for a pulse that isn't there. As the guard searches the darkness for the killer, he wonders if it was truly that child. Suddenly, Eugene appears behind him, a lethal agent from the Mansion of the Dead, and drives his dagger deep into the man's chest. He is a chillingly efficient weapon, trained to obey without hesitation. Sitting amidst the corpses, Eugene reports his successful mission to the censor, proving he can execute any order regardless of the circumstances. Even as he fulfills his duty, a flicker of confusion crosses his mind. Meanwhile, Yuri searches his bag for a new tool, while Eugene realizes his childish act has failed to manipulate the situation. Yuri pulls out a weapon with a sadistic grin, asking if more hits will finally make the boy roar. Instead of fear, Eugene only stares back with excitement. The tension snaps as Yuri charges at him with terrifying speed. Eugene narrowly dodges the swing, but Yuri's sheer strength shatters the very ground beneath them. The sheer power behind Yuri's swing leaves Eugene in shock. The intensity has reached a whole new level. Swinging the bat in a menacing arc, Yuri asks how he likes the spectacle as he prepares something special. Eugene desperately tries to dodge, eyes glued to the whirling weapon. As he presses his body against the floor to escape, a sickening crack echoes from his hand. Yuri closes in, relentless. Stumbling and losing his balance, Eugene begins to fall. With a sadistic grin, Yuri brings the bat down on Eugene's leg with crushing force. Blood sprays in every direction as Eugene begins to cry, scream in absolute agony. In agony, in a final desperate move, he reaches for the knife tucked in his pants, spinning it toward Yuri. As the combatant closes the distance, Eugene swings the blade in a futile attempt to wound his attacker, only to have his hand catch violently on the iron railing. Eugene goes jumping over the edge, falling with a loud crash as he hits the ground hard. After he screams in agony, Yuri looks down and coldly offers a death sentence, 10 seconds. Watching him closely, Yuri mocks his situation, telling him to try and run as far as those little legs can carry him. Yuri smirks and holds up his palms to begin the countdown. 10, he says, forcing Eugene to crawl desperately down the stairs while Yuri calls out, 9. As Eugene rolls off the landing and hits his side again, he realizes 8 is just the start of a nightmare. This is an unusual opponent, and in his mind he repeats the stakes, only 10 seconds to live. He struggles to his feet, but blood begins to spurt from his injured leg once more. Exhausted and fading, Eugene sighs and thinks was wrong. Yuri suddenly leaps from the landing, swinging a bat with lethal intent at Eugene. Eugene narrowly leaps back, stunned that the countdown hadn't even reached 10 seconds yet. A malicious laugh escapes Yuri, his pride swelling as he mocks the boy's confusion. As the bat descends, Eugene desperately thrusts his knife forward to meet the blow. Instead of a block, Yuri sends him flying, throwing Eugene straight into the deep pool. Yuri clenches his fist, in triumph, reveling in the cruelty of teasing an innocent child. As Eugene sinks through the water, his limbs struggle against the suffocating weight of pain. He descends toward the bottom, his mind fading into a dark realization. Is he truly just a useless child? He can only remember Cheyenne calling him exactly that. He couldn't remain part of the family, a realization fueled by memories of fighting with Cheyenne, who once yelled that he would be kicked out soon, while Rachel focused on her weapon, commanding them to stop their teasing and prepare for what was coming. A tense silence followed as Eugene asked Cheyenne if he truly believed they could save Aunt Hyen-ho. Cheyenne froze in shock at the question, and Eugene added the crushing truth. Anne Hyen-ho had given up her rights to him, meaning they were no longer a family. Eugene clenched his fist, expressing his resentment toward the woman and the strange concept of family they had been taught. Looking down as he struggled to make sense of the bond they had lost, he continued stating that family shouldn't be like that, driven by such sudden reasons. Cheyenne asked if Anne Hyen-ho and her family were truly his, leaving Eugene stunned and unable to answer. He could only recall the tender way she used to stroke his hair, a memory that left him looking down in sadness. Returning to the present, Eugene gripped a folding knife, using the weapon as a symbol of the harsh reality he knew. It was a cold definition of connection, nothing like the warmth Cheyenne tried to offer. Cheyenne reached out to touch his head gently, promising to ask her about it next time they met, leaving Eugene staring up in surprise. Cheyenne sets the knife aside, offering a warm smile and a promise to include Eugene next time. Shocked by the sudden warmth, Eugene can barely ask if he heard correctly. With a grin, smiling as he confirms the plan, Eugene can only stare ahead, lost in a daze. Meanwhile, the peace is shattered by a cruel voice. Yuri watches from the water's surface, mocking the boy by asking if he's nothing more than a discarded can of alcohol. Eugene breaks the surface, coughing violently as water pours from his face. He begs for help, but Yuri only grins, watching as Eugene desperately struggles to keep himself afloat. Eugene looks up with terror in his eyes, coughing as he shouts that he cannot swim. Yuri only laughs at his misery. Treating the boy like a discarded can of alcohol, Yuri mocks his struggle, even handing him a bat with a sadistic grin. As Eugene desperately waves his arms, Yuri extends the weapon, taunting him with a cruel question. "If you can reach it, you will be saved," Yuri sneers, watching the boy reach for the bat in a desperate attempt to survive. Eugene realizes he is facing a monster who takes joy in torturing children. Eugene manages to grab the end of the bat with his small hand, but Yuri pulls back sharply, forcing the boy to lose his grip and drop the weapon. Yuri responds with a cold, mocking sneer. Eugene watches with feigned fear as Yuri offers empty concern, waiting for the perfect moment to slip beneath the surface. He sinks into the depths, staring up at his tormentor with nothing but pure hatred. As Eugene's motionless body floats on the surface, Yuri chuckles, tossing the bat over his shoulder and claiming he tried his best. But the mission is not over. Suddenly, Eugene erupts from the water, lunging to grab Yuri's leg with a desperate life-or-death grip. Yuri turns back, looking completely puzzled as Eugene uses his momentum to drag him toward the edge. Yuri crashes into the pool, gasping for air and coughing violently as he realizes the boy never stopped fighting. There is no mercy in Eugene's eyes. He uses every bit of his training to lock his arms around Yuri's neck. The predator has become the prey. Eugene mocks, as he continues to choke the life out of him. With a manic smile, the boy reveals the truth. He isn't a helpless child, but a delegate with a purpose. Yuri bites his lip in terror, desperately thrashing in the water and begging for mercy from the boy he once thought he had broken. Eugene continued to struggle, refusing to let go of Yuri's neck despite the desperate fight for survival. Eugene stubbornly squeezes, eyes locked on his target, while Yuri looks on with mounting terror. Gasps for air, Yuri swings his bat at Eugene's elbow to force a release. Pain seizes the boy as the strike lands, forcing him to finally let go and scream. Yuri grabs the bat and begins to lift it, mocking Eugene's size before swinging the weapon with all his might. The blow comes down hard, but Eugene dives, swimming frantically behind Yuri to escape the lethal strike. Gasping for breath at a distance, Eugene wipes the water from his eyes, realizing the safety of the deep. He feels lucky to have escaped into the depths, but the nightmare isn't over. Yuri climbs onto the pool ropes and turns back to taunt him with a threat. Eugene watches in shock, wondering if Yuri is simply playing games instead of killing him. The confusion turns to terror as Yuri pushes off the rope, swinging his bat with lethal intent. The bat whistles through the air, but Eugene is already gone. He dives deep into the shadows of the pool, barely dodging the strike as he vanishes. Beneath the restless surface of the water, through the ripples, Eugene watches his attacker. From above, Yuri balances perfectly on the ropes, resting his weapon on his shoulders. With a terrifying ease, he mocks the man below, asking if hiding is better than taking damage. Wondering exactly how much longer Eugene can hold his breath, Yuri approaches the edge with a predatory, crazy smile. Dazed and desperate, Eugene realizes his opponent is a complete lunatic. He knows he has to get away, so he swims as far as he can into the depths, while Yuri merely exhales with regretful anticipation. Yuri stalks him from above, perched on the rope, and mocking the boy's panic. He warns that rushing will only make the struggle shorter. Desperate and gasping, Eugene realizes he is running out of air in this watery tomb. He dreams of a quick breath at the surface, but he knows he cannot reach it in time. Suddenly, the nightmare intensifies as Yuri descends with a predatory grin, swinging his bat with lethal intent and smashing it directly into Eugene's head. Crimson blood begins to bloom in the water, a grim sign that Eugene's end is near. Struggling to survive, he stares up through the haze of pain, searching for any chance to counter the man sitting calmly before him. Yuri watches his dangling leg move through the pool, asking with a dangerous smile if he is ready to die. Refusing to die, Eugene swims at high speed toward the next protective rope. He pulls a knife from his grip, reaching back with a desperate clenching fist to reach upward with all his might, cutting the rope. Yuri, meanwhile, rushes towards the unexpected movement, exhaling in shock before plummeting right into the pool. Gasping for air at the surface, Eugene struggles to keep his head above the water, taking a massive breath, dives deep into the water once more. Yuri glares, convinced Eugene is cheating, while Eugene eyes him seriously, swinging his knife through the resistance of the water. Yuri swings his bat, but the dense water makes the weapon feel like a heavy, useless toy. While Yuri struggles against the liquid resistance, Eugene closes the distance with a predatory focus. Eugene realizes that while large objects are slowed by the water, his small knife provides the perfect fast-moving advantage. He strikes, dodging Yuri's reaction as he begins to braid a rope around his victim's neck. Eugene slams his weight forward, pinning Yuri and choking him with lethal force. As Yuri fights for breath, the air escapes his lungs, leaving him helpless against the unrelenting pull of the rope. They struggle beneath the surface as the pool water slaps restlessly against the walls. Eventually, Eugene surfaces to gasp for air, watching as Yuri's body drifts upward. The man's face is frozen in terror, the rope still tightly cinched around his neck. Eugene mocks the dead amateur, proving that size was never the deciding factor. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Rachel bites a magazine into her gun, preparing for the next fight. Meanwhile, a hail of bullets erupts as Rachel and Marie fight to survive a frantic pursuit. A shot grazes Rachel's leg, leaving it bleeding, yet the two women refuse to slow their advance. Marie watches in surprise as they narrowly dodge the gunfire. The onslaught shows no signs of stopping. Rachel fires back, her shots tearing through the crowd and bringing many agents to the floor. As she maneuvers Marie behind cover, staying low, Rachel emerges to continue the deadly exchange. As the dust settles briefly, Marie asks if Rachel is all right, but her eyes tell a different story. "What is happening is much more serious than I assumed," Marie admits, suggesting a retreat. Rachel's response is absolute. "No, we will destroy them all." Treating it as an absolute order, Rachel prepares for the next round by "An order," taking a magazine from her coat. Rachel notes that Xian is busy with Dmitry Medvedev, leaving them to handle these frivolous agents, while Marie leans heavily on her exhausted legs. Rachel stares at her last magazine, wondering if it's enough. Marie opens her phone to search for information, stating that they underestimated the threat posed by Dmitry Medvedev and Yuri. While Rachel views this as a sign of weakness, Marie insists it is simply a fact. Despite their injuries, Rachel deftly reloads her weapon and then turns her gaze on Marie with a cold, suspicious stare, demanding to know how. She knew Yuri was present in the first place. Marie freezes, stalling for time. She turns away, pretending to feel guilt, but a tiny hidden smile creeps onto her lips as she covers it with her hand, claiming it was just an amateur mistake that Eugene would laugh at. Marie hides her true intent from Rachel. Rachel stares at her in disbelief, demanding to know why Marie would betray their bond. The wounded operative's voice cracks with fury, wondering how someone under the mansion's control could ever turn on them. But it was merely an order. Marie calmly reaches for a cross necklace, only to discard it as she drops the bombshell. They have found a way to bypass the absolute principles. Rachel stares at the fallen jewelry in despair, the weight of this discovery sinking in. Marie looks forward defiantly, her eyes cold as she answers Rachel's desperate question with, "He has returned." The news leaves Rachel paralyzed, and before she can react, Marie sharply pulls the magazine from her gun and mocks her. Rachel stands frozen, caught completely off guard by the betrayal. Seeing the empty weapon, Rachel swings it furiously at Marie, but Marie strikes first, thrusting the magazine into Rachel's wounded leg before swinging a kick aimed straight at her head. Rachel blocks the blow and demands to know how Marie knows her name. Marie recoils in a sudden panic. Suddenly, a shadow falls. A gun is pressed to Rachel's head by a cold agent who declares it's over. The weapon also threatens Marie, who is shielding herself, but Rachel only snarls that they are idiots. A hand reaches for her hair and a heavy man slams Rachel's head into the floor. He smirks, pinning her down and telling her to stay calm. He declares it's finally their turn, as a wounded man looks on, shouting a question. Marie's smile is anything but kind as she surveys the aftermath of her betrayal. The chaos has ended, leaving Rachel unconscious and being dragged by her hair through the corridor. After ordering the cleanup, Marie asks with a sly, chilling gaze if they are going to find Cheyenne next. Rachel's eyes flicker open, bruised and bloodied, just as the storm begins to brew elsewhere. At the institution, Ba Young-woo hands a knife to Wang Hyun-ho's mother, demanding she take revenge. The blade gleams in her hand, a weapon meant to kill Cheyenne, but the horror in her eyes suggests a far different fate awaits the boy. Her trembling hands can't decide whether to strike, even as Joseph watches her with a mocking smirk. But the smirk fades when she rejects the weapon, declaring that Kwon Byung-woo is no father at all. She casts the knife aside with pure disdain, leaving Byung-woo to watch in stunned silence. Then a sudden strike rings through the empty room as she finally snaps. Byung-woo presses a handkerchief to his bleeding cheek, muttering that the woman is proving far more stubborn than he anticipated. Suddenly, the office door is thrown open, and a group of powerful figures marches inside. While the woman recoils in horror, Ba-young watches her silently from behind his shoulder. Meanwhile, Park Cheyenne calmly stuffs the information he needs into his jacket. His body aches as he stretches, looking down at the lifeless body of his opponent lying on the floor. He scoffs at the fallen enemy, mocking the man for being nothing more than a stupid bear. A fight with a Russian mercenary in the director's office would sound absurd to anyone, yet Cheyenne continues down the corridor, wondering how this organization manages to hire such specialized help. He realizes that such high-level access is a luxury few can afford. Suddenly, he freezes. He notices a ceiling camera watching him with interest, confirming his darkest suspicions. The realization hits him hard. He curses loudly and begins to run. Cheyenne sprints through the facility, heading straight for where he knows the truth lies. Around the corner, he finds them, heavily armed men in bulletproof vests and business suits. Seeing Cheyenne, the agent shouts in disbelief, finally finding the man he was looking for. But he won't finish his sentence, as Cheyenne slams a knee into the man's face, turning it into a mess. Annoyed by the constant comments about his hair, Cheyenne swiftly parries a sneak attack and delivers a crushing uppercut to the man's jaw. The fighter sends him crashing to the floor, his combat unyielding and relentless. As the chaos unfolds, the surrounding agents are sent flying in every direction. One man reloads his pistol, but Cheyenne grabs a comrade and uses him as a human shield, forcing bullets to tear through the helpless man's stomach. As allies scream for the gunfire to stop, Cheyenne mockingly asks the shooter if he knows how much it actually hurts. Desperate to aim for a headshot, the gunman struggles to maintain focus amidst the carnage, but the shot is never meant to be. With a swift elbow strike, Cheyenne knocks the gun away, sending the bullets sailing harmlessly overhead. Cheyenne swings his mace with the crushing pressure of a bear, completely destroying his opponent in a single brutal stroke. As he stands over the wreckage, his eyes burn with nothing but pure hatred. Meanwhile, the battlefield fades as Rachel slowly begins to regain consciousness. She finds herself sitting on the floor, trapped by pipes and secured to the wall by her wrists. Marie sits before her with a serene smile and a steaming cup of tea, acting as if nothing has changed. Rachel can only stare in disbelief at her captor. Calling her a damn traitor, Rachel jerks forward, but her bound hands leave her helpless. Marie isn't interested in selling the mansion of the dead. She only wants to prove who is the ultimate masterpiece. She takes a slow sip of her tea while Rachel watches in indignation, demanding an explanation. Marie reveals that the director himself once called Cheyenne the greatest masterpiece of all, a legend who achieved everything while still a child. She admits she can't help but wonder why everyone is so obsessed with him. Her grip tightens on her mug, consumed by a single question: why is everyone so obsessed with him? Marie rises and approaches Rachel, dismissing the legend of Cheyenne as nothing more than a memory of a stupid teenager. She squats down to avoid a counterattack, her movements calculated and cold. Marie sneers, claiming the director's praise was nothing more than idealizing a ghost from the past. She mocks Rachel by touching a scar on her forehead, suggesting the director only lied to cover up his mistakes. When Rachel lunges to strike her, Marie simply laughs and evades the blow effortlessly, suggesting that worshipping others is just a mask for her own failures. Marie stands back up, determined to prove her superiority to the director herself. Marie pulls back her sweater, driven by the desperate need to prove she is the greatest masterpiece here. On her wrist, a monstrous number is inscribed in large letters, revealing her true identity as masterpiece number 2, the strategist for the Mansion of the Dead. Rachel watches her in silence before turning toward the monitors. The security feeds display the chaos within the facility. When Rachel sees Cheyenne on screen, she freezes, watching as he assumes a combat stance and destroys the camera. The signal suddenly cuts, leaving only static. A grin slowly spreads across Rachel's face. Confused by the sudden change in mood, Marie watches her. But Rachel only mocks her, calling the strategist an upstart and asking if she's simply angry because the director is still. Rachel continues to twist the knife, asking if Marie is merely desperate for validation from Park Cheyenne. The strategist's hand begins to shake as the mockery persists, driven by an inferiority she cannot hide. Rachel only intensifies the insult, dismissing her as nothing more than a perverted commodity. Overcome by a cocktail of uncertainty and fury, Marie clenches her jaw. She snatches a gun from a nearby bag with a sharp, decisive movement. Then she fires. The shot grazes Rachel's cheek, a brutal warning that Marie is capable of much more. Marie presses the barrel to her own forehead, threatening to turn a graze into a fatal hole if the insults don't stop. That one more insult will turn her scalp from a mere scratch into a fatal hole, yet Rachel only smirks, feigning a sense of wonder at the sudden violence. Their psychological warfare is cut short when the door swings open and Kwon Byung-woo rolls in on a wheelchair. Wiping blood from a fresh wound, he feigns nonchalance as he apologizes for interrupting their squabble. Accompanied by an escort, Byung-woo enters as well, asking if their conversation was truly more important than the business at hand.
Byung-woo can barely hide his fury at the humiliation, but his thoughts are interrupted by the grim reality of their situation.
He stares at Rachel in her helpless state, a flicker of pleasure crossing his face as Marie calmly packs her weapon. He tells Marie that he will deal with the fallout later, dismissing the man currently unconscious in one of the institution's classrooms as nothing more than a minor disagreement.
Byung-woo continues
To explain that the operation on the roof is proceeding exactly as planned. The orders were executed with pinpoint accuracy, and even the dangerous Hwang Hyun-ho has been eliminated. Marie praises his efficiency, grateful that the chaos has gone so smoothly.
Byung-woo smiles, claiming he is glad to work with someone so reasonable. But the moment is cut short when his own escort suddenly pulls something from his jacket
And presses a chemical-soaked handkerchief over Byung-woo's face. The chairman's eyes roll back as he slips into a dark, forced unconsciousness. As he fades away, the escort coldly remarks that the chairman shouldn't be sad, for he is simply following orders. Marie watches the betrayal with a smile, while the escort coldly asks if this isn't simply how adults operate. The man adjusts his glasses, leaving the unconscious businessman behind. Marie leans in, coldly stating that Byung-woo's usefulness ended the moment he attracted Cheyenne's attention. Marie had expected a certain impact from her plan, a legacy built on the cruel obsession of a father for his son, but Byung-woo was no longer able to respond. Marie turned toward the computer monitors, searching for Cheyenne, but she was met with nothing but static. Confused by the interference, Marie stared at the broken feed, wondering what was happening. Then, Rachel's voice cut through the silence, explaining the terrifying truth about the Mansion of the Dead. Certain children were raised as exceptional talents known as masterpieces. These elite weapons were even given unique code names, and in Marie's case, she was known as Masterpiece Number 2, the Strategist. Marie listened intently to the legend, but Rachel was only just beginning to reveal the real meaning of that title. Marie's mind is haunted by the director's words, claiming one child is the greatest masterpiece of all. And that possibility leaves her shuddering. She can't accept that there is someone superior to her. Then, as she voices her tormenting question, the room is plunged into total darkness. The screens go dead and the lights fail, leaving the man's companion staring in confusion at his phone. Suddenly, the ceiling above them begins to crumble. Marie screams for him to move, but it is too late. Cheyenne bursts through the debris, looming over the man with lethal intent, and strikes him with such force that his glasses shatter. Watching him from the shadows, Rachel realizes the truth. Cheyenne is indeed the greatest masterpiece among the children of the Mansion of the Dead. The legend has arrived, landing in a perfect fighting pose. The battle fades into a memory, revealing the legend himself, Park Cheyenne, the undisputed #1 masterpiece of the Mansion of the Dead. The director once praised him above all others, a status that seemed to weigh heavy on the young boy. Walking through the corridors with the director, Cheyenne was met with hateful glances from the other children, a stark contrast to his divine status. They approached a heavily guarded door, the gateway to the very essence of the mansion's power. As the door opens, a soft light falls upon Cheyenne's face, though the scene is far from beautiful. Inside a lavish office, the director celebrates the arrival of the mansion's greatest creation. An impressive man stands in the center, serenely adjusting his gloves, his skin marked by intricate tattoos across his shoulders. The tattooed man stands by a treatment chair, readying a special machine as the director congratulates the boy. He leans in, questioning if the young Cheyenne truly understands his destiny. Cheyenne clenches his fists in hostility, while Marie watches from the doorway, her eyes flashing with bitter contempt. She craves the position he holds, her face twisting with an envy no child should possess. Erupt as Cheyenne violently shakes off the man's touch. Rachel tries to warn him, but Cheyenne ignores her, already sensing the truth behind the tension. He rolls up his sleeves, ready to beat the answers out of her, ignoring her taunts about attacking a girl. Suddenly, the tension snaps into violence. Marie draws a blade, the steel gleaming as she prepares to strike. Cheyenne skillfully dodges, wondering if she is truly acting on her own or if she has bypassed the 3 absolute principles. He decides to worry about the rules later and dashes forward, knocking her weapon arm aside with a heavy strike. He follows up with a sharp elbow to her face, but she blocks it, her glasses flying from her eyes as she admits she lacks his raw strength. But she is faster than she looks, reacting with a sudden jerk, slamming her grip tightly around his neck. Marie's momentum throws Cheyenne off balance with a strange force. He can't help but wonder what kind of technique that actually was. As he struggles to regain his footing, Rachel realizes the technique used is unlike anything taught in the Mansion of the Dead. In the confusion, Marie seizes the opening and bolts out of the office door, leaving them behind. Rachel shouts at Cheyenne to pursue her, insisting he must catch the girl immediately. She warns that someone else is lurking behind Marie, a secret that must be uncovered at any cost. Cheyenne is confused by her claim, but Rachel won't waste a second on explanations. She screams at him to move faster, forcing Cheyenne to curse and dash after the target. Cheyenne sprints down the straight corridor, chasing the girl as he questions if Rachel's warning is even true. But he quickly realizes that truth doesn't matter right now, only the chase does. He pushes forward with relentless intent. He realizes that whether it is Marie or someone else, they both know how to bypass the three absolute principles. Determined to get answers, he marches forward, shouting for Marie to stop and listen to his question. Marie ignores him, ducking into a classroom, but even as Cheyenne follows, it's clear she has already set a trap. Marie laughs, holding a variety of chemical flasks in her gloved hands. She warns Cheyenne that this is only the beginning before donning a respirator, and then she hurls the substances forward, sending the glass flasks crashing together. The collision triggers a massive explosion right above Cheyenne's head, forcing him to dive for cover. Huddled beneath his jacket, he realizes the caustic stench of sodium and ammonia is filling the room. He needs to move. Cheyenne begins to run, weaving through the office tables to escape the relentless onslaught. He knows Marie is not giving up, and the hunt is only getting more dangerous. Struggling to breathe through the toxic smoke, Cheyenne barely manages to avoid a sudden strike that cracks the wall behind him. He narrowly dodges the blow, but his defenses are already failing. The acrid fumes breach his protection, forcing him into a violent, choking fit as he tries to cover his face. He has no time to recover. Marie is advancing with lethal intent. Marie swings her blade relentlessly, slicing through his jacket and wounding his arm. She follows the strike with a devastating blow to his side, forcing him to grit his teeth against the pain. Marie taunts him, mockingly asking if this pain is where Dimitri once struck him. Cheyenne struggles to breathe as the toxic fumes burn his eyes and lungs. He desperately searches for anything he can use as a weapon, but Marie is too fast, shoving a table out of his way to strip him of his chance. She knows his tactics all too well. She mocks his resourcefulness, noting he always relies on his surroundings. When backed into a corner, Marie isn't the only one who can think on her feet. She grabs a globe from a nearby table and smashes it into Cheyenne's hands. Pinned against the wall and bleeding heavily, Cheyenne can barely protect his vital organs from the assault. He realizes his wounds are becoming critical, but there is no time to dwell on the pain. Another explosion of chemicals forces him into motion, driving him to run. He scrambles away, his mind already racing for his next move. Cheyenne throws his worn-out burning jacket at Marie to create a distraction, but she swats it aside easily. He is already gone, leaving only a trail of blood behind as he retreats through the office exit. The trail leads out into the corridor, where a weary Cheyenne stumbles, his hand pressed against his wounds. He can only mutter about how Marie is attacking him repeatedly, a dangerous game that's pushing his limits to the breaking point. He wonders aloud where the cleaners will be when they find the blood-stained floors. Suddenly he freezes, the memory of Rachel's smirk haunting him. He clenches his fist, wondering if his very presence is the cause of her gaze. Is this all his fault?
The library is incomplete.
Chaos with books scattered everywhere. Marie finally arrives, a predatory smile on her face as she clutches her blade, calling out to him by a nickname. She spots him up the stairs, and looks comically surprised that he's still pretending not to hear her. Despite his heavy bleeding, she begins to climb, bringing the blade close to her face. Seeking to get even, she prepares to strike at his pride by bringing up his title. Meanwhile, Park Cheyenne hides behind the library shelves, squeezing his hands to stifle the agonizing pain. He can feel the predatory presence of Marie approaching, her footsteps echoing through the hollow, empty rooms. In a chillingly monotonous voice, Marie remarks that children are typically named for their talents, but Marie dismisses the director's praise, believing the man is simply handing out nicknames too easily to any child who shows promise. She ignores the weight of the legend and follows the blood trail, her footsteps moving closer to her prey. She stalks forward, following the trail of red marks on the floor toward her prey. Turning the corner with a sharp jerk, she shouts, demanding to know how such a talentless person could ever be considered the best in the mansion of the dead. But as she rounds the corner, the space is empty, leaving only a pool of blood and a bloody cloth behind. Marie stares in confusion at a discarded stapler on the floor, squatting down to inspect the mundane object, but a disdainful voice cuts through the silence, mocking her for talking so much. Before she can react, Marie realizes her opponent is right behind her. She attempts to turn and strike, but her blade is blocked by a book, bringing her face to face with Park Cheyenne. She is stunned to realize she isn't bleeding. Her mind races as she realizes he actually used the office tool to defend himself. The answer is right there. Staples are embedded deep into her skin, telling her she lacks the basics. Cheyenne delivers a brutal punch that sends Marie skidding across the library floor. Immediately after that, chaos erupts. Holding her in place, Cheyenne points to a library sign, reminding her that silence is the first rule here. He demands she answer only his questions. His voice turns threatening as he grabs Marie's cheeks, demanding to know if there is a way to bypass the three absolute principles. Marie can only think of the rumors that Cheyenne is the greatest masterpiece ever produced by the Mansion of the Dead. Cheyenne towers over her, his eyes burning with a desperate, irritated need for the truth. He squats down to her level, repeating his demand. How can the principles be broken? Marie smirks at the question, mocking the very notion of the brainwashing that only the stupid believe in. Wang Hian-ho perks up, desperate for hope, but Marie only laughs, asking if he truly wants to know the secret of the principles. Her mind drifts back to a time of luxury, a large, spacious house. In those days, her parents watched her study with nothing but admiration. Little Marie turns to her mother, setting down her pen to reveal a sheet of paper. Marie points out a theoretical error in her mother's work, having already corrected it among the stacks of papers on the table. However, even her brilliant young mind realizes that certain complexities require an expert's knowledge. So she cannot offer a final judgment. Her serious explanation is cut short by a tender gesture from her mother. The woman smiles, thanking her brilliant daughter for helping with the heavy workload. After a playful moment of warmth, time shifts forward to a peaceful afternoon. As the tray settles, Marie looks at her mother, ready to speak her mind about the documents on the table. She points out a blatant mistake in the theory her mother is currently writing. Surprised by the child's keen eye, her mother looks up from her work. Marie, wearing the innocent smile of a child seeking praise, suggests a much better method for the calculations. Instead of admiration, a heavy silence falls and the woman appears visibly uncomfortable. She thanks her daughter, but her demeanor has shifted into something strained. Holding her head in her hands, the woman claims she needs to rest and retreats upstairs. She orders no one to disturb her, her voice heavy with an unspoken fatigue. The tension rises as she tells her husband to sleep in another room, slamming her bedroom door shut with a finality that echoes through the house. The father tells Marie to leave her mother alone, claiming she is merely stressed. Marie nods understandingly, though the air in the room feels increasingly thick. After her father slips out for a moment, the woman emerges from her room in the dead of night. She wanders into the hallway, where a surprised Marie stands waiting. Marie informs her mother that while she was resting, she finished organizing the data. Marie gestures toward the table of sorted papers with a smile. Her mother looks at the documents in surprise and asks Marie where her father has gone. Marie smiled and replied that he didn't say. Her mother runs her, hands through her hair, vowing to find out next time. Marie agrees, but curiosity leads her to follow her adopted father into the night. Marie's investigation reveals a devastating truth. Her mother's husband is sharing his life with another woman. As Marie begins to detail the evidence, her mother explodes in a rage, slamming the table to silence her child. The woman insists she has heard enough, leaving Marie staring in bewildered confusion. As her mother reaches for a carafe of coffee, Marie tries to warn her that caffeine might be harmful while she is under such immense stress. The truth is met with violence when Marie's mother suddenly slaps her, the impact sending her coffee flying across the room. Marie reels from the strike, clutching her stinging cheek in shock. Her mother screams in a blind rage, questioning if Marie truly thinks she is so smart, leaving the girl trembling and confused. The woman lashes out with bitter words, claiming that no one could ever replace her. Documents and evidence are trampled into the carpet by the spilled liquid, a chaotic mess that reflects the fractured family. The director watches the fallout, noting that such emotional instability is problematic. Later, Marie sits quietly in the director's office, staring blankly as she holds a mug in her trembling hands. Still feeling the weight of her mother's rejection, Marie offers a guilty apology. The director reaches out to soothe her, suggesting that people are simply intimidated by those who surpass them. He sits beside her with a feigned warmth, praising her for being the smartest in the Mansion of the Dead. His smile is more of a predatory grin, illuminating a path that leads straight into the web of a madman. Tearful and uncertain, Marie asks if he truly means her, but the director's response is immediate and manipulative. He insists her talent must never be wasted, ensuring she remains bound to his cause. He commands her to use her brilliance for the benefit of the mansion, and Marie, finding a dangerous sense of purpose in his words, can't help but smile as she feels needed in the place she is trapped. All this was told by the adult Marie. Marie remains caught in the memory of the director's praise, resenting how his interest shifted solely to the genius Cheyenne. She turns her frustration toward him, demanding to know how to bypass the three principles, but she only receives a mocking retort. Cheyenne tries to refocus the conversation, but Marie's resentment boils over into a sudden violent outburst. She bites his hand to break free, and as Cheyenne swings a fist in response, he finds himself facing a sudden shift in momentum. Marie catches his fist with a sudden practiced movement of her boot. Regaining her composure and her blade, she thanks him for the chance to catch her breath during this brutal duel. She lunges forward to attack, her movements far more predatory than before. Cheyenne scrambles back to escape her grip, cursing at what he thought was a mere distraction. But as Marie lets her hair fall loose, he realizes this is no trick. Her expression hardens into something lethal, her eyes glowing with a terrifying intent to kill. She announces she is finally getting serious. The blade flashes as she closes the distance in a series of sweeping, deadly steps. She lunges with overwhelming force, but Cheyenne manages to dodge the incoming strike by bending low. She is a blur of lightning-fast strikes, attacking from every angle with terrifying precision. Marie smiles, closing the distance to finish him. Marie smiles as she kicks his leg, sending him crashing to the floor. She claims she can predict his every move. As she lunges with her blade, Cheyenne desperately snatches a book from the shelf, using the heavy tome as a shield a split second before her steel pierces through it. He rips the blade from her hands, but Marie looms over him with an evil grin. She asks if he can feel the gap in their strength, her hair wild and disheveled. With a violent heave, she topples a massive bookcase to force him even further away. She wonders if he ever realized that despite their childhood training, some gaps remain insurmountable. Marie steps over the wreckage, advancing on Cheyenne with a terrifying ease. She questions if he finds it strange that they were trained to dismantle professionals, not just adults. As a manic light flickers in her eyes, she clutches her head, claiming something is exploding inside her brain, pushing the limits of his sanity. Exhausted by her madness, Cheyenne wonders how much longer this will last, but Marie is already moving. She grabs a heavy book, treating it like a lethal weapon. Cheyenne watches in shock as she closes the distance. Before he can even react to her speed, claiming her status as a masterpiece, Marie swings the heavy tome with lethal intent, slashing it hard against Cheyenne's injured arm. Marie is too persistent, catching Cheyenne off guard and preventing him from defending against a strike that lands directly on a previous wound. She sarcastically claims this pain is all part of her strategy. Struggling through exhaustion and nearing the railing, Cheyenne realizes he is cornered by her relentless assault. Marie smiles, mocking him as she advances to deliver a finishing blow. She calls him a fool, her eyes gleaming with malice as she prepares to strike once more and declare her absolute dominance, proclaiming that Marie is the absolute best within the mansion of the dead. But her triumph is short-lived, for Cheyenne is still standing. He mocks her confidence, asking if she truly believes that is enough. Even as blood flows from his wounds, Cheyenne's gaze turns deadly, fixed intently on his opponent. He refuses to go down easily. Desperate, Cheyenne lunges for a nearby table to use as a weapon. Cheyenne slams his hand down on the floor, nearly striking Marie with his force. Then, with a sudden strike, he shatters nearby glass to craft a jagged weapon. Lost in memory, he recalls his instructor's words. This dual-handed technique is a deadly art, meant for killing. Even as a child, his eyes held the coldness of a seasoned fighter.
He raps.
A shard of glass and paper to use as a dagger, while his other hand grips a chair leg in the Alexander Kaliarnas style. Driven by righteous anger, Cheyenne lunges at Marie, and she barely has time to recognize the lethal movement. Is that Alexander? With one devastating blow, he incapacitates Marie, striking her body and her pride, leaving her unable to even speak. Marie's dominance is shattered as Cheyenne stands over her defeated body, having finally brought the fight to a close. He leans over her, pressing a shard of glass against her throat. Cheyenne pauses. For a moment, regaining his composure, he curses under his breath, the tension still thick between them. He vows that this will
be the last time, discarding the glass before hoisting the unconscious Marie onto his shoulder. To him, her talk of breaking principles is nothing but nonsense.
As Marie slips into oblivion, her last thoughts drift back to the director, losing herself to darkness. But peace is nowhere to be found, even where the chaos began. In the dark corridors, the floor is littered with the bloody corpses of those caught in the crossfire. Under the watchful gaze of a katana inscribed with the name Zero, a man stands in the moonlight, looking out over a grim scene where the wounded director lies in a pool of blood. Zero smiles, a mysterious smile, his silhouette casting a long, proud shadow over the misery unfolding below. The atmosphere at the institution is suffocating, left even more gloomy by the heavy silence on the roof, where several guards have grown restless. One guard, visibly unhappy with the stagnation, asks his companion if the ordeal will finally be over soon. The other guard replies that they can only wait for a signal, leaving their fate, and the fate of the man they are meant to throw off in the hands of someone else. As the sky begins to weep with rain, the guard looks toward the unconscious Huang Hian-ho and mutters about how annoying this waiting truly is. He wonders aloud why they can't just finish the job and leave this place behind. The guard's voice drops as he realizes something is wrong, crouching down toward the unconscious boy. He asks a chilling question. Had Huang Hian-ho been listening to them this whole time? A dangerous light glints in the man's eyes as he realizes the boy was eavesdropping. Freezes in terror, grabbing the boy by his collar. The man scolds him for eavesdropping while others suffer, and dragging him toward the roof's edge while the boy begs for mercy. In the chaos, the man throws Hwang Hien-ho so hard he hits his back against the fence, leaving him broken and terrified by the reality of his fall. The grim scene plays out on the roof, where the memory of a long fall and the sight of flowers like a garden remind Hwang Hien-ho of a grave overcome by nausea. He presses his hand against his face, covering his mouth and experiencing an uncontrollable fit of sickness. As the guard curses the rain and the boy's reaction, the atmosphere shifts. Suddenly, a small boy named Eugene emerges from the darkness and rain, his gaze as cold and lethal as any seasoned fighter. In the midst of the chaos, Eugene, a mysterious figure appearing as a child, steps toward the kidnappers to confront Hwang Hien-ho. He mocks the man, calling him a useless loser before the leader of the group can even react. Confused and caught off guard, Hwang Hien-ho demands to know who he is, only to be met with a chilling response. Eugene claims he will become a regular customer at the diner, a promise backed by a lethal threat. He tightens his grip on a knife, his smile signaling the start of a predatory strike. As the kidnappers prepare for combat, the tension escalates toward a bloody confrontation. The leader readies his weapon, unaware of the storm about to break. Before anyone can blink, Eugene moves with impossible speed, stabbing two grown men and leaving them screaming in his wake. The suddenness of the assault leaves the remaining kidnapper gasping in pure shock. Hwang Hien-ho watches in disbelief as Eugene, this small child, proves to be a seasoned combatant. The boy remains calm, eyes locked on his prey with lethal confidence. Desperate to regain control, a man curses and reaches for his weapon. Hwang Hien-ho's horror peaks as a firearm is pulled from under a jacket. He begins to realize that in this world, even the most unexpected children are armed to kill. And so a desperate battle erupts. 3 armed adults versus a small boy with deadly, unnatural skill. Hwang Hien-ho freezes as a gunman slams a magazine into his weapon, leaving the boy completely defenseless. He is haunted by the child's words about being a useless loser, and the weight of his own inadequacy crushes him. Hien-ho tenses up, hanging his head in shame, knowing he feels truly pathetic in this moment. But he grits his teeth and looks up at the chaos, unable to simply accept his weakness. As the man aims his gun and curses at Eugene, the young boy is driven to his knees by a sudden bloody wound. Pain pierces Eugene's leg, as his shoe soaks in blood, leaving him trapped and unable to escape the impending shot. The gunman, fueled by rage, steadies his aim, desperate for a lucky shot. Suddenly, Hien-ho snaps, losing his temper completely. He lunges forward, striking the man's shoulder to block the shot and shocking everyone on the scene. In a moment of pure desperation, Hien-ho bites down hard on the man's ear, tackling him to the ground in a fury. He screams at the man for targeting a child, but the gunman only threatens to kill him for his interference. Before Hwang Hien-ho can even react to the gun, Eugene's terrifying speed allows him to strike a decisive blow. Eugene smiles at the efficiency of the strike, noting how useful the boy has become. Rain falls heavily across the battlefield, masking the sounds of the chaos unfolding in every direction. Nearby, tucked away in a black car, Marie slowly begins to regain consciousness. Her limbs are tied, and she finds herself staring at Rachel, who looks down at her with cold indifference. Marie struggles against her restraints, desperately asking about Cheyenne. She tries to recall his last words, but her mind is a fog. Rachel dismisses her attempt at evasion as a poor excuse. While Cheyenne races through the corridors to find survivors, Rachel decides the games are over. She produces a syringe, injecting Marie in the leg before discarding the tool with casual indifference. It's a drug meant to force confessions, and Rachel mockingly suggests a few more doses might be fatal. But despite her lethal threats, Rachel reaches out and violently grabs Marie by her hair. Marie meets Rachel's cruelty with a manic smirk, claiming she's only interested in destroying their mansion. Then she drops a bombshell that leaves the interrogator reeling. She mocks Rachel's sudden concern, questioning if the legend of the Mansion of the Dead is finally coming to life. Marie's smile widens as she prepares to deliver the final devastating truth. Zero is alive, and the revelation freezes Rachel where she stands. Meanwhile, Cheyenne pushes deeper into the building's labyrinth. Searching for any sign of life, he wonders if Hwang Hien-ho's classroom lies just ahead in the darkness. Park Cheyenne freezes in shock as he discovers Hwang Hien-ho's mother lying alone in the park. He reaches for her, crying out, praying the woman is safe, only to find her moving, though she remains semi-delirious. As she calls out for her son, Cheyenne reaches for the door, but his hand stops mid-air. Paralyzed by a sudden chilling memory of the woman's face and the smug expression of Rachel, he stands frozen by the door, unable to move. Overwhelmed by guilt for the chaos he's caused, Cheyenne stares at the floor. The heavy silence is broken when Eugene appears around the corner, checking in on the mission. He asks if Cheyenne is actually still there. Cheyenne looks at the boy and tells him he looks terrible, before spotting Huang Hian-ho limping forward on crutches. He wonders if the boy is truly alright. Huang Hian-ho stares at Cheyenne in confusion, asking what he is doing there, just as Eugene begins to explain the situation. Eugene is busy boasting about how Cheyenne looked like a monkey and acted stupid.
But the truth is that Cheyenne was the one who dismantled the bandit group.
As Eugene brags, Huang Hian-ho can only stare in disbelief, questioning if this is really the same Cheyenne he knew. The boy marches toward the hero, demanding to know what the hell is going on. Huang Hian-ho frantically shouts about Russian mercenaries in a place called the Mansion of the Dead, demanding to know how Cheyenne is involved in this nightmare. Suddenly, Eugene's attention shifts as he notices a woman lying unconscious on the desk and calls out in a panic.
Huang Hian-ho rushes toward his mother, terrified by her condition, while Xian reaches out to help him.
But Xian suddenly freezes, paralyzed by a sudden chilling sensation from the darkness. That dread comes from the shadowy corridor behind the group. As Huang Hian-ho desperately tries to wake his mother, Eugene stands frozen at the threshold. Cheyenne looks toward the darkness and turns to Eugene, commanding him to take Huang Hian-ho and his mother away immediately. He orders them to find Rachel in the garage and stay there. A confused Eugene asks what is happening, but Xian places a hand on the boy's head, telling him not to worry. Once the boy is settled, Xian turns his attention to Huang Hian-ho. Cheyenne lifts the woman to her feet, promising to explain everything to Huang Hian-ho and Eugene, though his eyes betray a heavy sense of regret. Clenching his fist, he can only offer a hollow apology for failing to protect them. Huang Hian-ho silently exits the room, carrying the woman toward the exit as they flee the chaos. Eugene helps lead them toward safety, but as they turn to leave, Huang Hian-ho demands answers for the lies and apologies. Cheyenne remains silent, knowing the full truth is a weight they aren't ready to carry just yet. Cheyenne agrees to the terms, but as the group disappears around the corner, he looks into the shadows and orders whoever is hiding there to step into the light. A dark figure slowly emerges, and Cheyenne watches with intense concentration. A man approaches with a knowing grin, questioning if the legendary Cheyenne's reputation was actually true. Is he really the one they talk about? The newcomer, holding a cloth, admits the rumors of a legend made him tense, yet he finds Cheyenne underwhelming and far less scary than expected. Cheyenne cuts his rambling short, demanding to know his name. Jang Hyun, the man answers without hesitation. Yun's dark, captivating eyes hold an intensity that draws one in like the darkness itself. Meanwhile, in the freezing lowlands of Siberia, the snow falls heavily over the base of the Barefoot group. Guards clutching machine guns stand watch at the entrance of a place known as
The Bear Cave. A scarred man sits leisurely, raising a drink to ask his visitors
why they have come. Beluga Kozlov, the strategist of the Bear Wind, eyes the guests, wondering if they came for more than just a polite visit. Opposite him sits Vincent, the writer of the Mansion of the Dead, who looks thoroughly bored. He notes the serious atmosphere on the men's faces, though someone behind him remains smiling. Vincent begins to speak about the Beluga Kozlov. The strategist of the Bear Wind is clearly irritated with the Barefoot organization and raises his bottle in frustration. The tension thickens as another member joins in, questioning if the recent move was a coincidence. The man contemptuously calls the group a fake while the strategist continues his drink. The conversation shifts to a brewing conflict in Korea involving Sasha Denisov, a tactical instructor for the Barefoot organization, to avoid war with the Mansion of the Dead. The group has sent a much more dangerous representative,
Dmitry Medvedev, the second in command of their organization.
Sasha's mission is interrupted as Igor Medvedev, the formidable Barefoot leader, is introduced mid-flight. High above in a specially prepared plane, Sasha attempts to object to the mission's direction, but he is swiftly insulted by a man accompanying Vincent, who mocks Sasha's stature. This blatant disdain causes Sasha to boil with rage. Fuming, Sasha asks if his height is being mocked and snatches off his glasses before he can react to his own anger. Thin, blade-like threads whip through the air. One lethal thread scratches his cheek, catching him off guard. As Sasha tenses up and looks toward Beluga, the strategist simply chuckles, casually touching one of the deadly threads. High above the tension in the hall, a group of children watches the confrontation from the second floor. Vincent looks at them, noting how the children peer down like a web of witnesses, and asks if this isn't nothing less than child abuse. The silence is broken by Beluga Kozlov, who draws a revolver and declares that today, everything will be decided. He aims the barrel upward, threatening that the loser goes straight to a coffin, but something falls from above, landing on the sofa beside him and startling the strategist. Vincent leans in to question the young child, but Eddie's response suggests something far more unsettling is at hand. Eddie's voice trembles with a growing sense of dread, prompting Vincent to demand an explanation. But the news is devastating. Eddie reveals there is no one left in the mansion of the dead. Vincent freezes as the weight of the disappearance sinks in, and Eddie confirms there is no one left to contact. The void is represented by a single chilling number on the boy's hand, 0. Suddenly, a frantic man burst into the room, rushing toward Beluga Kozlov to deliver news that instantly shatters the strategist's composure. As the man whispers in his ear, Beluga's face pales. Everyone, including the child, watches in stunned silence as Beluga stares up at his subordinate. The news is even worse than the abandonment of the mansion. Beluga can only ask in disbelief what happened to Igor, as the city lights shimmer indifferently outside. In a dimly lit corridor, Jang Hyun emerges from the shadows to confront the man he was seeking. He compares the man to the legends surrounding Park Cheyenne, but the reality is far from the terrifying figure he expected. Jang Hyun scrutinizes his opponent, while the stranger simply adjusts his bandages, smiling, revealing his name is Xian. The stranger chuckles, sensing the tension, but Jang Hyun remains unconvinced by the man's unassuming appearance. Hyun lunges forward with unexpected speed, swinging a leg in a violent arc. Xian manages to block the strike with his hands, the impact jolting through his entire body. The sudden violence leaves Jang Hyun stunned by the sheer force of the blow. The impact is devastating, feeling less like a punch and more like being struck by a sledgehammer. Jang Hyun mocks him, demanding he finish the fight with a single blow. Xian tries to strike back, but he is immediately caught mid-motion. He is hoisted into the air by his arm, rendered helpless against the man's terrifying strength. Jang Hyun smiles, warning that resistance will only make things worse. The fighter's words sting even more than the physical pain. He expected more from the so-called masterpiece of the Mansion of the Dead. Xian struggles to remain upright, but his stability is fleeting as Jang Hyun twists his body with ease. With a crushing blow to Xian's already wounded hands, the power gap becomes undeniable. Every strike is a grueling ordeal for the struggling defender. Telling him to simply give up, Jang Hyun swings again in a relentless assault. The blow is blocked once more, but the sudden successful defense catches Jang Hyun off guard. Xian mocks the man's insults, catching Jang Hyun off guard with a sudden sharp verbal sting. Suddenly, Jang Hyun realizes he isn't just fighting an opponent, but is being caught in a calculated trap. Claiming his status as a legend of the mansion, Xian lunges forward to end the fight by launching his opponent straight through a glass window. The impact shatters the glass into 1,000 sparkling shards, sending Jang Hyun tumbling through the frame. But Jang Hyun manages to grab the edge of the window, staring back at Xian with a flicker of newfound admiration. As the fight continues, he begins to move. Jang Hyun steps through the shattered glass, stepping on the shards as he closes the distance to Xian. The fighter settles into a wary stance, but Jang Hyun is faster, slamming a hand into Xian's face. With a brutal blow, Jang Hyun pins Xian to the wall, crushing him against the structure. A small smile touches Jang Hyun's lips as he presses Xian's head down, asking if the man he killed was actually the target. Outside the facility, the rain continues to fall relentlessly against the black car, where Rachel holds Marie by the hair. Despite the threat, Marie offers a smile, suggesting that Rachel join his side if she cooperates. Rachel doesn't flinch, sharply rebuking the woman for her stupidity and the dire situation they are in. Marie continues to taunt Rachel, claiming that even the strongest man, Igor, would soon arrive to crush them. But the celebration is cut short when a voice crackles through the headphones, apologizing for Igor's absence. A private jet heading to Korea has just been wiped from the sky, and the voice suggests it is now at the bottom of the sea. As Rachel presses the earphone tight, the voice mocks Marie's high hopes for the man who is no longer flying. Marie freezes in shock, recognizing the chilling tone of the voice on the other end. Rachel slowly removes her hand, her voice trembling as she asks, "Is it really him?" Fear washes over Marie as a familiar greeting echoes through the line, a voice from the shadows. It is Zero, sitting casually on a table and teasing them about how long it has been since they last spoke. While Rachel demands to know why he is using the director's private line, Zero simply smiles. He looks down at the wounded man sitting on the floor like a sinner, casually mentioning he was just with the director. Therefore, the director is currently unavailable. Marie's worry spikes as Zero dismisses her promises of safety with total indifference. With feigned awkwardness, Zero simply rubs his neck, leaving the fate of the director hanging in the balance. Zero offers a mocking apology, his face lighting up with a terrifying grin as he reveals his true goal. He planned to destroy the Mansion of the Dead from the very beginning, and he's making sure the director goes down with it. It's all thanks to you, Marie. Horror takes hold of her as the realization begins to sink in. The realization of his words, Zero remains deadly serious. The conflict with the Barefooters was nothing more than a genius distraction to keep everyone looking the wrong way. It was a masterpiece of a strategy. While the world was focused on the Barefooters, he easily dismantled the mansion. With many adults like Vincent far away, nothing could stop his rampage. Zero continues his call, noting that the leaders of both organizations are now effectively gone and likely suspecting each other of betrayal. Beluga Kozlov slams his temper, pointing a gun barrel directly at Vincent's throat and cursing them as damn fakes. Beluga and Vincent are at a breaking point, with Beluga vowing to send his rival to his god. But all this tension was just the fuse for something much larger. Heavy footsteps echo through the hall as a commanding presence enters to stop the chaos.
The intruder demands to know if the rules of the Alessandrov house have been
forgotten. Vincent and Beluga are stunned by the sudden intervention from a legend they never expected to see. It is Sofia Alexandrovova, the formidable war hero who commands respect from everyone in the room. Folding her arms, Sofia issues a chilling command: lay down your arms while a lady is present. Sofia Alexandrovova, the formidable war hero, steps toward the warring men with an air of absolute authority. Beluga asks in disbelief if Sofia has actually come to assist the mansion of the dead, while Vincent remains distracted by the gun at his neck. Unperturbed, Sofia ignores the tension and tells them they are making a rather unpleasant impression. Vincent and Beluga watch her carefully, sensing a shift in the power dynamic. As the tension reaches a fever pitch, a young boy from the mansion of the dead watches the heavyweights turn on each other. Sofia Alexandrova sits at the table, an imposing presence that leaves even the most hardened fighters paralyzed in awe. She makes it clear that she isn't here to take sides, but to deliver a warning that matters to everyone. The tension in the room rises as the leaders of the opposing factions hang on her every word. She explains that this conflict is no longer just a war between the Barefoot and the Mansion of the Dead. A greater threat has emerged. The masterpiece the mansion once hid has returned. Vincent's eyes widen as the realization sinks in. With calm confidence, Sofia utters the name that sends shockwaves through the room: Zero. Meanwhile, at the school building, Park Cheyenne stares ahead with a mounting sense of dread. Park Cheyenne's face is tight with anxiety. In the school, Park Cheyenne struggles as Jang Hyun squeezes his head, demanding to know who Zero is and why he's being kidnapped. Jang Hyun only offers a sly smile, refusing to give up the truth. He claims he only has orders to bring the boy directly to his master. Park Cheyenne questions the logic of it all, but Jang Hyun remains silent about the destination. Suddenly, Park Cheyenne bites down hard on Jang Hyun's palm, causing the fighter to scream in disgust. As Park Cheyenne spits with irritation, he demands to know why there's no bandage on the hand he thought was wounded, leaving Jang Hyun staring at his own palm in bewilderment. Park Cheyenne continues to berate him for the dirty bandage, the tension between them thick and unpleasant. Suddenly, an enraged Jang Hyun clenches his fist and strikes, but Park Cheyenne manages to duck beneath the violent blow. Lost in a blind fury, Jang Hyun insults Park Cheyenne with venomous words. Confused by the sudden outburst, Park Cheyenne simply asks, what on earth is wrong with him? Park Cheyenne demands the bandage back, and Jang Hyun reluctantly retreats, handing over the item. As Park Cheyenne rubs his aching head, Jang Hyun remains fixated on the bandage, lost in thought. Suddenly, Zero appears with a smile, asking what the commotion is all about. Standing amidst several bloody bodies, Zero asks how Jang Hyun is doing, noting his tendency to pick fights. Zero reminds him that his cooperation is necessary if he wants help finding the mysterious person he seeks. Jang Hyun apologizes, then looks at Park Cheyenne with pure disdain, realizing the boy is nothing like the report promised. To Jang Hyun. The boy is just a braggart with terrible taste in clothes and a truly horrific hairstyle. Even as Park Cheyenne wonders why everyone is calling him a freak, Zero begins to walk away. Descending the stairs, Zero mocks Jang Hyun's strength, finding it impossible that a fighter of his caliber could be so weak. With a sudden serious expression, he warns the man if he has chosen new parents to serve Jang Hyun. Visibly tense, mutters that people like that are difficult to deal with. Zero offers to test him, prompting Jang Hyun to look at Park Cheyenne and ask how he should proceed. He asks if Park Cheyenne's parents are nearby, and then, with a sudden brutal command, Zero orders him to kill the woman. Before Jang Hyun can react, Park Cheyenne's fist smashes into his jaw, knocking the phone from his hand and leaving him reeling. Blood seeps from a fresh cut on his cheek as he stares in confusion, searching for answers in the protagonist's gloomy face. Realizing he underestimated his opponent, Park Cheyenne lunges forward with a heavy heel kick aimed straight at Jang Hyun's face. At the last moment, Jang Hyun manages to dodge this brutal strike, sending Park Cheyenne crashing into the concrete floor with enough force to make the ground shatter. Staring in pure shock, Park Cheyenne clutches his face and can only gasp, wondering what kind of monster he is fighting. Jang Hyun watches the chaos unfold with a sly smile while reaching down to retrieve his phone, finally realizing that he has finally met Park Cheyenne's true, terrifying strength. After grabbing his phone, Jang Hyun confirms to Zero that his suspicions were correct. He realizes the legendary survivor of the Mansion of the Dead will be a vital tool, and he begins to laugh with predatory joy. Zero has realized Jang Hyun will be a key asset, and as the sun rises, he prepares to leave the immediate chaos behind. Jang Hyun asks if he is simply abandoning them, but Zero, sitting calmly on the stairs, replies that if Park Cheyenne remains in this broken state, his return won't matter. Zero suggests they watch the boy a little longer, adding that everything is only just beginning. Meanwhile, a stunned Park Cheyenne stares at his own trembling fist when a panicked Eugene suddenly bursts out of the corridor, shouting that a disaster has struck. Eugene desperately gestures toward the empty corridor where the wreckage of the Mansion of the Dead and the director's influence still lingers, leaving Park Cheyenne to stare at the haunting traces of the battle. Confusion fills the air as Eugene frantically asks what happened and where the attacker went. Park Cheyenne can only provide one name before his strength finally gives out.
Jung Hyun. Park Cheyenne gasps, desperately trying to make the name heard.
But Eugene can't process the answer before Park Cheyenne collapses heavily to the concrete floor. Terrified, Eugene rushes to his side, but Park Cheyenne is already fading. Lying broken and exhausted, Park Cheyenne whispers a final vital instruction. They have to find that man because he knows something. Eugene can only scream his name as Park Cheyenne's eyes begin to close. Eugene kneels beside the unconscious boy, begging him to stay with him. As Park Cheyenne slips away, yellow petals begin to flutter in the wind. 1 month later, Park Cheyenne walks through a shower of autumn petals, staring at the school building under repair. Everything is being handled by the Baeko Human Resources Company, leaving the school shuttered. He wonders if the students will even get their vacation back after such chaos. Then, a memory resurfaces. Looking back at the carnage, Park Cheyenne realizes the true culprit behind this nightmare. Joseph. The man took revenge on the school after his son was accused of bullying, leaving Hwang Hyun-ho and his mother in shock. Now, the shop where they once worked stands empty and closed, a silent testament to the destruction Joseph has wrought. Park Cheyenne enters the closed shop, only to be met with disdain from Dmitry Medvedev, who points a gun at him. How much longer will you make everyone wait? The monitor demands. Inside, the survivors of the school massacre have gathered in a grim assembly. Park Cheyenne looks around at the faces of former enemies, now unified by a strange, heavy silence. Marie, the strategist, sits among them with a hollow expression, her wrists bound in handcuffs. Mitri, clutching a knife, explains that without an employer, the old rules no longer apply. With Igor defeated, their survival is in question, and Dmitry refuses to let a threat like Zero slip through their fingers. The air grows thick with tension as Dmitry turns his gaze toward Marie. He slams his knife into the table beside her, demanding to know if she is part of the mansion. If you know something, it's better to tell us now, he growls. Marie remains silent, leaving Rachel watching from the table in the tense stillness. Marie remains silent, her head bowed as the tension escalates. Yuri, an irritated man clutching a baseball bat, snaps at Rachel, accusing the group of being the ones who started this conflict. He jams the bat toward Marie's head, blaming her for everything that has unfolded. Yuri challenges her, asking if she truly thinks he lacks the strength to finish her off. He stands surrounded by the others, while Park Cheyenne watches the scene in silence. Park Cheyenne looks on. As Eugene steps in to stop the brewing violence, he warns them all that they have been played by a master manipulator, and offers to help settle the chaos. Dmitry Medvedev pushes for answers about Zero, seeking clarity amidst the ruin. He lays out the grim reality. The mansion's leader has been kidnapped, with the shelter's forces decimated, and the leader presumed dead. The situation is dire. Yuri listens with irritation, while Marie and Rachel hang their heads in shame. Finally, Park Cheyenne speaks up, declaring that their true enemy is already known. Park Cheyenne throws off his hood, revealing his resolve. Mitri asks for his proposal, and Park Cheyenne suggests forming a temporary organization. Rachel looks on in shock at the idea, but Park Cheyenne remains focused, reminding them that with a common enemy at their doorstep, unity might be their only choice. Park Cheyenne calls the alliance a crew, much to Yuri's displeasure. Yuri questions the logic of working together, prompting Dmitry to ask what they will call this new group. Cheyenne looks confused, admitting that he hadn't actually thought about it. Cheyenne decides to name the alliance Bad, taken from Barefoot and Dead Mansion. It is a bold title for a group seeking to tear down the old order. He lifts the metal gate, a sly grin forming as he reveals their singular purpose, to find Zero and destroy that worthless man. Watching this, Dmitry can only grin back. Yuri is left speechless by the alliance's name, wondering if Cheyenne is actually serious about joining this team. Dmitry Medvedev sits beside him, noting that in just 1 month, Park Cheyenne has become a completely different person while he stares blankly into the distance. The tension lingers as Dmitry turns to a visibly gloomy Rachel, seeking an explanation for her silence. Rachel offers no answer, her mind drifting back to a hospital building 1 month prior. A phone call checks on her well-being as she stands in the sterile ward. While standing by the hospital bed where Park Cheyenne lies unconscious, Rachel tells the caller on the line that she is still recovering. As she watches the sleeping man, she quietly admits that he is overdoing it. In the mansion of the dead, Vincent manages the daily tasks of the working children, including a simple request to tidy up some books. While Vincent tidies the VIP room, Rachel checks in on the status of the organization. But the news is grim. The director has vanished along with Zero. Vincent adds that something far worse has occurred. The registration book of the elite children has been stolen. A hysterical Rachel realizes the implication of that theft. If those records are gone, it means Zero's nightmare is no longer just a possibility. The nightmare is already real, for Vincent confirms that Zero intends to execute his plan. Meanwhile, Zero is focused on his new mission to return the sold children. Amidst the carnage of a bloody crime scene, the mysterious swordsman stands over a fallen man, facing a terrified little girl. He attempts to soothe her, promising that he is not an enemy but a savior. Offering a friendly smile, Zero extends his hand to lead her away from the slaughter. But the room is a vision of horror, filled with... He updates Rachel on the investigation, but the scale of the chaos is growing. The list of those in danger is expanding, leaving the mansion's defenders racing against time. Vincent observes the Bear gang members, realizing they too have become Zero's targets. Rachel questions if hurting the buyers will truly prevent Zero from controlling the children. She wonders if the director's greatest fear is a child who can bypass the three absolute principles. If so, the unconscious protagonist might be the very key to everything. Vincent confirms her fears with a tense expression, realizing that the danger is far greater than they ever imagined. Rachel insists they must return the protagonist to his ranks before a confrontation with Zero can occur, as she fears the danger of them meeting, while the protagonist remains unconscious, drifting deep into his own mind. There, he is pulled into a memory of a gloomy, rainy day. Amidst the downpour, a wealthy woman stands by an expensive car and irritably orders her servant to get out while the director approaches her, confused by her presence at such an hour. Without hesitation, the woman roughly grabs a little boy by the hand and pushes him toward the director, demanding that he take him away. Stating coldly that the child needs to be raised, the boy can only stare down at his feet. Under the heavy downpour, the director offers a friendly smile, explaining that their orphanage takes in lost lambs. However, the director realizes the woman's presence makes this impossible. She begins screaming, offering any amount of money just to be rid of him. She casts her child into the mud, declaring him too disgusting to raise, and tells the director to do whatever he wants with him. Left to his fate, suddenly the vision shatters, and the boy awakens to find himself staring at his own hands. If he is in a hospital, confused and gasping, he asks what happened as memories of the violent battle at school begin to flood back into his... Standing before him, Park Cheyenne looks on menacingly, realizing the gravity of the situation. At the reality before him, realizing the truth of his situation. Suddenly, Cheyenne remembers Zero's chilling order to Jang Hun, go and kill Park Cheyenne's mother. Driven by desperation, he escapes and into the night, charges through the dark streets, screaming for Hwang Hyun-ho's mother. He reaches the apartment building and frantically attempts to call the elevator, but it refuses to budge, clutching his side in pain. He curses the machine's timing and begins the grueling climb up the stairs. Then, everything stops. He reaches the next landing and freezes. A katana is jammed into the elevator doors, blocking them from the other side. Cheyenne stares at the intruder and asks what this is, but Zero, sitting on the stairs above him, simply smiles and announces he has finally arrived. The mysterious man watches him with intense focus, claiming he has been waiting for this very moment and even missed him. A menacing expression crosses Cheyenne's face as he asks who this stranger is, but Zero only responds in bewilderment. Zero suddenly moves, rushing forward to grasp Cheyenne's hand, pleading for him not to misunderstand while expressing how much he missed him. Cheyenne watches him with growing suspicion, trying to process how this man even managed to track him down before he can even wonder how. Zero stares him down with a chilling smile, asking if he hasn't already promised to kill that woman for him. Cheyenne swings at Zero, but the man easily steps back to dodge. After confirming he is indeed the one who called Jang Hyun, Zero begins to block Cheyenne's strikes with a hauntingly sad expression. Zero remains unmoved by the intensity of the fight, casually parrying the blows. He reveals a chilling truth. He has assigned himself his own parents. As Zero grabs a katana from the elevator door, he wonders if Cheyenne has forgotten something vital. He asks with cutting clarity, does he really not remember anything? Zero pulls the blade from the door, staring at Cheyenne, as the man tries to focus through the confusion. The steel flashes as Zero lunges with a lethal blow, which Cheyenne narrowly evades. The katana comes whistling toward him. Zero slams the tip into the concrete near the trembling Cheyenne, asking if he is not a good child. Suddenly, memories of a mother's screaming voice flood Cheyenne's mind. In the flashback, the director leans over a child in a puddle, attempting to soothe them about being raised or sold, but the boy interrupts the lie, looking at his mother to ask if he has done something wrong. The memory resurfaces, showing Zero's mother telling him she would make the world quiet starting with the family dog, because he liked it. Even with a slight smile, the young Zero reveals a chilling nature, noting that the dog won't be barking anymore. He asks his mother if he did well, searching for approval that never comes. Instead of love, his mother offers only contempt and fear, telling her son to disappear because he is just like his father. The director of the Mansion of the Dead steps in, claiming he understands the boy's nature. He places an arm around the child's shoulder, promising, "We will take care of you." As they enter a massive religious hall, the young Zero finds the sudden shift in environment strange. Looking down at his dirt-smeared clothes, a deep sadness settles over his face. Zero claims he obeyed his mother, but a young child, much like his future self, is watching him. The boy questions why they are forced to pretend to be good children. Terrified, Park Cheyenne asks what it means to be bad, but Zero only explains that you will repeatedly strip away any parents Park Cheyenne tries to appoint, all while wearing a wide smile. He vows to keep destroying Park Cheyenne's world until he finally gives up, leaving Park Cheyenne staring in bewilderment as memories resurface, the look of horror on his own mother's face as she threw him into a filthy puddle. In a sudden burst of rage, he grabs the katana's edge and snaps the metal blade with his bare hands, sending shards flying. The chaos leaves Park Cheyenne trembling. Park Cheyenne thrusts a jagged metal shard towards Zero's eye, but the killer reacts with terrifying speed, catching his hand while drawing blood. Fighting through the pain, Cheyenne tries to strike again, but Zero holds him firm, insisting that his violent nature means he can never be a good child. As Cheyenne stares at him with cold, unwavering intensity, the scene shifts away from the violence to the Mansion of the Dead. Deep in the basement, late at night, Beluga finds something hidden away in the darkness. The strategist grins as he inspects a collection of luxurious wine bottles tucked within the cellar cabinets. He wonders if the refined taste matches the vintage, only for Vincent to suddenly appear behind him. Crossing his arms, Vincent scolds Beluga for his thievery, noting that this is exactly why strangers shouldn't be allowed into the house. They move toward a table covered in documents where Beluga explains these papers are part of a plan to protect their clients. Vincent asks if this is meant for security. Beluga smiles and sets the bottles down, mentioning rumors that Zero has been hunting their clients and wondering if the threat is real. Between the mercenaries guarding their clients and the priority placed on the wealthy, Vincent begins to see the true scope of the operation. He watches Beluga Kozlov and realizes that the man's presence here is no accident. He is far more than a mere thief. Beluga doesn't seem to mind the accusation, jokingly brushing off Vincent's coldness as he prepares to indulge in some stolen luxury. Vincent asks if he even knows the cost of what he's taken, but Beluga has a ready answer for the consequences of his drinking. With 3 expensive bottles gleaming on the table, Beluga prepares to uncap the first one. Vincent watches as Beluga prepares to pour, knowing this kind of indulgence is usually strictly forbidden. The table soon becomes stained with the deep red of expensive wine as the bottles are opened. Beluga drinks deeply, shouting that the wine is as delicious as the blood of God. In his intoxication, Beluga declares them accomplices before Vincent can protest, leaving the strategist staring in weary resignation. Beluga suddenly shifts tone, turning to Vincent with a sudden piercing question. He asks how the 3 absolute principles manage to zombify children, turning them into such perfectly obedient beings. Vincent remains silent, and Beluga quickly adds that he isn't looking to expose this commercial secret. Beluga notes that the method is nothing short of cruel, prompting Vincent to explain how they weaponize the sense of loss. Most children are abandoned by their families, leaving them hollowed by a desperate need to be loved. They prey on that emptiness, telling these children that they were discarded because they were inferior to survive. They must become the perfect, obedient child. The cycle continues as they promise that excellence is the only way to secure a family to ensure they are never abandoned again. Raising an empty glass, Vincent confirms that this psychological starvation is the ultimate motivation. Beluga asks if this cruelty was the director's idea. Vincent stares at his reflection, revealing that the director was inspired by a single child, one who was never a good child, but desperately wanted to be one. That child was willing to do anything for parental approval, a motivation the director turned into the 3 absolute principles. That child was the real Park Cheyenne.
Meanwhile, the battle shifts.
As the fight intensifies, Zero mocks Cheyenne, telling him he can never be a good child before knocking him to the ground. Even as Zero squeezes Cheyenne's wrists to induce pain, the boy manages to swing a desperate counterattack at Zero's head. Zero simply blocks the blow with a forearm, a predatory smile spreading across his face. He watches Cheyenne closely, noting with amusement that the boy is finally finding his strength. Facing the man who embodies his greatest fear, Cheyenne accepts the label of a bad child. But instead of breaking, he confronts Zero with a manic, desperate resolve. He will kill the man who threatens his mother. Zero merely grins at the boy's sudden hunger for goodness. Irritated by the boy's defiance, Zero prepares to explain the terrifying reality of their existence, that everything they do is dictated by the actions taken in the Mansion of the Dead. And those actions are governed by the 3 absolute principles. Confusion stalls Cheyenne's strike as the weight of those principles settles in, but Zero doesn't stop the onslaught. In the chaos, blood sprays from Cheyenne's palms into Zero's eyes. The warrior's face is momentarily blinded by the boy's desperation. Taking the opening, Cheyenne lunges forward, forcing Zero to leap high to evade the strike. The katana becomes lodged in the ceiling, and Zero wipes the blood from his eye with a look of contempt. With a swift, brutal motion, Zero knocks the blade fragment from Cheyenne's grip. Cheyenne leaps down to reclaim his weapon, only for Zero to smile as a sharp edge slices through his cloak. Cheyenne hurls a pot at Zero, shattering it to create a thick, blinding cloud of dust. Through the haze, Cheyenne's blade reappears, surprising the seasoned fighter. He steps forward with a cold gaze, declaring, "I caught it." With a sudden crushing blow, Cheyenne strikes Zero square in the face, forcing the weapon from his hand. Zero desperately intercepts the blade with his other hand, attempting a counterattack that forces Cheyenne to retreat. Zero recovers, his expression hardening, as he closes the distance with a focused stare, unaware that Cheyenne is preparing a devastating counterstrike with a clenched fist. The clash is impossible. Cheyenne's finger hits the blade with such force that the steel shatters into 1,000 pieces. Zero can only stare in shock, wondering how he could have been hit like this. He attempts to explain his abilities to Cheyenne, but the young man won't listen. Ignoring the lecture, Cheyenne continues his assault, only to take a brutal knee to the jaw from Zero. Staggering from the impact, Cheyenne refocuses on his target and launches a sudden, flying kick directly at Zero's face. As Vincent examines the documents, Beluga wonders about the identity of the child. Vincent confirms it is Park Cheyenne, the very boy they once tried to kill. Beluga finally realizes the gravity of the situation. Vincent asks if any guards were assigned to him, to which Beluga replies that no one was, making the boy's location the most critical spot of all. While the two discuss, the duel between Zero and Cheyenne rages on. Beluga notes her personal reason for coming to Korea. Suddenly, the elevator doors are torn apart by a massive hand, and a menacing voice cuts through the chaos. The newcomer is Sofia Alexandrova, the war hero Beluga mentioned, who watches the boys as if they were merely playing games. Zero watches her in confusion while she looks upon the combatants. Sofia stands tall, her presence commanding immediate attention. She greets the pair with a distant familiarity before noticing Park Cheyenne, who looks exhausted and covered in blood. She wonders what has happened to him. Placing a huge palm on his head, she pushes aside pleasantries and turns her gaze away. Her eyes shift toward the shadows. With a lightning-fast strike, Sofia Alexandrova grabs Zero like a mere plush toy and hurls him violently down the corridor, slamming him against the wall. The war hero looks at the fallen man, surprised by how light he feels, as Park Cheyenne wonders if she could really toss a threat like Zero away so easily. Sofia turns her attention back to the path ahead. She chuckles thoughtfully, looking past the bloodstains and broken glass to a window where a fugitive has clearly escaped. It isn't her job to hunt him, she tells Cheyenne. Looking at him questioningly, she shifts her focus back to the boy, though she had locked him up. Sofia asks him who gave him permission to become weak. She looks intently into his eyes, her gaze heavy with unspoken lessons. It seems he needs a little adjustment, she decides, before hoisting him onto her shoulder. Calling him Little Park Cheyenne, she prepares to leave, but then pauses, realizing she forgot something. Sofia explains that the elderly woman Cheyenne seeks is gone, and warns him that families of good children are targets for Zero, a threat he cannot escape. Descending the stairs, she asks for his trust and swears on the honor of the Alexandrovs to protect his parents. Regardless of whether he chose them or not, she promises he has nothing to worry about, leaving the boy looking ahead with profound sadness. She tells him to focus solely on his training and asks if he is ready to attempt the deadly squats once more. Cheyenne's face darkens at the thought, because Sofia makes it clear, if he fails these training exercises, he will die. A month later, inside a speeding SUV, Cheyenne stares at his palms in horror. He asks if Dmitry Medvedev can even imagine the horror of tying explosives to one's own body, to perform squats, where even a single moment of relaxation means instant death.
Dmitry Medvedev, driving through the road, wonders if Sophia is truly that intense, prompting Cheyenne to scream in agony at the mere mention of her name.
Then Dmitry Medvedev's eyes fix on the road ahead. Dmitry Medvedev notices a change in Cheyenne's presence, noting his growth after training with Sofia Alexandrova. He wonders if the boy has truly improved in just a month. Cheyenne meets that challenge with a confident grin, inviting the man to see his skills for himself. Dmitry turns back to the road. The SUV pulls up near the school gates, where a crowd of students has gathered. Cheyenne steps out of the car, backpack in hand. He prepares to return to the life of a student. Dmitry warns Cheyenne that being a high-profile target makes school a dangerous place for him. Clutching his bag, Cheyenne looks at him in disbelief. The tension rises as Dmitry demands that Cheyenne call him immediately if any trouble arises, warning him never to face such threats alone. Cheyenne responds only with silence. Dmitry's warning hangs heavy in the air. Cheyenne slams the car door shut, leaving the students to whisper about him. They identify him as Park Cheyenne, a student who walks behind Joseph, and assume the man in the car is his wealthy, model-like father. Cheyenne listens to the rumors of his own rich life through the window. Meanwhile, at a distant, sun-drenched barn, a mysterious hand reaches up toward the light. Jang Hyun lies on a mattress in the middle of a dusty barn, reaching out his hand toward the light. Zero enters the barn grumbling about the unclean environment, only to be greeted by a surprised Jang Hyun, who has been waiting for him. Zero touches a punching bag, noting how much the place has changed, while Jang Hyun picks up some scissors from the floor. Jang Hyun uses the scissors to pry open a soda machine before leading Zero to a pair of plastic chairs. He jokingly calls them magical chairs that force people to tell the truth, then asks if Zero is ready to answer his questions honestly now that they are sitting down. Jang Hyun remains gloomy, demanding an honest answer about Zero's promise to help find a certain person. Zero confirms he is looking for him everywhere, leaving Jang Hyun to lean back with a heavy heart. Zero insists his mission is to find Park Cheyenne, claiming he needs the child to fulfill a promise. Jang Hyun remains skeptical, doubting Park Cheyenne has anything to do with this search. Warning him that lying in this chair of truth would be fatal, Jang Hyun eyes Zero warily, forcing the man to desperately prove his honesty. Zero offers a smile, but Jang Hyun only stares back with sadness, realizing Zero underestimated how much insight this man actually possesses. While the tension lingers, Zero begins to subtly draw his blade from its sheath with practiced, careful movements. Zero maintains that he is far too cunning to be anyone's puppet, prompting Jang Hyun to grip his scissors tightly and warn him to think thrice before trying to recruit him. Zero dismisses the threat with a friendly slap to the shoulder and a smile, promising to search harder for his target. Then, standing up, he remembers something. With a look of genuine curiosity, Jang Hyun questions him once more. Intrigued despite himself, Jang Hyun asks if he truly means an interesting place.
Meanwhile, in a crowded classroom, Park Cheyenne enters with a heavy heart, ignoring the whispers of classmates who believe his suspension was a cover for the rumors surrounding Park Cheyenne.
He exhales heavily, the tension from the rumors weighing on him. His mind drifts back to a conversation with Marie, where he desperately hoped the director's decision was nothing more than mere blackmail. He had even shown her a photo, hoping to prove that the ridiculous photoshopped images circulating were clearly fake. The memory is nauseating. A bizarre photo of a man in a maid's costume, surrounded by hearts. He had insisted it was edited, but Marie had told him the truth. It was actually real. The realization leaves Park Cheyenne in a state of pure bewilderment. He clutches his head, trying to banish the horrific image, when a voice suddenly breaks his trance. A group of massive schoolchildren, led by a menacing figure, has cornered him. Park Cheyenne stares at the thugs with a bored expression, wondering if they are as ridiculous as the rumors say. He asks them if they actually believe the lies, and then the leader of the thugs steps forward with a threatening look, moving to close the distance. The tension escalates as the confrontation moves toward a breaking point. The thugs accuse Park Cheyenne of being connected to gangsters, but they aren't prepared for his response. Even in the face of violence, Park Cheyenne remains calm. The bully lunges with a clenched fist, desperate to assert his dominance. But Park Cheyenne moves with terrifying precision, raising his hand, and a single flick to the chin sends the massive boy crashing to his knees in shock. The bullies can only watch in disbelief. Park Cheyenne offers a chillingly casual suggestion, holding up his finger as if they were on the same side. Later, a sweating and exhausted Park Cheyenne listens as Sofia Alexandrova explains that his obsession with the three principles is holding him back. To truly break free, he needs to increase his total power, a concept that leaves him filled with apprehension. Meanwhile, the bullies lie unconscious on the ground, left questioning if this was all a joke. The reality of Park Cheyenne's growing strength is punctuated by a final brutal strike to another student. A schoolchild desperate to prove himself grabs a mop and shouts a challenge toward Park Cheyenne. He repeats his demand with aggressive bravado, truly believing he stands a chance. Park Cheyenne doesn't hesitate. As the boy swings the mop, Park Cheyenne dodges and delivers a blow so heavy the wood shatters into a cloud of flying splinters. The boy can only stare in total bewilderment. In the silence that follows, Park Cheyenne calmly notes the bell has rung, leaving the broken boy trembling on the ground. After informing his allies, Park Cheyenne walks through an empty corridor, realizing Sofia Alexandrova's training was truly worth the pain. Jang Hyun suggests that Park Cheyenne's skills might actually be improving, but as he watches closely, the boy's true nature comes into question. To end the games, Park Cheyenne decides to become bait so his enemies can find him easily. Rachel watches him in silence. When Park Cheyenne asks where she is going, Rachel prepares herself for the fight ahead, claiming that since he is becoming a target, she can no longer stand aside. As she applies lipstick, Rachel declares her duty to the mansion of the dead, explaining that they must protect their property at any cost. She looks at her reflection and asks a piercing question. "What is your goal?" She stares at him, waiting for an answer. When Park Cheyenne claims he doesn't know, Rachel pushes harder, asking why he is so hell-bent on fighting Zero. Does he truly believe that old woman is his mother? Park Cheyenne turns away, unable to give her a straight answer. Lost in his own uncertainty, Park Cheyenne admits to her that the memories of his expulsion are a blur, and even his fight with Zero feels like a distant, painful dream. Rachel watches him warily, realizing he might not even know he's using his power. As he walks away, she warns him that if the three absolute principles are truly sealing his abilities, he's only risking his life for nothing. Park Cheyenne acknowledges they aren't family or friends, but he refuses to be a victim of the rules. If he had a choice, he would choose to tear their offenders to shreds. He turns to Rachel with a confident look, making it clear this isn't an order or a principle, but his own will. Suddenly, a kick from Jang Hyun sends Park Cheyenne reeling, but the boy realizes this is exactly what he needs, to be the bait. Jang Hyun smiles down at him, unaware that the hunt has already shifted in Park Cheyenne's favor. Suddenly, the peace is shattered when a student is slammed into the floor by the heavy door. Even while pinned by the door, Park Cheyenne fights back, intercepting Jang Hyun's leg and throwing him away. He hurls the man toward the window, but Jang Hyun manages to catch the frame, hanging there as the confrontation escalates. Jang Hyun moves with sudden, sharp precision, lunging forward to drive a knee toward him. Park Cheyenne dodges the blow, realizing the fight is only just beginning, but he knows they can't stay out in the open with so many eyes watching. Jang Hyun seizes Park Cheyenne's shirt and prepares a devastating strike, asking why he's hesitating. Staring directly at the approaching fist, Park Cheyenne remains calm, asking if this is truly all he has. Then Park Cheyenne executes a sudden wrestling move, using his opponent's momentum to flip a confused Jang Hyun into the air. The force of the throw is immense. They tumble into the school toilet, where Park Cheyenne closes the door behind them to finish the fight in private. Outside, the hallway is a mess of confusion as students whisper about the sudden violence, unaware of what's happening behind the closed door. As a group of bullies tries to lift the door, a girl approaches the crowd to demand answers, but the true combatants have already vanished into the chaos. While school bullies carry away their injured friend, Jang Hyun watches with a sly smile, waiting for the chaos to settle. He strikes with a sudden knee to the gut, deciding that holding back is no longer necessary in this fight. But Park Cheyenne isn't going down easily. He grabs Jang Hyun by the collar and swings him overhead with terrifying strength, slamming his head into the concrete floor so hard that stone fragments fly through the air. Ignoring the carnage, Park Cheyenne stares him down with a cold, serious expression, demanding to know where Zero is. Jang Hyun can only look at him in shock, repeating the name, Zero. In a flash, Jang Hyun kicks Park Cheyenne square in the face, forcing him to stumble back before snapping irritably at him. But Jang Hyun won't back down. He intercepts Park Cheyenne's hand and leans in tight. With a sudden, explosive movement, he straightens his legs, driving his knee directly into Park Cheyenne's torso. The force is massive, sending Park Cheyenne flying across the bathroom floor. Jang Hyun offers a wide smile, insisting that Park Cheyenne should stop resisting and simply follow him to find their target. However, Park Cheyenne is not going quietly. In a desperate reflex, Park Cheyenne swings a sharp cleaning tool, slashing Jang Hyun's cheek. As the blood begins to flow, Park Cheyenne stands his ground, determined not to kill him despite the chaos. As the fight intensifies, Jang Hyun begins to wonder if he is becoming someone entirely new. He curses under his breath about being too loud, before calmly asking Park Cheyenne if they should call it a day. But Park Cheyenne isn't finished. He rushes forward with the sharp cleaning tool in hand, forcing Jang Hyun to dodge. He steps aside quickly. Park Cheyenne swings again, pressuring Jang Hyun to keep moving. A massive sweeping blow tears through the air, shredding the floor and the sink, but Jang Hyun manages to jump away from the destruction. Using the wall to propel himself, Jang Hyun kicks off and prepares to strike Park Cheyenne from behind. Park Cheyenne turns sharply, bracing himself for another strike. But suddenly, a booming voice. Heavy blows slam against the door as an unknown voice orders them to open up immediately, forcing both fighters to freeze and stare at the entrance. Jang Hyun looks at him with irritation, refusing to let him go, and manages to dodge Park Cheyenne's next strike by crouching low. By suddenly hugging the confused protagonist, Jang Hyun secures his grip before heading toward the window. With Park Cheyenne struggling in his grip, they plunge into the empty air. Plunges out of the high window toward the street below. A sly Jang Hyun glances at Park Cheyenne, mockingly asking if he's okay, then warns that falling from this height will hurt. Park Cheyenne remains tense, but instead of panicking, he calmly confirms the danger. Suddenly, he jams a cleaning tool into the concrete to slow their descent, stabbing it deep into the surface. Uses the tool to catch them. The tool shreds through the school wall, slowing their fall but failing to prevent a violent impact with the ground. Park Cheyenne stands up with a gloomy expression, clutching a wooden stump, while Jang Hyun stares at the jagged wood embedded in his thigh and laughs. A shocked schoolgirl rushes toward them, her voice filled with worry and confusion, leading Park Cheyenne to clutch his aching head in frustration as Jang Hyun, refusing to admit his injury, pulls the bloody stump from his leg. Thinking of how much this resembles his past, he watches as Jang Hyun turns to the girl and tells her that his uniform can easily be sewn back together. The girl is more concerned with his wounds than his clothes, leaving Jang Hyun bewildered by her sudden kindness. Just as he attempts to insist he is fine, she suddenly slams a needle into his vein, catching him completely off guard. As the anesthetic takes hold, Jang Hyun's consciousness begins to fade, and he collapses into the girl's waiting arms. Rachel looks down at the unconscious man, telling him to rest because she has many questions to answer. After calling him Jang Hyun, she reveals the grim reality of his existence.
The director of the Mansion of the Dead.
The organization that crafts living weapons claims that such training is common across the globe. They take discarded children and transform them into perfect high-priced assets. However, the mansion isn't the only one practicing this dark craft. Anywhere, anyone can take an abandoned child and turn them into an emotionless monster. And that is the tragedy of the children left behind by society. In the school doctor's office, Rachel confirms that Jang Hyun is exactly what she suspected, a child weapon, one of many created by such dark systems. She looks at him and calls by his name. Jang Hyun lies still on a hospital bed, his wounded leg heavily bandaged, as Park Cheyenne realizes that Korea has its own shadow version of the Mansion of the Dead. Before Park Cheyenne can process the implications, Rachel shuts down his questions, declaring that interrogation is her specialty, and telling him to leave it to her. She commands him to return to his normal life and head to class, asking him if he has already forgotten his place in the world. As Park Cheyenne is ushered out, he makes one final plea to Rachel, begging her not to be too harsh on Jang Hyun. Rachel shuts the door, leaving the wounded man alone in the silence, as the darkness pulls him under, to open his eyes, drifting through hazy, fragmented memories. He sees a man in a camouflage jacket, a barber who once carefully cut the hair of a young child. The man tells him that a man's value lies in his appearance, and that looking ugly would make him impossible to sell. A young Jang Hyun wonders if a cool hairstyle could increase his price, but the man offers a different lesson. He suggests that Jang Hyun must be truly special to be worth anything. The man explains that everything about him should be his own. He tells Jang Hyun that being handsome means being beautiful, and being strong means being powerful. Little Jang Hyun looks at the man in surprise, calling him Uncle Carpenter, as the man prepares to deliver a final chilling lesson. Lost in the weight of his uncle's words, Jang Hyun stands up with a hollow stare. Rachel approaches him with a calm smile, asking if he is finally awake. Caught off guard, Jang Hyun's eyes widen as he exhales tensely, noticing his bleeding wound. He asks if she bandaged it, but she explains she had to use Park Cheyenne's uniform to tend to his injuries. As she brings a chair closer, Jang Hyun suspiciously asks why she suddenly cares, assuming she is nothing but an enemy. Instead of fighting, Rachel asks him if he really thinks she needs sticks to get answers. She looks him in the eye and explains that if he cooperates, they might not be enemies at all. Rachel admits that while this is technically an interrogation, she knows this method works best for children like him, children who have never known love. Jang Hyun simply lowers his head, lost in confusion. Rachel tends to Jang Hyun's wound, asking if he'll finally cooperate, but from a distance, an observer watches them through binoculars, noting that Zero won't like this behavior. The man watching. Later, inside a school building, Jang Hyun refuses to talk despite Rachel's kindness. He insists he belongs to no one and is always alone. Rachel leans in, wondering why he would bother Park Cheyenne if he isn't on Zero's side. Jang Hyun clarifies that their alliance is merely temporary and strictly for his own purpose. He needs Zero's information network to find a specific person, despite Rachel's skepticism.
Determined, Jang Han insists his reach is vast, having found safety after escaping the carpenter.
Rachel questions why he fled, observing how easily children react when their words are doubted. Jang Hyun begins to recount the difficult training under the carpenter. After the carpenter's relentless pursuit left him on the streets, Zero was the one who finally found him. Rachel offers a drink, hoping to manipulate the conversation while he drinks. She wants him to open up without even realizing it. Jang Hyun takes a sip, before finally revealing his true purpose. He wants to free every good child sold by the Mansion of the Dead and turn them into a family. Rachel meets his declaration with a menacing glare, but before he can say more, a low voice interrupts them from the shadows. A man calls Jang Hyun a fool, warning him that he should never have spoken of such things. The stranger snatches the drink from Jang Hyun's hand, mocking his perceived weakness, before turning his attention to Rachel. He removes his glasses, preparing to reveal his identity. He introduces himself as Miguel, Zero's subordinate. He settles in beside Jang Hyun with a false sense of camaraderie, claiming to be an ally sent by Zero. Rachel freezes at the name. She recognizes the reputation of this man, a deadly matador among the Spanish mercenaries. She knows the legend. If a matador appears with a red cape, you never rush toward him. The false ally reveals himself as Miguel, a mercenary known as the Black Matador. He claims to love animals and mocks the idea of hunting bulls, as his true target is far more lethal. Suddenly, Miguel lunges behind Rachel, swinging his weapon with deadly intent. In a blur of motion, he strikes from behind.
The blade slices through Rachel's skin, drawing blood. Miguel laughs, enjoying the thrill of a real hunt, before deploying a mechanical device that transforms into a lethal spear.
Jang Hyun steps between them, desperately demanding to know why he is betraying his own kind. With a cruel smirk, Miguel offers a false comfort before driving the spear straight through Jang Hyun's stomach. Jang Hyun can only gasp in shock, his hands trembling as he grips the weapon. Miguel explains his orders. Zero demanded he kill anyone showing even a hint of betrayal, and Jang Hyun's defiance was enough. After a mock bow and a final farewell, Jang Hyun is cast to the floor. But the hunter is not the only one prepared to fight. Rachel aims her gun at the back of Miguel's head and pulls the trigger. Miguel easily dodges the shot and smashes Rachel's gun with his spear. Confused and disarmed, she retreats as he approaches with a deadly, apologetic smile, preparing a spear strike. He lunges with the spear, striking her so hard her wig flies off. The weapon pierces Rachel's stomach, leaving her clutching the shaft in agony. As Miguel prepares to end her, Jang Hyun lies unconscious on the floor, drifting into a memory. In his mind, a carpenter places a hand on his head, speaking of a skill that can only be taught by a true master. Jang Hyun begins to stir, remembering the promise of learning that skill one day. Suddenly, Miguel looks down to find only a discarded bandage where Jang Hyun once lay. Miguel stares in shock at the empty space, wondering where the boy could have gone. Miguel spits blood, caught completely off guard by the sudden ferocity. Driven by pure animal instinct, Jang Hyun leaps from the shadows, his claws tearing through Miguel's back like a wild beast. While mercenaries dismiss the fight as mere bullying, they whisper about Miguel's true reputation as a famous Spanish matador. Suddenly, Park Cheyenne steps forward, removing his hat to declare he isn't on the mercenaries' side. Jang Hyun lunges, throwing Miguel to the ground in a desperate struggle.
Miguel easily dodges the boy's fury, realizing that the child has transformed into something entirely different.
Watching the movements, Miguel realizes these are not the strikes of a person. Instead, he sees a beast, with Jang Hyun digging his claws into the floor. Realizing he is facing a beast, Miguel reaches into his pocket and pulls out a red handkerchief. Rachel watches in confusion, asking if he is using a capote, the matador's cloth. Miguel ties the red fabric around his spear and orders Rachel to stay back. With a spear wrapped in red cloth, Miguel declares this a duel of honor between a man and a beast. Jang Hyun stands his ground, feet planted firmly against the threat. Arrogance flashes across Miguel's face before he suddenly waves the cloth, a signal that the dance of death has begun. Jang Hyun rushes forward. Miguel tracks his movements, taunting him with the shifting red fabric, but Jang Hyun refuses to play the bull, tearing the cloth away to reveal his true intent. In a flash, Miguel vanishes from sight. Suddenly, his hand clamps onto Jang Hyun's shoulder. Using a devastating picador technique, Miguel lifts him high, clutching a sharp spear in his other hand to finish the job. Immediately after that, Miguel slams Jang Hyun's body onto the floor, the spear threatening his neck. Rachel watches the brutal display, her eyes wide with tension. Jang Hyun fights back, catching Miguel's jaw with a sudden knee strike. Even through his surprise, Miguel finds himself wanting to match the beast's passion in this brutal dance. Therefore, Miguel lunges for a killing blow, but the spear meets only empty air as Jang Hyun shifts at the last second. Grasping at metal bars for leverage, Yang Hyun pulls himself up to stare Miguel down from above. In a desperate counter, Jang Hyun kicks Miguel with such force that the man's boot flies off. Jang Hyun's assault leaves Miguel gasping for air as he crawls away on his face, realizing the man in front of him is no longer a mere beast to be tamed by a matador's skill. This isn't within the power of man. Jang Hyun has become something far more primal. The matador sees a monster where a man once stood, watching Jang Hyun loom over him like a predator. Behind the fury, Miguel sees only a threatening shadow of a monster. Swallowing his pride, Miguel grabs a spear and hurls it into a fire extinguisher to create a diversion. The canister explodes, filling the air with thick powder that rapidly obscures all visibility. Rachel watches the white cloud with tension as Miguel, cursing his luck in Korea, makes a desperate, frantic retreat from the building. Behind a wall, a figure waits calmly in the shadows, watching as Miguel sprints toward a van of Russian mercenaries, shouting that they must hunt these monsters. He rips the door open, desperately calling for dynamite to wipe out the children. Inside the vehicle, Park Cheyenne watches the Spaniard with a deathly serious expression as Miguel demands a more destructive plan. He wants to blow the children up, but his demand is cut short. Suddenly, Park Cheyenne grabs Miguel by the hair, slamming his face into the metal as he questions such horrific cruelty. He slams him again, demanding to know how he could target a school. Park Cheyenne calmly remarks that maybe this is for the best, considering his own mounting questions. Miguel can only stare in terror, realizing the van is already filled with unconscious Russian mercenaries. As the protagonist tosses Miguel into the car, a defeated Jang Hyun picks up his soiled bandage, realizing she was right. He was deceived by Zero after all. Suddenly, the pain intensifies as blood begins to pour from Jang Hyun's back, and he collapses toward the ground. She offers a gentle smile, praising his grit despite the severe injury. She insists on helping him and promises to heal him, but the wounded fighter, visibly in pain, tries to push her away. He insists that he only needs to be alone, until a voice interrupts, calling out to the muscular Eden. A voice on the phone delivers a cold command, ordering the young man to finish what he started, and so, the tension shifts as a new threat looms. Eden stands waiting before the doors, only to press a pneumatic nailer against Rachel's temple, and a sudden blast of blood marks her fall, leaving Jang Hyun staring in utter bewilderment. Eden remains expressionless, still holding the phone to his ear. Rachel Jang Hyun screams, his voice cracking through the pain of his own abdominal wound. As blood flows from his injury, Jang Hyun struggles to hold the wound, clutching at his stomach in agony. Eden senses movement behind him, feeling the weight of an approaching threat. Rachel, fueled by pure rage, lashes out at Eden, but he effortlessly dodges her strike. Suddenly, Park Cheyenne descends from above, aiming a heavy kick directly at Eden's head. But Eden is prepared, jamming pneumatic claymores into Park Cheyenne's face, and recognizing the legendary fighter of the Mansion of the Dead, he pulls the triggers, sending massive nails whistling through the air, piercing Park Cheyenne's steel helmet just before he can escape the lethal blow. Park Cheyenne manages to block the impact, but the force sends him flying backward. Eden rests the nailer on his shoulder, noticing the enemy is proving problematic as he begins to sweat. Looking on in shock, Park Cheyenne realizes Rachel isn't a child, but someone far older. Holding the wounded Jang Hyun, Rachel confirms the truth. She is from the first batch of elite children. While tension mounts on the battlefield, Marie sits by a panoramic window, watching the world from behind her chains. Marie casually suggests Eugene eat, though he remains suspicious of her motives. He refuses to trust a traitor, demanding information instead. He insists that, until she proves her cooperation, he cannot lower his guard. Marie scoffs, noting that Eugene acts exactly like the children from the first batch. She smiles cryptically, asking if he knows that even good children are divided into batches. As she prepares to reveal the secrets of that first batch, Eugene demands to know the truth behind them. Eugene realizes even the mansion has never heard of such secrets, a fact Marie confirms with a cold knowingness. Seeing his confusion, Marie offers a trade. She will share the truth about the first batch in exchange for cooperation. Therefore, Eugene learns that those children underwent a terrifyingly different training. Eugene stares in shock, wondering if she is talking about an entirely new way of creation. Using tongs, Marie calmly adds sugar to her tea, revealing a horrifying truth about those early living weapons. The first batch was custom-made for the buyer's whim, shaping everything from their race and gender to their specific age and skills, tailoring each child to a precise taste. She then pours milk into the cup, noting that the second batch, including them, was simply the result of the methods developed from that original experiment. Eugene can only frown at the implication. Marie admits that while the second batch is superior due to comprehensive education, the first generation remains a threat because they focus entirely on single, specialized skills. Suddenly, the conversation is shattered as Eden brandishes two pneumatic nailers, unleashing a deadly volley of steel. Park Cheyenne moves with desperate precision, weaving through the flying nails as he closes the distance on the killer. With a sudden burst of speed, Park Cheyenne launches himself into the air. He drives a heavy knee into Eden's torso, forcing the man to the ground in a cloud of dust. Kneeling and breathing heavily, Eden's irritation grows as he realizes Park Cheyenne's speed and power are higher than expected. As Park Cheyenne prepares another devastating kick, Eden calmly pulls a measuring tape from his pocket, defending himself with unsettling composure. With a chilling smile, he begins to measure Park Cheyenne's leg, seemingly more interested in his data than the life on the line. Eden continues his bizarre data collection, wondering if his target's legs are truly over 841 millimeters long. The protagonist, losing all patience with the nonsense, slams a heavy fist directly into Eden's jaw. Even with a face covered in blood, Eden calmly measures his own arms, noting they are 614 millimeters long. The protagonist's next strike is a sharp kick, sending the man flying through the air. Eden hits the ground hard, groaning that another blow will be the end of him. Stowing away his tape, Eden prepares to wrap things up. As the protagonist closes in, he notes that the children of this era are terrifying, eyeing him with a cold gaze that suggests Eden will be fainting very soon. But then, he notices something. Despite his injuries, Eden doesn't look much older than the man he claims to be. Wiping blood from his face, he calls Park Cheyenne an irritable person before a strange smile plays on his lips, suggesting he has just found a way to win. He prepares to act. Eden begins firing his weapons at Park Cheyenne, who tries to close the distance while confused by the old man's strange behavior. Legs, 841 millimeters. Eden mutters, calculating the exact distance and speed needed to strike effectively. He aims his shot and uses a flying bracket to pierce Park Cheyenne's foot, causing blood to gush out onto the ground. Looking down at the wound in shock, Park Cheyenne asks if he was actually hit. He lunges forward to punch Eden, but the old man dodges with eerie precision, noting that Park Cheyenne's arm length is exactly 814 millimeters. With the distance known, there is no hiding from his aim. Eden immediately unleashes a relentless volley from his pneumatic nailer, forcing Park Cheyenne into a desperate scramble for survival. But Eden is already thinking of an escape. He claims running is useless because pursuit is a different specialty, then grips a hammer and a chisel. He points the chisel toward Park Cheyenne's head, ready to strike. With a command to attack, Eden swings the hammer with devastating force, shattering the environment into a cloud of debris. Even the dust cannot hide the tension in his face, as he realizes his target is still standing. Seeing the metal fragments in Park Cheyenne's hands, Eden panics and commands a disassembly. Park Cheyenne irritably knocks the chisel away, demanding to know what nonsense Eden is babbling. Realizing his identity has been exposed, Eden begins to retreat, firing his pneumatic nailer in a desperate bid for distance. Park Cheyenne grabs a metal pipe and unleashes a relentless barrage of strikes. Eden can only watch in bewilderment as Park Cheyenne's power seems to grow with every blow, shattering the ground and sending debris flying everywhere. Then, as Park Cheyenne prepares a final crushing strike, a sudden ringtone cuts through the chaos. Eden desperately puts up his hands, begging Park Cheyenne to stop as he reaches for his phone. He answers the call, addressing the man on the other end as father. It is his father commanding him to stop everything and come back immediately. Under the weight of that order, Eden turns and shouts for the chaos to cease. Eden declares his quota is fulfilled and decides to leave, leaving Park Cheyenne staring at his retreating back. Park Cheyenne demands to know if this is just a game, but Eden has already checked out. Calling Park Cheyenne a white-haired psycho, Eden prepares to leap over the gate, shouting that his father has ordered him home. But Park Cheyenne's repeated, pained commands to stop only leave the young weapon silent as he flees. Exhausted and struggling with the physical toll of his powers, Park Cheyenne watches as Eden escapes in a van. Eden curses the fight as he drives away, unaware that the tension isn't finished, because the roof is suddenly ripped open by a massive metal reinforcement. The steel pierces the steering wheel, and Park Cheyenne appears on the hood, looking down at Eden with terrifying intensity. He stares into the driver's eyes, demanding compliance, his gaze burning with a mixture of Cheyenne's rage and pure hatred. In a desperate response, Eden reaches for a grinder. Cursing the unkillable man, Eden grabs a tool to saw through the metal pole, jamming his steering wheel. He slams the gas, making a desperate turn that catches Cheyenne off guard, sending the fighter airborne. Eden grits his teeth, wondering how such monsters can even exist, and he just wants to escape this madness. He wonders why these people are able to create at all. As he grips the wheel to flee, A sudden, searing pain tears through his shoulder as the metal pole pierces straight through his seat and flesh. Park Cheyenne smiles arrogantly, mocking Eden's use of construction tools to kill people. Eden cursed, wondering how Cheyenne managed to close the distance so quickly. A sharp pull yanked at his shoulder as Cheyenne swung again, a terrifying motion caught in the rearview mirror. The metal pole narrowly missed his head, piercing the seat with lethal intent. Realizing he can't stop the madness, Eden slams the gas pedal to the floor to force an escape. He leaps from the window, shouting a desperate claim of victory as he jumps. Eden screams a final defiant challenge to Cheyenne, a move so reckless it blinds her to the danger. Move that finally makes Cheyenne realize the danger of this stalemate. With the gas pedal floored, the truck slams into a construction fence at high speed. Wounded and struggling, Eden drags himself away from the wreckage, desperately needing a hospital to treat his agonizing pain. As debris rains down on the smashed vehicle, Cheyenne has vanished. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the wreckage and the site where a man named Iran arrives to deal with this serious matter without a moment's hesitation. Eden crashes his truck. Eden could not imagine how he would explain the wreckage to his father, and he could only sigh in deep trouble. Deep trouble. He pulls himself up, questioning Cheyenne. Is he really following him all the way here? Meanwhile, the protagonist's silhouette appears in the distance, illuminated by the rays of the setting sun. Gripping the metal pole with a tired, hypnotic gaze, the warrior moves automatically. Hearing the commotion, the gray-haired man, Eden's father, stops his work and walks outside with a saw. The sight is horrifying. Eden is pinned to the ground by Cheyenne, with a rebar stuck nearby in the earth. As Eden calls out in desperation, the man stares in horror, unable to comprehend the violence unfolding before him. Cheyenne turns a bloodthirsty gaze toward the father, though he doesn't let go of his captive, and then he moves. The man's mind flashes back to a brutal fight with Marie when Madame punched him. Eden screams for his father to hide. Sensing the lethal danger radiating from Cheyenne, the protagonist swings an iron rod, causing Eden's father to rush forward in a desperate attempt to stop him. To everyone's shock, the protagonist delivers a blow to his own head, refusing to back down from the confrontation. He strikes himself again and again, blood beginning to coat his scalp in a gruesome display of resolve. As blood drips, Cheyenne curses, his own face stained by the spray, claiming these cursed memories are flooding back. The protagonist stands up and fixes his gaze on Eden. He offers one final chance: reveal everything you know or face the consequences. Cheyenne then demands to know the whereabouts of Zero. Cheyenne's presence is so menacing that it feels like his patience is finally running out. Amidst the workshop's clutter of steel and wood, Eden stands cleaned and treated, yet the atmosphere remains heavy. Eden merely scratches his head, oblivious to the tension as his father prepares to speak. The man bows deeply to Cheyenne in apology before dropping a bombshell. Zero came to them a month ago, intending to bring Eden back. Regret fills the man's eyes as he explains how Eden suffered immensely during that brutal confrontation. In the end, the struggle was nothing more than a futile attempt to resist. The father struggles to process the strength of Zero, a man so powerful even when wounded, leaving Eden to turn away in silence. Cheyenne remains silent, his mind likely wandering to the wound he received from Sophia a month ago. As Eden storms out of the room, his father reveals the grim truth: they only survived by pretending to cooperate with Zero. Cheyenne watches the boy leave, wondering how such a child could ever be targeted by a monster. Pushing past the apologies, Cheyenne demands every scrap of information they have on the mysterious Zero. The father's response is chilling. He hasn't seen the man's face since the visit. The man slides a mobile device across the table, suggesting that tracking the sender's location might reveal Zero's trail. Eden's father asks if tracking is truly his specialty, but Cheyenne responds with a chilling, cold confidence. He claims a good child should master such basics, yet the man admits he never taught Eden such functions. As the man gazes tenderly at photos of his adopted son, Cheyenne reaches out. Cheyenne demands answers to the questions that matter most. The air turns heavy as Cheyenne asks the one question no one wants to answer: why did he buy Eden? Night falls over the workshop, finding Eden sitting outside and nursing his sore shoulder in the darkness. When Cheyenne finally emerges, aching from the battle, Eden looks up and asks if he should return home. Cheyenne remains stoic, even as the conversation shifts to the chaos caused by Rachel. Eden's awkward avoidance doesn't fool Cheyenne, who isn't joking about the danger ahead. He demands to know what comes next. Cheyenne stands, pressing for the truth. Did he agree to cooperate with Zero? Eden looks down, admitting the choice was difficult. He leans against the wall, admitting he's a problem, but he refuses to face Park Cheyenne in combat a second time. He even jokingly suggests he'd prefer a weaker opponent. With a soft smile, Eden reveals his only goal is the protection of his father, the very reason for his creation. At the workshop, Eden's father tenderly strokes old photos of his son, including one where Eden looks completely lifeless. To him, as long as Eden is safe, nothing else matters. Eden finds comfort in this singular purpose, even as Cheyenne wonders why he never speaks openly with the man. Cheyenne suggests the father surely cares for his son's well-being, but Eden's expression remains cold. Eden simply waves the idea away. He can't believe Cheyenne, who could be so naive about the man's true intentions to Eden. His father views him as nothing more than a tool. As Eden stares at his feet, a heavy silence settles between them. Eden looks at Cheyenne, wanting to finally speak about his father, but a massive explosion thunders through the house, tearing the peace apart. Everything is engulfed in blazing flames and choking smoke. Both boys leap up, their faces twisted in sheer horror at the chaos. This nightmare echoes a moment 20 years ago, in this very same workshop, where a master was working diligently at a blue chair, hammer in hand. Suddenly, a small silhouette comes rushing into the room, bursts into the workshop, as a young boy runs toward his father, shouting in dissatisfaction. A man waits impatiently, checking his watch as work consumes his day. He's late, and he knows it. He watches as a young boy, Jin Sol, walks past him with an indignant pout. The man tries to make amends, promising a dinner of chicken to earn the boy's forgiveness. Jin Sol pouts, insisting that his father must definitely come to pick him up tomorrow. The man hugs his son close with a smile, promising he will be there. But the next day, he is parked outside the school, waiting. The boy sees him and starts running, waving his arms cheerfully. His smile is radiant, enough to light up the world, and the man can't help but smile back. Then, the nightmare strikes. A car careens forward without slowing, crushing the boy and sending him spinning through the air. Blood splatters across the man's car, leaving him frozen in shock. The workshop remains silent as time passes. Eventually, a man arrives at a fateful house. A mysterious voice claims to finally understand the weight of the tragedy, questioning why he would travel all this way to an orphanage when so many others exist. The father responds. Driven by grief, the man travels to Russia, following rumors of an orphanage that can create a child on request. After 3 years of searching every corner of the country, he arrives at the Mansion of the Dead, hoping for a miracle. The orphanage director hands him a datasheet, confirming their ability to fulfill his impossible request. The man stares at the director with desperate hope, but the director's eyes glint with a terrifying madness as he asks the man to sign the order form. Autumn has finally arrived, bringing the long-awaited moment of fulfillment. 3 years later, the long wait ends when a finished copy is finally delivered to the man's home, right where he expected it. Standing before him is Eden, a boy with eyes that seem entirely devoid of life. Stunned by the boy's uncanny resemblance to his lost son, the man rushes forward, his heart racing with a delusional sense of resurrection. He cries out to the boy, calling him daddy, hoping for a sign of recognition. But the child only bows with a cold, formal greeting. This hollow behavior is completely unlike his real son. That cold, formal behavior shatters the illusion, and as Eden asks what to do next, the man realizes that the dead simply cannot return to life. The crushing truth. A devastating realization washes over him. This boy is not his lost child. Behind them stands a small chair he built for his real son, but the seat remains empty, a silent monument to a ghost who isn't there. As winter settles in, they live together in a fragile, quiet routine. After school, Eden reports on his day, but the man, buried in his work, simply tells the boy to rest. When Eden returns from school to report his day, the man, lost in his work, simply tells him to go to his room and rest. Eden accepts the command, promising that his father can call him at any moment if help is needed, but the man suddenly freezes as memories flood back. The sound of his real son's disgruntled chattering as he would scold his father for failing to pick him up. Shaken, he turns his gaze. The man attempts to connect with the boy, calling him by name and asking if he's hungry. Eden is caught off guard by the mundane question, momentarily losing his composure. But he quickly recovers, forcing a smile to mimic the behavior of an ordinary child. The father watches him, still haunted by the realization that this manufactured boy can never replace his true son. He knows the truth, yet he has fallen in love with this imitation. That same evening, the illusion continues as they sit down to eat together. Eden eats with enthusiastic energy, acting the part of a happy child as his father tells him to eat more. It is a performance of domestic bliss. As the man lifts his drink, his eyes wander away from the boy's face toward the photo, resting on the image of his real son, even as the replacement eats happily before him. The man's smile is shattered when Eden speaks up, insisting that everything is perfectly fine. But the boy looks down, confessing the truth he carries. He knows he was created. Replacement for his son. This realization strikes the man like a physical blow. He sees how his greed has forced Eden into this unnatural existence. Yet the boy still smiles, determined to please him. Shame burns through the man as he tells Eden to stop, because he has no reason to serve him. Eden freezes, paralyzed by the sudden shift in the air. The man delivers the final crushing blow. Eden is not his son, and never will be. A cold fear begins to spread through the boy's veins like mercury, along with a sharp, piercing pain, leaving nothing but an oppressive silence in the room. Once the heavy dinner has passed, the boy quietly takes out the trash. The boy silently gathers the trash, a ghost in his own home. Eden tries to slip into bed, drawing the curtains to hide the truth. But his gaze catches a photo of the real boy, Jean Saul, who had 2 small moles on his face. Suddenly a scream shatters the quiet hallway, knocking the man out of his sleep. He races to the workshop, frantically calling for the boy, only to find him collapsed on the floor. The man rushes to the child's side, finding a construction stapler lying next to him as he clutches his face. With chilling composure, Eden pulls a bloody staple from his cheek and reveals the horror. He has no moles at all. He offers a forced, hollow smile, asking if he's closer to being the perfect replacement now. The man stares between the photo of his lost son and the broken boy before him, whispering a name. After bandaging the wound, the man retreats to a small blue chair he once built for his son. He stares at the dusty wood and strokes the surface as gently as if he were touching his son. With a gentle touch, until a voice breaks the silence, a girl named Sparky stands nearby, holding a single sparkler and offering it as a gift. The man starts to ask who she is, but he realizes there is a massive bundle of those same sparklers hidden right behind him. Sparky smiles, explaining that while one is harmless, putting them all together changes everything. But the girl's friendly gesture was a lie. She had left a lit sparkler stuck deep within the massive pile, waiting to ignite everything. The fuse reached the end, and in an instant, the entire workshop is blown to smithereens. Outside, Eden and Park Cheyenne watch the destruction in pure horror. They rush towards the wreckage, seeing only chaos. As Eden screams for his father through the settling dust, he finds the man collapsed on the floor, shielding a small blue chair with his body, while the strange girl sits calmly nearby. Before anyone can react, an armed attacker emerges from the smoke, swinging a weapon with lethal precision and slamming Eden directly in the chin, sending him flying backward. The devastating blow leaves a massive mark on his face. Eden's face is filled with despair as the man's rejection hits him. The terror in the room only grows as a stranger emerges, targeting the girl and calling her Sparky. The assailant clicks his gun, but Park Cheyenne lunges into the air, aiming a devastating strike at the attacker's face. The man narrowly dodges the blow, leaping to the side, and as Cheyenne lands, the stranger realizes exactly who has arrived. Cheyenne immediately takes a fighting stance, but he is suddenly cornered when a construction stapler is pressed against the man's face. Staples spray from the tool like lethal bullets as the workshop burns mercilessly. Meanwhile, Eden stands tall, revealing his true nature as a Demoto, a specialized assistant to skilled workers. Park Cheyenne doesn't argue, simply nodding as he prepares to accept this new truth.